Wang Li has successfully awakened. Divine domain, 200,000 square kilometers. Core retinue, 2-star grassland rabbits. Overall potential, below average. That was the first full sentence I ever heard in this world, and I want you to appreciate that the words below average made an entire auditorium of teenagers gasp with envy. A kid just became a literal god of rabbits. The teacher graded him like a disappointing math quiz, and 300 students still looked at him like he'd won the lottery twice. I was standing in that crowd with someone else's memories pouring into my skull like wet cement. 15 minutes earlier, I'd been a normal guy taking a nap after a double shift. Now I was Chen Wei, 16 years old, orphan, standing in line at Creation God High School on Awakening Day, waiting for a magic rock to decide the rest of my life. No truck, no lightning bolt. I died the most boring death available and got shipped to another world mid-snore. The universe said, LOL, express delivery, no returns. Here's the world in one breath because that's all the time it gave me. Everyone gets one shot at godhood at 16. You put your hand on the awakening stone, and if you're one of the lucky 10%, you get your own pocket world, a divine domain, plus a starter race of creatures who worship you. Your believers pray, faith piles up, faith becomes divinity, divinity climbs the ladder, divine being, demigod, true god, and up until the word creator starts appearing on your business card. Succeed, and your nobility. Fail, and you spend the rest of your life as a regular human politely applauding gods. So yes, the stakes of this particular school assembly were eternity or cattle. The line moved. 12 kids in a row failed. 12 times the stone sat there like a stone, which is technically its job, and 12 futures quietly died to the sound of a teacher saying, next. Then a boy with dark purple hair strolled up like the stage owed him rent. Gao Ming. Both parents true gods, born with divinity already in his blood, which in this world means guaranteed awakening. He'd literally never had a reason to be humble, and it showed. He touched the stone and it lit up like a slot machine paying out. Gao Ming successfully awakened. Divine domain, 1.5 million square kilometers. Core retinue, 4-star shadow tigers, overall potential, top notch. The teacher's voice cracked with joy. 7 times the rabbit kid's territory, a 4-star war beast as a starter unit when most people pray for 2 stars. The crowd made a sound I can only describe as 300 people deciding who to suck up to for the next decade. And then it was my turn. I put my hand on the stone and thought, okay, I'm the transmigrator here. I've read the manual. This is the part where the stone explodes or turns gold or a dragon crawls out and calls me father. The stone did nothing, not dramatic nothing, office printer nothing. The teacher actually inhaled to say awakening failed. And then the stone coughed up a light, one tiny, embarrassed flicker like a candle apologizing for existing. Chen Wei, awakening successful, the teacher said, and her voice did this downward slide I'll remember for the rest of my life. Divine domain, 10,000 square kilometers, core retinue, 0-star race, conch. Silence. The good kind of silence if you're everyone except me. 10,000 square kilometers. The rabbit guy, the below average one, had 20 times my land. And my divine retinue, my holy warriors, the chosen people who would carry my name across the heavens were sea snails. The auditorium recovered from its silence with enthusiasm. 10,000 square kilometers? Did he awaken a luxury toilet? Hey, at least he'll never go hungry. Fresh seafood on demand, ocean to table. The weakest god in history, everyone. We were present. We saw it. The teacher patted my shoulder and said maybe someday some miracle might change my divine domain, and then she touched her nose and looked away because even she couldn't sell that one. I walked out through a corridor of laughter. Didn't run, didn't cry, just walked, while behind me somebody was still workshopping seafood restaurant names on my behalf. Home was a rented room with a rusty gate, a bed, and a desk. The previous Chen Wei's entire estate. I lay down, stared at the ceiling, and did the math on my new life. In my old world, I was at the bottom, worked myself to death, literally, for people born on the top floor. Now the universe had handed me a second run and opened with a joke about shellfish. Fine, I sat up. If I folded a hand like this, I deserved to be soup stock. I closed my eyes and reached for the divine domain the way the school memories said to, and the world unfolded behind my eyelids. A green little island, 60% ocean, 40% everything else, small but real, mine. And on the wet sand of the shallows, my people, 200 blue conches with pale spiral patterns, gleaming in the surf like someone had dropped a jewelry box into a tide pool. I pulled up my divine panel, and this is where it got interesting, because the panel had opinions. My divine name was a mouthful. Lord of the beginning of all things, Lord of primordial creation, Lord of endless tides. Very impressive, very unearned. Then the retinue stats, physique 0.3, with a note that said, don't move around too much or you might fall apart. Strength 0.2. Don't even think about hitting anyone. You only deserve to be hit. And the official evaluation of my chosen people, written by the universe itself, I swear on both of my lives, a fresh and delicious aquatic ingredient. My gods were rated by flavor. An adult human could wipe out my entire holy army using one leg in a bad mood, but one line on that panel didn't belong there. Talent, creation, and transformation. Talents are for children of true gods. Orphans who awaken toilet-sized domains do not get talents, unless the talent didn't come from this world's genetics at all, unless it hitched a ride with me. I opened it. 3 functions. 1. Decompose any divine material into creation points. 2. Spend creation points to fuse 2 things into one better thing. 3. Purify divine genes out of materials and inject them straight into my dependents. I read it 3 times, and somewhere around the 3rd, I started grinning like an idiot in an empty room. Everyone else in this world got dealt a hand. I got dealt a workshop. They collect cards. I recycle, upgrade, and rebuild cards. The weakest god in history was holding the only cheat that doesn't cap. Time to test it. I dug a locked metal box out from under the bed. The old Chinwei's life savings. 3 divine cards, all white, all bottom shelf. 2 3-star domain expansions, a plain field, and a shallow sea, 30,000 square kilometers each, and 1 3-star skill card called Thick Fat. Yes, my inheritance was 2 empty lots and body positivity. New gods get a grace period, 10 cards in the first month before the domain locks you down to 3 a month. I had 10 free slots and 3 pieces of junk. Let's cook. I entered the domain in person this time, floating over my island with blue-white light rolling off me in waves, which I'd love to say I did on purpose. I touched the thick fat card and said the word, decompose. The card cracked like glass and burst into starlight, 30 creation points, and then, bonus round, a yellow-brown orb floated up out of the wreckage. Divine Gene. Thick fat, 93% match with 0-star conch. The recycling didn't just give points, it gave parts. Then the real test. I took both expansion cards, the boring field and the boring puddle, and pushed them together. Fusion. 20 points drained. The 2 cards overlapped, shivered, and became 1 card glowing green. Abundant Island. 200,000 square kilometers in a single card, packed with fish, shrimp, and wild game. Land to sea ratio, adjustable to taste. 2 white pieces of trash had fused into a rare grade card, 1 full quality tier up. That's not addition, that's alchemy. I loaded it on the spot, and my divine domain had a growth spurt. The ground stretched, the sea unrolled, forests stamped themselves onto fresh coastline like the world's fastest terraforming crew. 10,000 square kilometers became 210,000, 21 times bigger before lunch. On the beach below, 200 conchies watched their entire universe explode outward and huddled together in what I can only assume was theological crisis. I sent a soothing pulse of divine power down. Easy guys, dad's renovating. And then I took that yellow-brown gene orb, crushed my last 10 creation points into it, and rained it down on my chosen people. The gene hit the beach like a meteor shower in miniature, golden streaks folding into 200 little shells, and the conches began to change. They swelled. Their shells cracked. And before I could panic, a strange power stitched every crack back shut, broke them again, healed them again, over and over, tearing my snails apart and rebuilding them better each cycle. Growth apparently is just damage with a plan. When the light died down, my 0-star seafood platter was gone. And in its place, conchas half the height of a person, deep lavender shells veined with white gold ripples, thick matte armor. The whole colony, looking like a jeweler, had gotten emotional. The panel refreshed, quasi 2-star, physique 3.7, up from 0.3 UBC. The note now read, can't beat it, really can't beat it, which from this panel counts as a rave review. They'd even picked up an armor skill from the thick fat gene, and then something slid into me. A warm ancient current spread from my forehead to my fingertips, and a golden symbol condensed between my brows. The panel added a line I had no business having. Priesthood, creation, 0.001%. Let me translate. Most gods spend their whole climb chasing a priesthood, the divine office that defines what you're god of. Tides, storms, rabbits, probably. For that one kid, you usually can't even touch one until demigod rank. Creation isn't just a priesthood, it's a supreme one, the top of the entire menu, and my talent had started carving it into me on day 1 as a side effect of upgrading shellfish. Every time I fused and remade my dependents, I understood creation a little more. My cheat wasn't just feeding my army, it was feeding me. My upgraded snails needed a name worthy of the moment. They looked like a crown conch from my old world, but purple and gold, so I named them with all the poetry I had in me, Purple Gold Crown Conch. Naming things, as you'll see, is not my priesthood. The upgrade came with a brain patch too. Their intelligence jumped to about an 8-year-old kid's, and all 200 of them promptly converted from casual believers to true believers, which multiplied their faith output by 17. Faith is the whole economy here. It's money between gods and it's fuel. 100 million faith condenses into a single point of divinity, and divinity is what actually moves you up the ladder. I set my domain's clock to run a year for every real-world day, told my congregation through a solemn divine decree to go forth and make an absolutely irresponsible number of babies, and stepped out of heaven feeling like a startup founder. Then my bracelet lit up. School group chat. 6 successful awakenings in our class. Congratulations, school's out for a week. Placement test when you return. Prizes for top ranks. Prizes meant resources. Resources meant my talent could eat. There was just one problem. I was broke in 2 worlds simultaneously, which is how I ended up staring at my contacts list at one particular blocked name, feeling my dignity pack its bags. Mei Li. I unblocked her and called. She picked up before the second ring, like she'd been holding the bracelet in her hand for a year. Chen Wei, sweet voice, soft, delighted and disbelieving in exactly the right amounts. It's me. I need to borrow some faith value. Sure, how much? No hesitation. None. That should have been heartwarming, and instead it slid down my spine like ice water. 2 million. Okay, I'll transfer it, but we haven't seen each other in so long. Dinner. No, I'll pay you back fast. Why are you so cold to me? Her voice trembled, right on the edge of tears. Why did you even block me? I took a breath. Mei Li, stop pretending. 1 second of silence. Then the sweetness peeled off her voice like a sticker. Hee, so you do know. A pause, then playful as a cat with a cornered mouse. Little Wei, I know how your awakening went. Why not just become my subordinate god? I'll take Su-Och good care of you. Quick lore note, a subordinate god signs themselves over to a stronger god. Politely, it's called service. Accurately, it's called property. Not happening? You know I won't. So stubborn. I like you more and more. She let me sweat exactly 1 beat. Fine, I'll lend it. 1 condition. You're buying resources for your domain, right? I'm coming shopping with you. Tomorrow 9, Divine Merchant Alliance. Okay, Brother Wei. I hung up before she finished the last syllable, which I'd call rude if it wasn't self-defense. Now, about Mei Li. First year of high school, I heard crying in a back alley and found a small girl in a white dress on the ground, surrounded by bigger girls doing the pointing and shoving routine. I broke it up because apparently even the old Chen Wei's introversion had a floor. From that day, she attached herself to me like a shadow with a ponytail, timid, gentle, the only warm thing in a very cold life, honestly. Then the other girls in class started having accidents. Girl talks to me by the lockers while it falls down the stairs that week. Girl lends me notes, nearly drowns at swim class. Girl smiles at me. Car almost climbs the curb after her. The school decided I was cursed. Fewer and fewer people came near me, which conveniently left exactly 1 person at my side, until the day I walked around a corner and found my shy little shadow holding another girl by the chin, sweetly, gently, dangling a live scorpion over her face. I really don't want to hurt you, she was saying in the exact voice she used to thank teachers, but Chen Wei can only belong to me. Understand every accident, all of it, her, even the bullying I'd rescued her from, staged, because a girl from her kind of family doesn't get cornered in alleys. She has bodyguards for her bodyguards. I'd spent a year thinking I was protecting a flower, and the flower had been landscaping my entire social life with a wood chipper, so I blocked her everywhere, and we hadn't spoken since, and now I'd voluntarily called the prettiest, richest, most clinically obsessed person I know because I needed capital. Somewhere in the afterlife, my old financial decisions were nodding in recognition. That night, on the other end of the city, in a bedroom I'm glad I couldn't see, Mei Li reportedly hugged her own knees and whispered to the ceiling, Chen Wei, you're mine. You can only be mine. I did not know that then. I sleep better in flashbacks. Next morning, the Divine Merchant Alliance. Teleportation arrays make travel free and instant in this world. Space gods built the infrastructure. Everyone rides it. Honestly, the one civic project both my lives could be proud of. I stepped out of the array and spotted her immediately because everyone had. School Mei Li wears white and looks like a scared deer. Actual Mei Li was leaning against a pillar in a low-cut red dress, black hair moving in wind that didn't exist, wearing the smile of a woman who has never once been in danger in her life but has frequently been the danger. Every man in the plaza had developed a sudden deep interest in her general direction. Long time no see, she said, and drifted over to trace 1 finger down my chest. You're so cold, little Wei Wei. Her perfume hit like something they'd classify as a controlled substance. I removed the hand from my chest with the enthusiasm of a bomb technician. The business first. Inside, the alliance was all marble and light screens, a marketplace where gods trade with gods, owned by no one and feared by everyone. She tapped her bracelet against mine as we split up. 5 millions in your account. I asked for 2. She leaned into my ear. I rounded up, she whispered, and walked off visibly pleased while my ears did their best impression of her dress. Getting bankrolled by your yandere ex-shadow is a specific feeling. I don't recommend it. My ears don't either. I got to work. 1,000 one-star materials for 50,000 faith. Cheap junk to anyone else. Raw creation points to me. Then the real shopping, built around one cold fact: my conscience had glorious defense and the offense of a decorative pillow. No hands, no claws, terrible casting stats, but they did have one giant natural speaker built into their anatomy. Sound. Sonic attacks don't need hands, can't be sidestepped, and don't care about my snail's garbage mental stats. So, a 4-star skill card, Whisper of Wind and Waves, sonic damage. A 1-star card, Extreme Cold, magic ice damage with a freeze chance which my snails could never cast in 100 years, and which I bought anyway because I had a hypothesis and a talent that laughed at prerequisites. Plus, 2 breeding cards because armies are made of birth rates, and a 5-star talent card, Celestial Voice, for the raw sonic power. 4.5 million faith, gone in an hour. Being a god is the most expensive hobby ever invented. At the exit, Mei Li was waiting, rubbing her ankle with theatrical suffering. So slow, my legs almost gave out. You have the acting range of a tea commercial. You finished shopping an hour ago. I'm going home. Dinner? I'll cook. I was already in the teleport array. As the light took me, I heard her laugh, low and delighted, and say to my back, "See you at school, Chen Wei." It sounded exactly as much like a promise as a threat. With her, there's no difference. Night. Back home, I dove into the domain, where a full year had passed and my 200 conches had become 864 extremely productive believers, over 1 million faith already banked. My people understood the divine decree about babies and had treated it as scripture. I was so proud. First, the junk. 1,000 one-star materials rose into the air over the beach. Decompose. They burned away like paper snow, and 530 creation points rolled into me. 50,000 faith in, 500 points out. The worst material on the market was, for me, an exchange rate. Then the experiment I'd actually been waiting for. I took Whisper of Wind and Waves, honest sonic damage, and Extreme Cold, the ice magic my snails could never use, and pushed them together. But this time I didn't just let the fusion run. I reached in with my mind and steered. Sound as the body, ice as the passenger. The cards resisted, merged, flashed, Song of Storms, sonic attack, double damage, plus 70% magic damage riding the sound wave, and a 30% chance to flash freeze whatever hears it. Read that again. The ice spell my dependents were too dumb to cast was now soldered inside a scream they could produce all day long. The sound wave carries, the magic detonates. The enemy stands in the corner as an ice sculpture, rethinking his life. 3 birds, 1 card, and the birds were also frozen. Then Celestial Voice went into the recycler, came out as a gene, got 200 creation points of steroids, and rained down on my congregation. The metamorphosis was gentler this time. Apparently my snails were getting used to being remodeled, and when the light faded, the panel said 3-star, physique 6.7, a talent that doubled all sonic damage at the source, stacked under a skill that already doubled it again. My priesthood ticked up too, creation 0.004%. Every upgrade I performed taught me a little more about how the universe was bolted together. 5 days later, 5 years, domain time, I had 50,000 adult purple gold crown conches, each one a walking subwoofer with a freeze setting and a war chest of faith. The average kid in my class would bring maybe 20,000-30,000 dependents to the placement test. I'd like to tell you, I felt nervous walking into that auditorium. Mostly I felt like a man arriving at a poker table with a printing press. The placement test worked like this. Our homeroom teacher, Fan Hong, a high-ranked demigod with a gentle voice and the patient eyes of a man who's watched 400 years of teenagers, projected us all into a battle dimension. Waves of enemies. Survive a wave, move on. Top 20 of 64 go to the elite class. Prizes climbing by rank, and first place got 3 5-star cards plus 1 card of epic quality. Purple grade, the kind of thing kids from god families frame on walls. My talent looked at that prize list and started salivating. Wave 1. 1,000 kobolds, dog-headed spearmen, standard issue cannon fodder, charged my hidden conches across a plain. 5,000 shells surfaced from behind rocks and sang at them. It wasn't a battle, it was a product demo. The front rank froze mid-stride, the second rank froze falling over the first, and the sound wave kept rolling like a lawnmower with a music degree. They didn't cross half the field. Waves 2 through 4 were the same demo at higher volume. 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 kobolds, 0 casualties on my side. My snails were getting bored. I was getting bored. Somewhere a kobold union rep was drafting a complaint. Wave 5 got interesting. 15,000 kobolds, and behind them, 5,000 kobold warlocks, 3-star casters, robes, scepters, the works. The warlocks buffed the grunts with a berserk spell and started lobbing fireballs, so I introduced them to my other party trick. I spent 20 million faith and cast my innate divine spell, Tidal Sea Spirit, a 5-meter water elemental shaped, I kid you not, like a giant conch because even my magic commits to the brand. It parked itself midfield and started sweeping the battlefield with waves, shoving the berserk kobolds back every time they built momentum. Freeze, wave, freeze, wave. The kobolds spent the entire battle walking up the same hill like the world's angriest treadmill. What I didn't know, up in the observation room, 2 teachers were watching my screen on replay. 6 students had made it past wave 4, 5 of them children of gods. And the scoreboard of privilege ran like this. Mei Li, born with 2 points of divinity. Core retinue, 5-star Medusa, 2 million square kilometers. Yes, that Mei Li. My stalker was the strongest awakener of our year and never once mentioned it, which honestly tracks. Then Gao Ming and his tigers, a kid named Zhao Hao with 4-star war trents, and 2 more god babies with 4-star retinues. And then my screen. The teacher rewound my wave 5, watched kobolds freeze, thaw, take 2 steps, freeze, get shoved downhill by a water snail, freeze again, and the 2 of them, a demigod and a demigoddess with centuries of combined dignity, said one word in perfect unison: pervert. It's a wave 6 threw 30,000 elite kobolds at me. I brought all 50,000 conches and stopped hiding. 2 of the god kids tapped out around then. Their armies had been ground down past the point of no return. Wave 7 was the real wall, 50,000 with veterans and 20,000 warlocks who opened with a bloodlust spell that doubled the entire enemy army's strength and turned their eyes into brake lights. For 5 real minutes, it was an actual fight. My snail's armor skill met berserk dogmen in open water, and I lost over 5,000 of my people in the grinder, the first losses I'd ever taken, and I felt everyone like a pulled tooth. But bloodlust is a loan, and loans come due. The spell burned out, the kobold's strength halved in the aftermath, and 50,000 conches sang the last chorus of the night. When it ended, I poured every drop of faith I had left, $100 million into my survivors as a golden mist. Wounds sealed, shells brightened. 10,000 of them broke through to level 3 rare on the spot, which meant they'd hit the level cap of their star rank, which meant my next project was already scheduling itself. I stepped out of the test dimension into a wall of stairs. The rankings hung in the air over the auditorium. First place, Chen Wei. Second, Mei Li. Gao Ming, Prince of the Purple Hair. Fourth, behind the chubby Trent kid. That's a mistake, right? The conch guy, the seafood god, got first. It's rigged. It has to be rigged. The fiery teacher, Shen Yue, shut the room up with one sentence about jealousy and skill levels. Fan Hong promised everyone the test was fair, and then he looked at me, one long look with something behind it I couldn't read yet. Interest or appetite. In this world, it's often both. Outside the hall, under a tree, in her innocent white school mode dress, Mei Li was waiting with a smile you could pour on pancakes. Congratulations, Chen Wei, she said sweetly, then leaned in so close her breath touched my ear. As expected of the man I've chosen, she skipped off. I stood there recalibrating my threat rankings because somewhere in the last week, the girl who feeds people scorpions had quietly become the second scariest thing in my life, right after my own economy. Prize day. My student ID unlocked the school's treasure pavilion, and first place bought me exactly what my workshop wanted. 2 5-star domain upgrade cards, a 5-star hero transformation card, 20% chance to spawn a hero, a king unit from a dependent race A, and the crown jewel, the epic grade card, 1 star, purple, and worth more than everything else combined. Bloodline card, innate human race. Everyone else saw a nice bloodline injection. I saw a plan so greedy it needed a permit, because here's the thing about my snails. Gorgeous defense, lovely voices, 0 hands, 0 civilization. An army of instruments with nobody to build the concert hall. Humans, meanwhile, are the multi-tool race, adaptable, clever, natural believers, terrible shells. At home, I ran the fusion of my career so far. Domain cards first, 2 5-star upgrades merged into one epic card that that inflated my world by 3 million square kilometers. My dependents watched the horizon sprint away from them and drop to their knees praising my name, which never stops being a strange feeling before breakfast. Then the main event. Hero transformation card, plus the human bloodline card, plus 2,000 creation points of brute encouragement fused into something the panel had to invent a name for. A hero bloodline crystallization, 80% hero chance, and a full human bloodline packed inside. I threw it into the sky over my domain, said go, and watched my entire species wrap itself in red cocoons. The biggest cocoon hatched first. It cracked, burst, and a girl stepped out. Human-shaped, purple-haired, a golden crown mark glowing on her forehead, radiating enough pressure to bend the grass flat. Around her, tens of thousands of cocoons opened, and out came people, men and women with pale purple hair and crown marks on their hands, half and half. Fierce and proud. My conscience hadn't just gained a bloodline. The panel now read, Orc/human race, 5 stars. Both bloodlines complete and pure. They could shift between armored sea titan and human at will. The old weakness, the garbage mental stats, was gone. The note under spirit now read, natural spellcaster. That's the thing my talent does that no one else's can. It doesn't improve what's rotten. It takes the rotten and makes it divine. And the girl from the big cocoon, the panel called her a hero, quality precious, physique 104, strength that could, and I quote, tear apart a dragon barehanded as a piece of cake. Her talent marked every soldier of her race with a red spider lily that stole life from everything they cut. And her 4th skill made me laugh out loud alone in the sky. She could turn any terrain into water. 10,000 square kilometers of anywhere, instantly converted into home advantage. She knelt on the beach, fist over her heart, waiting for her god to speak. I cleared my throat, put on the voice. You develop a voice in this job or the faith numbers dip, and named her Xiaoyun, first saint of my church. Then I beamed a starter pack of memories into her head. Houses, fire, cooking, marriage, agriculture, civilization, the home edition. Thank you, my God, she said, glowing. My children, I said solemnly, my God will always be watching over you. And then I left heaven quickly because a God should never let his first saint see him giggling. That evening my bracelet chimed. Video call, Mei Li, I answered, because I am a man who learns nothing and got a full screen of her lounging on a chaise in a silk bathrobe, hair wet, looking like a perfume ad that had been banned in several provinces. Is it nice to look at? She asked. It's nice to look at, said my mouth independently before my brain got back from lunch. I slammed on the serious face. What do you want? They're fine to Dutcher. Vindt is een intuïtieve feite zien sub natus jaar chinde weigerscher, so mandastatas is shakulombacher. I mean in shitu section of trails though striden bondable in dagenormeyer, shimayan. You spent all my faith on the test, didn't you? Broke again. Then before I could dig for dignity, want to earn it back, I have the coordinates of an abandoned divine domain. That got my attention off the bathrobe, which was a feat. When a god dies, their world doesn't vanish instantly. It drifts loose in the void, slowly bleeding out, and for a while it's a shipwreck full of cargo, dependents, resources, sometimes a dead god's whole legacy, free to whoever can find it and take it. Coordinates to one are rarer than the treasure itself. Whose was it? A low-rank demigods, perfect size for us. There might even be a second dependent race in it for you. She sat up, and the robe made a strong argument I refused to hear. 3 days from now. Coming? 3 days, I said, and hung up first again. It's the only race with her I ever win. 3 days later, 3 years passed in my domain. Xiaoyun had taken my civilization starter pack and run. Wooden houses along the coast, cook fires, kids chasing each other down the beach. Actual kids now because humanized snails have human families. 1 child a year, adults at 10 thanks to the beast blood, lifespans of 80. My faith income had gone vertical. I skimmed the surface of the panel numbers, condensed my first 15 points of divinity into my body, and felt power settle into my bones like hot tea on a cold day. Then I sent the decree I'd been rehearsing. A great battle is coming. Take up arms for your god. Watching Xiaoyun work was worth the whole trip. She stood on a stone platform, spear high, and roared her people into formation, and 60,000 purple-armored soldiers roared back for my god in a voice that rattled the tide. A year ago, these people were an appetizer. Now they had a war cry. The abandoned domain was everything the brochure promised. 8 million square kilometers of dying grassland under a sky the color of old teeth. No god's power to sustain it, so the whole world was slowly starving, and the survivors had turned on each other. 3 5-star races were left standing out of the wreckage, locked in a three-way war. Blood elves, pale blue and lovely and cruel, led by a heroine who kept licking her lips at us. Mountain dwarves, a meter of muscle and hammer apiece. And poppy flower demons, beautiful women in a red gauze whose petals could buff an army or melt a mind. 1 million of them, total. Mei Li brought 30,000 medusas, I brought 60,000 snail knights, 100,000 versus 1 million, and the two of us floated above it, grinning at each other like foxes who've just been handed the deed to a henhouse because we had a script. Step 1. Xiaoyun's voice rolled across the entire dying world. Blasphemers, submit and receive redemption, resist and face judgment. Nothing unites 3 races mid-civil war like a rude foreigner. All 1 million of them stopped killing each other and marched on us as one big angry family, which was the point. You can't ambush 3 armies in 3 places. 1 army though. Step 2. They hit our line and it went badly for us, convincingly badly. Vines from the poppy demons tangled our front rank, dwarf hammers rang off snail shields, and Xiaoyun, after shattering the vines with one spear strike that cracked the plain like a plate, Bakoi Xi Kurt called the retreat. Our whole force fell back, stumbling, barely holding formation and Bisia. The 3 enemy heroes smelled blood and ordered the pursuit, every step of which was choreographed by us. Step 3. Mei Li spread her arms, black mist boiling off her shoulders, and dropped a divine spell called Nightfall over the pursuing horde. Instant blindness, 1 million soldiers groping in the dark, and in that darkness, one kind light shone ahead, an exit. They stampeded toward it, which is very understandable and very unfortunate because the solid ground under the light was an illusion the Medusas had painted over 10,000 square kilometers of brand new lake, courtesy of Xiaoyun's terrain skill. The sound 1 million land soldiers make hitting deep water at a sprint is something I will treasure forever. Splash, 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 splash. Welcome to our battlefield, Xiaoyun said from the shore, which is the kind of one-liner that gets you promoted in my organization. My conscience hit the water in beast form, double speed, double power, home turf. The lily marks bloomed on their armor, and at every cut they landed poured stolen life back into them. Medusa snakes boiled through the shallows. The enemy fought at 70% in a world that was suddenly all ocean, and the numbers stopped mattering fast. The 3 enemy heroes tried to rally, and Xiaoyun took all 3 at once. Underwater, she moved like a rumor, visible only by the damage. The Blood Elf heroine broke first. One spear thrust ended her outright. The Dwarf King and the Poppy Queen turned to run and got wrapped in nets of living water. 2 clean strikes, 2 crowns rolling on the lake bed. Your kings are dead, Xiaoyun announced to 1 million stunned survivors hovering over the water with a spear in each fist's worth of implication. Why don't you surrender? They surrendered. About 100,000 were left to do it. Mei Li called dibs on the Blood Elves. I wanted the Poppy Demons, a support race, exactly the second wing my all-melee choir needed. We opened our domain gates, herded the prisoners through, and I was mid-gloat, savoring the best day of both my lives, when a cold thought walked up behind me and tapped my shoulder. The god of this world was dead. His dependents had just left. So why was the domain not collapsing? Mei Li went still at the same instant. We turned together toward the exit and hit a wall. The entire plane had been sealed under a barrier of divine power while we were busy winning. We hurled our combined strength at it. It rippled, politely. 2 little divine beings trying to break my barrier, said a voice with a smile in it. How ambitious. The ground split, and a figure rose out of it wrapped in power that made my bones want to file for relocation. A true god. 2 whole tiers above anything we could fight. My brain served up the useful details fast. His body was translucent, flickering, not a whole god, a crippled one, a soul without a body, hiding in a dead world, drinking its leftover faith to heal. We hadn't found a shipwreck. We'd broken into a hospital room, and the patient was awake. Forgive the intrusion, senior, I said, hands clasped, buying seconds. We'll leave you in peace. We can even find you a better place to recuperate. No need. He smiled wider. I only need one thing. The lightning sword came at my face before the sentence ended. I want your divine body. Possession. He wanted to wear me home. I threw up a spear of condensed divine power. It lasted about as long as a snowball in a furnace. Mei Li's black whip lashed around the lightning blade for half a heartbeat, long enough for me to move, then snapped like thread. Behind us, a mountain stopped being a mountain. We hit him with everything. Her nightfall smothered the field in ink. I burned 100 million faith on a meteor barrage that lit the black mist like a war going on inside a storm cloud, and out of the mist came lightning, calm and wide, eating our darkness alive. He wasn't even breathing hard. Whatever fraction of a true god was left in that soul, the fraction was enough. The next bolt was mine, and it was unavoidable, and I knew it the way you know a falling elevator. And then Mei Li was in front of me. She took it, all of it. The blast that was meant to end me hit her back, and she folded into my arms, coughing blood, and everything in my head went very quiet and very simple. Mei Li. I heard my own voice from a distance, cracked down the middle. Her life was leaking out through my fingers. I tore open my faith reserves and poured them into her like a man bailing a boat with his hands. Everything, every point. No arithmetic, no plan, until her breathing steadied and her heart decided to stay. I set her down behind a ridge of stone with more care than I have ever done anything. Then I stood up and looked at the god. There was no winning this fight. There was maybe one way to end it. The worst plan I've ever had. I let the divine power dissipate from my hands, straightened, and said, "You can have my body on one condition: you don't touch her." A romantic to the end. He glowed with satisfaction. Agreed. I could hear the fine print in his voice. Once I wear you, everything you own is mine, including your girlfriend's safety, which I will define personally. I closed my eyes. His soul left the ruined half-body and dove into my sea of consciousness like an eel into a bucket, straight into the one place in all creation where I'm not the weakest god in history, where everything is made of soul stuff and divine substance. And what does my talent do to divine substance? He was rushing toward my core when he saw me smiling. Creation and transformation, I said. Decompose. The law of my priesthood closed over his soul like a hand. He understood instantly. I'll give him that. And the roar he let out shook my whole inner world. I am a true god. This is impossible. Impossible. It was very possible. A soul is just material with opinions, and I run a recycling plant. I watched the terror of my afternoon come apart into drifting motes of light, layer by layer, priesthood by priesthood, until the last of him dissolved into raw, glittering value, and the silence in my head was mine again. Somewhere outside, an entire world lost its last anchor and began to die. I scooped up Mei Li and flew for the exit as 8 million square kilometers folded up behind us like a stage set, collapsing into a neat stack of divine cards that chased me through the closing door and slapped into my hand. I'd walked in hoping to loot a shipwreck. I walked out having eaten the ghost. I laid Mei Li on my bed, checked her over with divine power, stable, healing, alive, and only then let my hands shake a little. Then I sat next to her and did inventory, because looting keeps my hands busy when my head is loud. 8 divine cards from the collapsed world, and they read like a shopping list written by someone who knew us. 2 resource cards, a black gold mine, and a copper vein. Forge-grade ores, clearly the dwarves' old stomping grounds. An epic equipment card holding 50,000 pieces of dwarven-made gear. A 2 million square kilometer Crimson Forest card, tailor-made for Mei Li's new blood elves. 2 epic breeding cards, fertility and survival up 1,000% for 50 years, which for 2 gods sitting on slow-breeding 5-star races was basically a fertility clinic in card form. A holy spring keyed to elves. And a bloodline card, fairy flower, pure, gentle, healing-oriented flower fairy. I looked at that last one, then mentally at my new poppy flower demons, gorgeous, sinister, all charm and poison, and a genuinely irresponsible idea started doing stretches in the back of my head. What happens if you fuse a saint and a temptress, but the real haul came from the ghost? Decomposing a true god's soul had dumped 100,000 creation points into me. I'd been living on hundreds, and suddenly I was a creation millionaire, plus 2 crystals that floated up out of the wreckage of him. A law crystal, pure compressed comprehension, the stuff enlightenment is made of. And his legacy, the inheritance of the god of thunder, a complete high-rank divine office in crystal form, the kind of thing gods wage wars over. I didn't even consider keeping the thunder for myself. I was already juggling creation, and a man who bites off 3 priesthoods chokes on all of them, but I had someone whose whole aesthetic was already war goddess with a spear. Some gifts pick their own owners. I also decomposed the 3 enemy heroes' remains, and while Botang Stupid the Sun Singles and Shri Waste Not, at 3 stirred in Wasish inside wall, and got 3 designated hero bloodline crystals, each an 80% shot at turning 1 max level dependent into a hero. Mei Li's races had no heroes yet. I set 2 aside for her without really thinking about it, then caught myself doing it, and chose not to examine that too closely. I fell asleep sitting next to her bed, and at some point, gravity and exhaustion negotiated me down onto the pillow beside her. I woke up to a slap. "How dare you take liberties with me?" Full wind-up, crisp delivery. My head bounced. Then she saw my face, and her expression went through several drafts. "Oh, they didn't do it on purpose. Who told you to sleep so close, taking advantage of an injured girl? You were dying. I saved your life. I gave you my bed. And you're clearly fine," she said, then immediately clutched her chest, wilted backward into my arms, and whimpered, "Oh no, I feel so dizzy. Your recovery speed is miraculous. It tracks your convenience exactly." She grinned, dropped the act, and I walked her through the loot, minus one detail. I told her the true god had burned out his own soul in the fight and perished. She looked at me for a long moment with those eyes that miss nothing, clearly filing my lie next to my talent, my priesthood, and every other thing I hadn't explained, and then didn't ask, just smiled and moved on. I handed her the elf cards, the equipment card, and both hero crystals and got tackle kissed on the cheek for it. Little Wei Wei, I love you to death. I sat there with a slap mark on one cheek and a lip print on the other, doing the math on my morning. In this house, apparently, the stick and the carrot arrive within the same hour. Then we both went home to heaven, so to speak, and I got to work on my favorite part of the job, making my people terrifying. First, Xiaoyun. I sent the Thunder Legacy down into her with a suitably majestic decree about brave warriors deserving rewards, and watched my first saint get struck by permanent lightning. When the storm settled, she hovered over the domain wrapped in silver snakes of current, and her panel had grown a line that mattered more than every stat on it. Priesthood, Thunder, 1%. Read that carefully. My dependent, a creature born as an appetizer, was now on the path to godhood herself. Dependents can climb the same ladder we do if they grasp a law, and hers was Thunder, the most violent high office on the menu. She'd also learned to call down 9 bolts of sky-splitting judgment on command, which did wonderful things for sermon attendance. The poppy flower demons, my new second race, I handled more carefully. They'd spent the last stretch worshipping some dead outsider god, and their faith in me was generously 0. Handing gifts to unbelievers while my loyal snail knights mined ore in the sun. That's how a god teaches his church that loyalty is optional. So I waited. Let Xiaoyun preach. Let the two races learn each other. And a few domain years later, when the poppy ladies had genuinely settled in and their faith had warmed from hostage to congregation, then I opened the vault. Fairy flower bloodline card decomposed into a gene. 5,000 creation points poured in because I was rich now and subtlety is for the poor, and a hero crystal on top. The whole race folded into blood red buds. The domain lit up like a greenhouse aurora, and when the flowers opened, out stepped women in white gauze embroidered with blood red poppies. The demon and the fairy fused into one impossible thing, pure and predatory at once. 6 stars. My first 6-star race with buffs and debuffs doubled, healing rain, thorn vines, a bloodlust blessing with no side effects, the version the kobold warlocks wish they had, and a mind control perfume. And their hero, the strongest bud opened last, and the woman inside it looked like the reason ships sink. Her panel was almost rude, an epic hero whose 2 signature skills were the 7 deadly sins and the 7 virtues. Wrath to triple an ally's everything, lust to puppet an enemy's mind, redemption to heal an army, purity to cleanse it. A one-woman heaven and hell. I named her Qingwei, appointed her my second saint, and tried very hard to look like all of this had been my plan from the start, which, for once, it mostly had. Between the new race, the mine I'd fused from the 2 ore cards, and faith income compounding like sin, I condensed 50 points of divinity that week and punched through my first wall. From a low divine being to a mid one breakthrough closer to demigod, which was good timing because I had a duel scheduled. Back at school, the elite class had welcomed me with all the warmth of a shareholder meeting welcoming an audit. The one exception sat behind me, a round, grinning boy in glasses who tapped my shoulder on day 1 and said, "Qinwei, I'm Zhao Hao. Call me Hao Hao." 3rd place in the placement test, war trends, 0 filter, instantly likable. We'd barely traded 3 sentences before a familiar schneer cut in. What's there to spar with? A useless god who got first place by luck. Gao Ming. Of course, every transmigrator gets assigned one of these at customs. Weird, said Hao Hao, without even turning around. How come your luck only got you 4th? I genuinely considered adopting him on the spot. Gao Ming slammed the desk, worked through several shades of purple, and I was too tired for the whole opera, so I skipped to the last page. If you're unhappy, let's fight. You pick the date. Fine, lose, and you kneel and kowtow in front of the whole class and admit you're trash. Sure, I said, and let's make it interesting. Add 2 epic divine cards to the pot. See, kowtows are free. I don't work for free. He choked, but pride had already signed for him. 5 days, school god battle zone. 5 days he clearly needed to finish cooking some secret weapon. 5 days I spent letting my 6-star flower ladies multiply while he sharpened whatever he thought was a knife. Mei Li watched the whole exchange from her desk with her chin in her hand, wearing the expression of a woman watching a mouse challenge a combine harvester, and said nothing at all. Duel day. Gao Ming had been posing in the God Battle Zone since morning, marinating in flattery from a small crowd of classmates who all had strong opinions about my cowardice. Why isn't he here? Scared? Trash day's track, Gao Ming announced, chin at maximum altitude. She's too gutless to even show up. And it's not noon yet, I said from the entrance, strolling in with my hands in my pockets. What's the rush? Are you not planning to live to the afternoon? The crowd made an ooh noise. We stepped onto the god battle stage, and the arena's system voice asked us to pick a mode: virtual battle, simulated armies, no real losses, what civilized people choose, or a battle to the death, real dependence, fought until one side's army is entirely gone. The mode you pick when you don't just want to win, you want to erase someone. Battle to the death, Gao Ming snarled. In the audience, Hao Hao went pale and turned to Mei Li. Aren't you worried? If Qinwei's dependents get wiped, his whole path is over. Mei Li didn't look up from inspecting her nails. Don't worry, she said pleasantly. It's Gao Ming who gets destroyed today. Hao Hao later told me that sentence gave him frostbite. The arena spun up a random battlefield, jungle, dense and dark. Gao Ming actually laughed out loud. Heaven itself helps me. And out poured his army. 80,000 shadow tigers, 4-star jungle predators, plus a second race he'd clearly rushed to have ready for today. 20,000 howling moon werewolves, 5-star jungle assassins, 100,000 apex forest killers on a forest map. Summon your conch, he crowed. I wonder, does a conch out of water just turn into sashimi? The seafood jokes really do follow me everywhere. Who said I only have one race? I asked, and waved 20,000 poppy fairies onto the field. The whispering in the stands turned into confusion. Flower girls? Support units? 20,000 against 100,000? Gao Ming took it as an insult, which was accurate, and hurled his whole army forward. The fairies did the one thing tigers and wolves can't. They flew. His 100,000 land predators arrived at maximum speed, underneath an army hovering politely out of reach, and the charge just expired. Tigers milled, wolves stared upward. Somewhere in the mess, Gao Ming ordered ranged attacks, and dark beams from 80,000 tiger mouths chased fairies who dodged like the air belonged to them, because it did. Then the vines came up from the jungle floor. Then the pink perfume came down. His army stood in the thorns, bleeding gently, wearing the blissful expressions of creatures having a wonderful dream, while their god screamed at them from the sky. You 6-star, you tricked me! His voice was doing new registers now. I'll kill you, I'll definitely kill you. Don't worry, I said. The real show hasn't started. Then I healed his army. You should have seen the stands. My fairies cast their sweet rain over his wolves and tigers, wounds closing, minds clearing, and the entire audience sat there trying to divide by 0. Even Gao Ming froze. Only Mei Li, I'm told, started quietly laughing because she alone had done the arithmetic. In a death match, the battle ends when one army is entirely dead. I wasn't healing his soldiers. I was refilling the hourglass. And then Qing Yue, who had been idling in the fairy ranks like an off-duty apocalypse, revealed herself. The pressure of an epic-grade hero rolled over the arena, and she danced, one slow turn in the air, and the 7 deadly sins opened. Lust. 30,000 of his dependents turned around, eyes pink, and attacked their own army with the devotion of the newly converted. Wolves tore into tigers, tigers broke wolves, and whenever the fighting wore both sides down to the edge of ending, redemption, golden light, everyone healed. Round 2, round 3. His army rose and fell and rose again like tide, dying without being allowed to finish, and Gao Ming's composure fell apart in real time. I surrender, he screamed, and the arena reminded him in its politest electronic voice that death matches don't have that button. He'd chosen the mode himself to erase me. Didn't I tell you? I said. The real show is just beginning. I'm not going to walk you through all of it. It ended when I let it end, when the last of his dependents fell, and I swear the wolves looked relieved. Gao Ming was on his knees on the stage, laughing and crying at the same time, and the entire audience had gone church quiet. As we reappeared before the crowd, I smiled at them, one friendly smile, and 300 future gods simultaneously wrote the same note in their mental planners: never ever provoke Qinwei. Hao Hao bounced onto the stage before the silence broke. Big brother, do you need an accessory for your leg? Then he physically stopped Gao Ming's friends from carrying the wreckage away. The bet! Pay the bet! Fished 2 epic divine cards out of the wreckage's pocket and presented them to me like a golden retriever with a newspaper. As for the kowtow I'd been owed, I looked at what was left of Gao Ming and found I had no appetite. Some payments you waive out of hygiene. Careful, brother, Hao Hao said as we left. His family has real weight, true gods. Then the Gao family doesn't need to exist anymore, said Mei Li mildly, the way other people comment on weather. Hao Hao looked at her, looked at me, visibly refiled us both under a new category, and muttered, all my worrying, and you two are the monsters. The bet turned out to be worth more than the win. Gao Ming's pockets. Thank you. Hao Hao's fast hands held 2 cards he definitely hadn't intended to wager. A training ground card that could fast level 30,000 dependents a day, and a rarer thing called a miracle card. Automatic forging, feed it ore, it builds equipment. No blacksmiths required, up to 100,000 pieces. Most gods would shrug at it. Why forge when you can buy? But most gods can't fuse cards. In my head, a production line was already assembling itself. Mine. Forge. Army. Vertical integration. Divine addition. Over dinner, How insisted on celebrating, and arguing with How is like arguing with rain. He dropped the next milestone into my lap between mouthfuls. Big brother, you know about the league in 10 days? 5 top high schools in the province, right after the newbie month ends. School rankings, resources for the winners, and the personal prize. He got dreamy. Epic cards just for placing. I stopped chewing. The top prizes, legendary grade, orange, plus Dao rhyme fruits for the top 3, heaven and earth treasures. They speed up law comprehension itself, law comprehension. The thing that gates every god's entire future. Sold as a fruit basket. The next day, teacher Fan Hong called me to his office, slid 2 epic cards across the desk, a forging tower and a star-up card for dependents, and said the principal hoped I'd fight for top 3 in the league. Not enough, I said. He stared at me. Kid, these cards are a small fortune. I'll take first place, I said. Add 1 more star-up card. He gritted his teeth, called someone, and a 3rd card arrived within the hour. That's when I learned an important thing about this school. They'd already priced me, and a man who's been priced should always renegotiate. 10 days to the league, 10 years, domain side. Time to turn the workshop up to full volume. Card Session 1, the training ground, fused with a Holy Spring card into a 5-star facility, 100,000 dependents a day, 8 hours, with injury healing built in. My army now had a gym with a spa. Card Session 2, Forging Tower plus the Miracle card, and out came my first orange card ever, the Heavenly Craft Pavilion, legendary grade, an automated forge with bonuses stacked to silly. Session 3, I ripped my existing mine out of the ground. The entire mountain range folded back into card form, which caused a brief theological panic downstairs until I sent a calming decree, fused it with 2 new ore cards, and reinstalled a mega vein, black gold, red copper, wind spirit stone for speed equipment, shadow crystal for stealth gear, and the finale, 2 star-up cards plus 5,000 creation points fused into an orange card with a 70% chance to lift a race from 5 stars to 6. It worked. Of course it worked. At this point, the universe and I had an understanding. My purple gold-crowned snails came out of the light, 6-starred, 5 meters tall, in beast form, shells bristling with spikes, every talent upgraded a grade. Xiaoyun came out epic quality, with her lifesteal aura doubled and her thunder skills hitting 5 times harder. I stood over my world, mines feeding forges, forges arming soldiers, soldiers training in shifts, faith pouring in like weather, and issued the pre-war decree, 10 years of preparation, no slacking. They saluted, all of them in one motion like a wave breaking in reverse. 10 days later, I walked into the league with an army that had spent a decade getting ready, and honestly, so had I. The league. 5 schools, 1 flying boat ride to the host campus, and our principal, a high-ranked true god named Shen Wen, who apparently commuted by private airship, personally escorting his 5 contestants like a man carrying lottery tickets. Me, Mei Li, Hao, plus 2 classmates, quiet, afro and glasses Wen Tao, and a baby-face support specialist named Sun Jing. The waiting hall was a zoo exhibit where all the animals were predators. Hao, who is physically incapable of not knowing gossip, gave us the guided tour under his breath. The red-haired one, glowering by the wall, Dong Ming, top of the host school, born god, 6-star dependents, already wielding a flame law. The ice sculpture next to him, Bing Hua, his girlfriend, equally dangerous, dependents unknown. The polite one, radiating fake serenity, Sun Yang, rumored divine talent. The girl in the red dress with a silver whip and an attitude, He Jing, granddaughter of a principal, hits people recreationally. And that one, Hao murmured, nodding at a smirking young man drifting our way, is Gao Tian. Gao family. Main branch, your new pen pal, big brother. Wonderful. The family whose junior I deleted last month and they'd sent a bigger model. Gao Tian ignored me entirely and slithered up to Mei Li with the confidence of a man whose reflection has never disagreed with him. Excuse me, could we exchange contact information? Mei Li looked at him the way you look at something on the bottom of your shoe. Could you take the slipper out of your throat before speaking? Also, were you aware of your breath? Professionally, I mean, someone should be monitoring it. I laughed. Out loud, couldn't help it. Gao Tian's face cycled through the family colors. He located me, remembered whose face I was, and left us with a stare full of murder and a promise to see me in the tournament. Someone else is courting death, I told Hao, who nodded like we were discussing the menu. The prize table alone was worth the trip. Legendary orange cards for the top 3, and Dao rhyme fruits, actual bottled law comprehension, with 5 of them going to first place. I drew a bye in round 1 and spent it scouting from the stands, cataloging every contestant's opening habits into the mental filing cabinet where I keep other people's tells. How's round 1 match was the feel-good film of the day. His opponent fielded a pestilence build, plague ratmen scurrying under a ceiling of bloated swamp toads, and the crowd braced for something gross and attritional. Instead, our boy demonstrated why you never bring disease to a forest fire. His war trench simply didn't have enough soft tissue to infect. His winged humans owned the entire sky, and the toad's acid lobs kept splashing off bark that regrew mid-battle. It was a rout with a moral. Matchups are destiny, and How had studied everyone's matchups for a month because gossip, weaponized, is intelligence work. He ran back to me afterward, like a puppy who'd fetched a battleship. Big brother, did you see? Am I strong? You did good, How. Sit. Then round 1 gave the whole province a show nobody ordered. Final match, Mei Li versus He Jing, the whip princess. And it started before the fight did because He Jing had spent the entire day watching every pair of eyes in the venue slide off her and stick to Mei Li. Same red dress energy, entirely different tax bracket of face, and had been quietly cooking in her own jealousy since morning. She stepped onto the stage and said, loudly enough for the hall, "Let's bet the loser disfigures her own face." The crowd's blood ran cold. That's not a bet, that's a hate crime with paperwork. Every teacher present shifted, and Mei Li smiled like a sunbeam and said, "Okay." How grabbed my arm. "Big brother, stop her. Sister-in-law, just watch," I said, because I was the only person in that building who'd seen what lives behind that smile. He Jing opened with 250,000 5-star elves, forest archers, and moon elf healers, a genuinely elite army, the crowd murmured. Mei Li tilted her head and said, "What a coincidence. Mine are elves too," and outmarched 250,000 blood elves who halfway through the battle stopped pretending. Black mist rolled over the ranks and they stood up out of it, upgraded. 6-star Dark Knight blood elves in front, 6-star blood elf priest behind. She'd evolved her entire race up a star and split them into 2 specialist branches, and she told no one, and she fielded them like it was laundry day. Assassins Against Archers is a story with one ending. It was over in minutes, and then He Jing tried to fly away from her own bet. The whip princess made it 10 meters before Mei Li plucked her out of the air like fruit. Her grandfather rose off the VIP platform with a roar, and our principal Shinwen rose with him, said something quiet into his ear, and the man sat back down and watched what happened next with his jaw locked. Whatever was in that sentence, Irish kamshidat art den bawan, and it was as kundai I wanted it a sentia than tafwanedi for that Avanixen by the next one. Parallel chance that from years to the short version, may clinker and a flatred padas to them pressured. Not all of it. She left the girl her face mostly, and her life entirely. But when she walked off that stage, the whole venue had learned what I learned in a back alley years ago. The sweet one is the scary one, always. Sister-in-law is a bit different from what I imagined, How whispered Gray. This is the real her, I said, and I didn't bother hiding that it wasn't a complaint. Round 2, my turn, opponent Gao Tian, who'd apparently spent the interval writing material. So you're the trash that crippled Gao Ming? He's a side branch, but he's still family. Have you thought about how you'd like to die? Do all Gao men talk this much? I asked. It's like a foot-binding cloth, long and it smells, fight or leave. He brought dragons, 150,000 dragon-headed warlocks and 150,000 mountain dragons. Real bloodline units, expensive, gorgeous, and arranged in a strategy I could read from orbit. The dragons would stall while the warlocks channeled one enormous spell. Sure enough, a purple sun began to swell over his back ranks. Hellfire, city killer grade. He watched it grow with his arms crossed, savoring. Here's the thing about spells that take 50,000 casters to channel. That's 50,000 minds, and I had brought my flower girls, and Qinghui had been practicing lust. 50,000 warlocks mid-channel suddenly discovered a more interesting hobby. The purple sun wobbled. Gao Tian screamed at them, tried to pump faith into forcing them awake, and found himself inside a cage of water because I'd been saving my new spell, Tidal Prison, for exactly this moment. The water sealed him in, and when he opened his mouth to yell the surrender that would have voided the match, the tide put a hand over his lips, firmly. You picked the stakes, Prince. Ride them. His own hellfire came down on his own army. All of it. When the light stopped, there was ash and the arena's polite voice, and me leaning toward the cage. Your dependence skills are really impressive, I said. He fainted before finishing his blood spray, which I thought showed poor stamina for a main branch talent. After that, the league became a coronation with extra steps. The format for the top 7 was pure theater, 7 thrones floating over the arena in a rising spiral. Take one and hold it. Challenge upward if you dare. Dongming and Binghua, the power couple, tried to intercept me on the way up with a combined ice and fire barrage, his flame serpent and her frost lance twisting together into one very pretty, very photogenic attack, and learned the difference between just grasped a law and my 10% title comprehension. The wave ate their collaboration whole, didn't chew, and I took the highest throne while they were still tumbling through their own steam. Below me, Hou Hou staged the defense of his life for throne 6. A host school bruiser named Liu Chang came up to evict the fat one on the reasonable theory that our gossip king was the soft spot in the province's new order, and discovered what 200,000 war trance and fortress formation actually mean: a wall that punches back. Hou Hou sweated, narrated, apologized to his opponent twice mid-fight out of pure habit, and held, wingman diving through the gaps his trench opened until Liu Chang ran out of army before Hou Hou ran out of forest. The look on our boy's face when the throne stayed his, like a man who'd just been told the exam was graded on effort. Then Sun Yang, Mr. Fake Serenity, challenged Mei Li, and the hall got its money's worth. His unveiled army was genuinely nasty. 200,000 sword spirits, living weapons with top-tier attack, a forest of blades that moved like starlings and cut like opinions. And for once, my girlfriend was on the actual ropes. Her elves' formations shredded faster than they reformed, her whip work buying ground and losing it, the serene man's serenity growing more authentic by the minute. Right up until she got bored and used her talent. I hadn't seen it before either. Cycle of life and death, she said, and one hand began drinking the lifespan out of his entire army, 6-star units withering to 5-star before our eyes, while the other hand poured all that stolen vitality into her own troops, pumping them towards 7-star. Armies aging in opposite directions on the same field. Now we can start over, she told him, sweetly. He surrendered on the spot, which was the first intelligent thing anyone from another school had done all day, and I sat on my throne quietly, recalculating my girlfriend, a talent that eats and redistributes life force that's not adjacent to some minor law. That smelled like reincarnation, the kind of law you mention in the same breath as my creation. 50-50, I decided if we ever seriously fought. Then I decided to never find out, which remains among my best decisions. The finale was Dongming and Binghua versus me. Together because their pride demanded a rematch and mine demanded an audience. I'd caught them trading meaningful glances up at my throne for 10 minutes, working up to a tag team challenge dressed as 2 singles. Stop winking at each other, I told them from the throne. Both of you, come at once. The hall gasped. The couple turned interesting colors. The principals conferred and, to their credit, allowed the 2-on-1, largely because our principal looked at me. I nodded, and he decided to trust the lunatic. They fielded a matched set, because of course they did. His flame demons and 3-tailed fire foxes, her ice demons and 3-tailed frost foxes, 650,000 strong, led by twin hero units, a flame demon lord and an ice demon lord, his and hers apocalypses. Even their armies were couple-coded. Mei Li, from the second throne, made a small gagging sound that I chose to treasure. My 400,000 walked out in forged gear, every soldier armored and armed from my own production line, 50% stronger than the same army a month ago, and the fight had exactly one act. Their opening barrage of intertwined fire and frost broke against star shields. My choir sang their front ranks into ice, and when the 2 demon lords waded in to turn the tide personally, Xiaoyun met them alone, 2-on-1, hero against heroes, and holding, until Qingwei decided holding was undignified. Wrath stacked on my Thunder Queen until her aura bent light. Redemption humming underneath, rebuilding her faster than 2 demon lords could spend her. Xiaoyun's spear went up. The sky went dark on a sunny afternoon, and 9 thunderbolts fused into one came down through both hero units at once. In one flash, 2 empires of careful breeding gone. The Fire Lord's last flame went out in the rain that followed. The Ice Lord didn't even leave a puddle with better insulation. They surrendered together too, couple-coded to the end. Final board, first Chen Wei, second Mei Li. Our school took the province championship for the first time in its history, and our principal grinned so wide I worried about his divine face. Back in his office, he handed me 10 Dao rhyme fruits and a piece of advice. Demigods climb by law comprehension. 10% per rank, 9 ranks, full comprehension lights the divine fire and makes a true god. Then everyone left, and I did the thing they'd all forgotten I could do. I fused all 10 fruits into one, force-fed it 10,000 creation points, and ate a top-tier Dao rhyme fruit that probably shouldn't legally exist. Title law, 10% to 20. And then the fruit's little bonus effect fired. small chance to grant an entirely new law, and my 5 senses exploded outward, sharpened 100-fold, vanished, returned, cycled, until something clicked deep in my skull and settled. Sensory law, a whole second law, with a growth path that ran through desire all the way up to emotion itself. My divine name got longer that night, Lord of the 5 Senses, appended to the collection, and I lay on my bed grinning at the ceiling like an idiot. Around me, somewhere in the dark of the city, were God clan heirs with their inherited priesthoods and their carefully budgeted single laws. Meanwhile, the seafood god had 2, a supreme third in progress, and a workshop that turned school prizes into miracles. The following weeks settled into the best routine of my 2 lives, class a few times a week, empire building the rest. How founded a group chat called the Supreme God Trio, which is the tackiest name ever committed to a server, and the 3 of us started trading cards like the world's most dangerous kindergarten. I swapped him a wine cellar card for a dependence card. Meili traded me an offensive formation card for a fused Dao fruit. With her attack formation and my defense formation merged and overfed with 10,000 creation points, my domain gained the Zhou star array, 28 constellations worth of protective firepower, drawing on the strength of every believer below, rated to trade blows with a mid-rank demigod. I tested it by punching my own sky. My own sky shrugged. Good timing on that, as it turned out, because someone had started watching me. I felt it on the walk to school first, a pressure between the shoulder blades, the specific itch of being measured. Sensory law doesn't do false alarms. I varied my routes. The itch followed. I doubled back through crowds. It waited for me on the far side, patient as rent. Somewhere out there, someone with a scrying focus and a professional's discipline was building a file on me, my schedule, my habits, my power curve as read from outside, and there was nothing to confront because the watcher never came within a province of arm's reach. That's the part that teaches you what an assassin actually is, not a fighter, an accountant doing due diligence before the acquisition. So for 2 weeks, I let him watch a boy walk to school, while the boy quietly moved his growth into overdrive. Another breakthrough to high-rank divine being, 90 billion faith condensed, my people multiplying behind the star array, the constellation grid drilled nightly against attack profiles I invented in the shower. Whoever was out there was scouting, which meant eventually they'd finish scouting, and the file would say, manageable. Seek sword shallots. I intended the file to be out of date by one crucial addition. He finished on a Tuesday. I felt the array shiver and was outside my domain's crystal wall in a blink, face to face with a man in a black cloak gathering divine power against my sky. He didn't bother running. He pulled the hood back off a hard, scarred face and introduced himself like we were at a networking event. The god of trajectory, Zhou Yan, a demigod, 6th rank. The Gao family had skipped several rungs of escalation and gone straight to hiring a professional 2 entire tiers above me. The trajectory office, no less. A god whose law reads the path of everything. Your attacks, your dodges, your future, all laid out for him like train schedules. The Gao family really thinks highly of me, and I said. A 6th revolution demigod. Flattering. A pity, he said, smiling, that such a clever person dies here. He came in like a silver meteor. I answered with my newest toy, sensory enhancement. And the world slowed to honey around me, every twitch of his shoulders announcing itself a half-second early. For a while, we were 2 prophets fencing. He read my trajectories. I read his everything. My water python missed him by layers of silk. My tidal prison caught him for one heartbeat before his eyes flashed silver, found the structural weak point of the prison, which I hadn't known prisons had, and cut himself out through it. It's useless, he called, doing a lazy circle around my best spell. I see every path your attacks can take, just accept your death. And there it was. The thing about trajectory, it's a downstream product. Paths are things you see, hear, feel. Blindness? I said. His eyes went dark. He froze mid-glide. Deafness. The world went silent for him. His head snapped around, hunting for anything. Smell, touch, taste. I shut off his senses one by one, like closing windows in a house, and the god of trajectory hung there in a void of his own flesh, screaming, I assume. He couldn't hear it either, because what exactly is a path reader with no inputs? A calculator in a drawer. His shield still held against my ice spikes on pure reflex. 6th rank defenses are no joke, and my raw output was the one place I couldn't cheat. So I didn't use my output. I reached down into my domain, into the 28 constellations and every soul under them, and pulled. The Jotian star array condensed overhead into a hammer of starlight the size of a cathedral, powered by the prayers of everyone who called me God. The man had crossed a province to kill one student. He got hit by an entire civilization. When it was done, I returned his senses, every one of them, all at once, so he could fully attend his final moment, and stood over him while the light left his eyes. Then I said the thing out loud, to no one, to make it real. The Gao family must perish. Then I looted him down to the atoms, because grief and bookkeeping are both honest work. work. His corpse decomposed into 50,000 creation points, a law crystal, and jackpot. His legacy, the complete inheritance of the trajectory office. I filed the legacy away with a very specific future owner in mind, absorbed the crystal, and watched my rock law, a third law I'd picked up from a spare inheritance along the way. Long story, my life is a yard sale of divine offices, climb past 30%. Then I did the unprotagonist thing. I went and told an adult. Principal Shenwen watched my replay stone of the fight, lightly edited. A magician keeps his sleeves, and his face went from disbelief to something volcanic. A school's champion, assassinated on his watch by a family that had already lost 2 heirs to me fair and square. What do you want me to do? He asked, and I said, pressure, just pressure. Freeze the Gao family for a while. That's all. I'll handle the rest myself, I said, and he looked at me the way you look at a knife you just realized was real. The rest, for now, meant getting stronger on the Gao family's dime, because a dead assassin leaves an empty divine domain, and I had its address. I called the trio. We hit Zhou Yan's ownerless world 2 weeks later, and it was the biggest thing any of us had ever attempted. 3 student gods invading the estate of a dead professional. His domain was a fortress economy, tens of millions of dependents across 4 races, veteran troops that had backed a demigod's assassination career, now masterless, feral, and defending home ground. Our combined expedition force was 5 million. How did the math on the boat over and quietly turned the color of oatmeal. Big brother. They have a holy light griffon, 7 stars. I looked it up. It has a wiki page. And no god, I said. Armies without gods are inventory with anxiety. The opening set the tone. Their griffon-led air wing came over the ridge in parade formation, all golden wings and holy fire, and eye blanket cast sensory deprivation across the entire sky. Not a dual-grade strip, a crop dusting. Millions of eyes, ears, and noses switched off in one pass, and the proud air cavalry of a dead god turned into confused poultry raining out of formation. Mei Li rolled nightfall over the ground forces for the redundancy of it. Blind troops in magical darkness, a strategy with the elegance of a double-locked door. And then Hao cleared his throat, said, I've been practicing something, and unveiled the fact that our gossip king had quietly grasped an actual wind law. Breeze grade, 1%, and he wielded it with the pride of a man presenting a firstborn. Gales shredding the tangled enemy lines while he narrated his own attacks like a sports commentator. Our boy grows. I didn't say it out loud. His ego rides a strict calorie budget. The 4 enemy heroes rallied their races anyway. Even blind, even godless, hero units are hero units, and that's when the finisher we'd choreographed on the boat came down. Mei Li's life drain opened on the heroes, aging their edges soft. Her stolen vitality poured sideways into Xiaoyun, and my Thunder Saint, overcharged and insulted by the whole afternoon, fused her 9 bolts into one column and dropped it on all 4 at once. The crack echoed off the dead god's mountains for a full minute. Nothing under it needed a second bolt. 3 million enemy corpses went through my recycler in an afternoon, 15 million creation points, the single largest deposit of my career to date, and 12 legendary cards got split 3 ways, Big Brother tax included. Hao objected to the tax. Hao received 3 upgrade cards anyway, because if you're going to be my underling, you're going to be a terrifying one. He teared up. We pretended not to notice. The ride home smelled like victory and motion sickness, and then I spent it all on the family, the butterfly project first. I'd used a random dependence card a while back, gambling itch, don't judge, and pulled a 3rd race, Snow Jade Butterfly Spirits Larval Silkworm Archers with a metamorphosis gimmick and the growth rate of a glacier. 2 legendary talent cards, Rapid Growth and Warlike, went into the blender with 50,000 creation points and came out as a single legendary talent, Tyrant. Fast growth, combat experience multiplied, and the line that made me whistle, the ability to break their own star cap. Then a hero crystal plus Zhou Yan's trajectory legacy, and my butterflies had a king, Landling, epic grade, silver-haired, compound-eyed, beautiful in an unsettling way, with a skill that redirects any attack mid-flight. The god of trajectory's stolen office, reborn in a moth. There's poetry in there somewhere, and I refuse to look for it. 3rd Saint, 4th race pending, and upstairs, in the human world, the school year rolled on towards something Hao described with shining eyes, and I heard with ringing ears. The Law Tower, 9 floors, built by a dead god, each floor a construct enemy scaled to your rank. Kill it, absorb raw law energy, climb. Our league win had bought the school 10 entries. Reader, they let me into an all-you-can-eat buffet of the single rarest resource in the universe. Floors 1 through 5, I barely slowed down. The constructs fight on pure instinct, and instinct doesn't answer to intimidation, only to damage, which suited me fine. Floor 1 was a swordsman with the power of a low divine being. One title slap done, and I stood over the glowing puddle of law energy, feeling faintly cheated. Floors 2 through 4 scaled up through mid-tier divine beings, each one dissolving into a slightly larger meal. I fed all of it to my sensory law and watched the percentage climb like a stock I'd insider traded. Floor 5 put up an honest fight. Floor 6 was a half-step demigod and got a mist and ice needle funeral. I filled the arena with fog, let the fearless thing charge in, and condense the fog into 10,000 needles on all sides at once. Constructs don't feel fear, but they do feel acupuncture. Floor 7 ran on a third revolution demigod's power and finally cost me a brute with a flaming axe and a black adhesive fire that my water couldn't smother on the first try. I blinded it. A mad axeman is only a redecorating hazard, caged it in a tidal prison, filled the prison with rotating blades, and finished it with a thrown spear of condensed C. Floor 8, 5th Revolution, was where the tower drew my first blood since Ascension. The construct matched me punch for punch, and one exchange got through and painted my lip red. A novel sensation I hadn't missed. I paid it back with the full package, 3 senses stripped, a water dragon coiling it motionless, ice erupting through the coils, and a final vortex to the chest that shook the floor's walls. Then I sat down right there among the fading light and meditated my divine power back, because I could feel what was waiting upstairs and had no intention of knocking while winded. By then, outside, the whole school was watching 2 dots climb the tower map, mine and Mei Li's. She fought her way through the 8th floor on pure violence and stopped there, spent and bleeding, at the door of the 9th Zussers, and made everyone below remember that the second strongest student in the school was also 2 ranks below half the people she'd outclimbed. The 9th floor's construct was a 7th Revolution demigod, upper tier, a full divine class above me, mindless, merciless, with a punch like continental drift. It also had no idea who it was fighting. I'd learned a new spell on the way up, water transformation, my whole body into liquid, physical damage passing through me like gossip. So when the construct's finishing blow came, I let his fist enter my chest, turned my chest into a whirlpool around his wrist, and then turned all of me into water and went where water goes, everywhere, every gap, every opening, every place a body least once an ocean. It was not a clean technique. It was not in any manual. The construct came apart from the inside, and I reformed on the floor, lying in a puddle that was partially me, wheezing like a kettle. And then the 9th floor paid out. Law energy so dense it had texture flooded the chamber and just offered itself. Tidal law smashed through 50%. Sensory hit 20. When I finally limped out the front door, 4 divine cards drifted down from the tower's crown, and Fan Hong informed me in the tone of a man updating a record book that no one had cleared the law tower in almost 1,000 years. Mei Li was waiting at the entrance, pale, wobbling, injured from her own 8th floor war. Why push that hard that I scolded, checking her over? She looked up at me with those crescent moon eyes and said, "Only in this way am I worthy to stand beside you." And there it was, the little hammer to the sternum, the scariest girl in the province, the one who collects debts in skin and treats emperors' grandsons like gum on her shoe, quietly running herself to the edge to keep pace with me. I put my hand on her hair. "I don't need you standing beside me," I said. "Stand behind me." She smiled like I'd handed her the world. Behind us, Fan Hong coughed the cough of a 400-year-old man who suddenly remembered he had somewhere to be. The tower's clearing rewards turned out to be the missing pieces of my next expansion. 2 domain cards fused into a garden in the sea, 14 million square kilometers of new ocean, with an endless flower garden floating at its heart, which my poppy fairies colonized before the tide finished settling. A breeding card went to the butterflies, and the last 2 cards, a holy church and a miracle card of religious evolution, I fused with 50,000 creation points into my first golden card ever. Mythic grade, the Miracle Church. Here's why that matters. Demigods don't climb on faith alone. Past that gate, you need power of will, a refined fuel that only comes from true religious devotion, prayed out in a real church by real believers. Most gods grind that conversion for decades. My golden church did it automatically. Anyone who prayed inside walked out a full believer, attributes blessed, willpower flowing uphill to me like a tithe with wings. I planted it in the flower garden, white marble the size of a small country, founded the creation sect on the spot, appointed Xiaoyun, high priestess, Qing Yua, and Lanling her deputies, and declared an annual holy day. My civilization now had a state religion, and its god personally attended the ribbon cutting, hovering demurely above the spire, while 3 million converts wept. If teenage me could see this, he'd mostly have questions about the snails. The domain was becoming a country in fast forward. Coastal villages had become brick towns. Towns were sprouting schools. I fused a stack of knowledge cards into an academy of truth, complete with living book spirits as faculty, actual flapping tomes that lecture in tiny pompous voices and confiscate snacks, and issued a mandatory education decree because an empire of warriors who can't read is just a stampede. Xiao Yun's administration split into 4 ministries: surveillance, justice, merit, and general affairs. My conchias were policing. My flowers were doing logistics. The food problem got its own department after my soldiers outgrew ordinary meals the way they'd outgrown ordinary everything. Divine-grade bodies want divine-grade calories. So in went herds of spirit cattle, rivers stocked with spirit fish, orchards that fruit by decree. I fused in a wood spirit hot spring too, a steaming lake that knits hidden injuries and adds years, and it instantly became the single most fought over resource in the empire. My war heroes, terrors of a dozen battlefields, maintain a towel-based reservation system I have been formally asked not to audit. The strangest part of ruling, though, isn't the infrastructure. It's the evenings. I'd float over the capital at dusk and watch the day shut down. Forge fires banking, kids being called in off the beaches, the church bells rolling out over water, and listen to millions of people say my name in their prayers, not asking for anything, just saying it, the way you mention family at dinner. On the annual holy day, the whole coast turns into one festival. Garlands on every snail shell, choir performances that double as artillery practice, and my saints standing at the cathedral rail like the world's most heavily armed wedding party. I attend hovering demurely above the spire, doing the solemn god face, my formless, wait, I haven't told you about the formless yet. Hold that thought. School, meanwhile, had noticed that Mei Li and I had outgrown the first year like a pair of sharks in a fishbowl and offered us a skip grade exam, crashed the second year's midterm, placed top 20, move up. How wanted in and looked, for one honest moment, terrified. The second year elites had a year's head start on everyone. So I pulled him aside and handed him 2 hero bloodline crystals from my vault. He looked at what was in his hand and his jaw actually dropped. Big brother, no, these are too much. I can't. If you're a true brother, take them. They're useless to me right now. What happened next, I didn't script. A drop of divine blood rose off his fingertip. The binding oath, the one that makes a god another god's subordinate body and soul. And he said, dead serious for the first time since I'd met him, I, Zhao Hao, swear by divine blood to become Chen Wei's subordinate god and follow him to the death, the chubby gossip king of our class, offering me his entire eternity because I gave him a present. I caught the blood drop out of the air, held it, and then I answered the only way that oath deserved, not to a god, to a brother. We stood there grinning at each other like idiots, 2 grown deities getting misty-eyed in a school corridor, and I'm not going to apologize for it. In a world where families hire assassins over tournament rankings, you hold on to the people who'd bleed for you at market price, free. The midterm itself, 66 students, our whole elite class crashing the entire second year in a wave defense gauntlet with virtual projections and very real difficulty. The arena rolled the terrain dice and gave me a desert, an endless, scorching, water-free desert for the god of ocean snails. Somewhere in the exam design department, someone was laughing. Wave 1 introduced the locals, hell sandworms, 6-star, several meters of blind armored appetites swimming through the dunes and erupting under your formation, 3 million of them. And here's the beautiful part. Sandworms have no ears. My legendary sonic artillery, the frost chant that had carried me through every war so far, was worth exactly nothing against an enemy that experiences music as a mild vibration. The freeze wrote on the sound, no hearing, no delivery. I watched my snail's opening barrage accomplish light massage and understood the exam had been designed by someone who'd read my file. So the family improvised, and I got to watch what a decade of training had actually bought. Lanling's silver eyes read the worm's movement patterns for 30 seconds, and then his voice cut across the battlefield like a foreman's. The mouth parts, that's the weak point, hit the mid-lunge. Suddenly, every arrow, spear, and starlight claw had an address. Xiaoyun waited for the worm's next mass eruption, touched her spear to the dunes, and converted a chunk of the Sahara into a lake. The desert-adapted horrors of the deep sand discovered, mid-lunge, that the sand was now water, their one native element inverted, and my beast-form snails hit them at double speed in their sudden new home. Terrain is a suggestion. My family declined suggestions. The later waves stacked carrion vultures on top, corrosive-blooded sky filth that hunted my fairies, and the answer to those was pure Qingyue. She waited until the vulture hero led its flock in a dive, met its eyes, and marked it with lust. The enemy's own air commander pulled out of the dive and body-checked its flock out of the sky, wings snapping wings while my butterflies picked off the tumbling survivors. By round 6, the enemy count hit 30 million with 2 hero units, and clearing it cost me 2 million dependents and every trick on the board. The Sandworm King ate 18 arrows, a vine lattice, and a 9-bolt strike before it stopped moving. I exited there on my own feet by my own choice because round 7 was designed for gods a full year ahead of me, and I don't donate armies to pride. 4th place overall, behind 3 genuine third-year monsters, a rock law tank, a lightning duelist, and a quiet healing law girl named Hiwei, who simply outendured the entire planet. Mei Li took 5th, and squeaking through at exactly 20th, powered by his 2 new hero units and more luck than any mortal deserves, came one deliriously happy Hao Hao, who spent the next week introducing himself to strangers as 20th in the 2nd year with the gravity of a man announcing a coronation. Before that, though, the 2nd year got shipped out on a field trial that taught me the thing this world's textbooks skip on purpose: original planes, natural worlds, not god-built domains, but wild planets that grew on their own, with native races, native treasures, and native gods who never enrolled anywhere. The school farms them, sends students in pairs, clear the guardians, haul out the loot, 30% tax. Mei Li and I drew a plane, the intel sheet called the Flower Realm, and the name undersold it. A world 3 times the size of my domain, where everything was petals, meadows like spilled dye to the horizon, trees that bloomed instead of leafing, and a flower clan 100 million strong living in the middle of it, tending their world like a garden because it was one. Its guardian met us at the border, a goddess in white robes on a white lotus the size of a plaza, purification law wrapped around her like morning light. 4th revolution. She looked at the two of us with the tired, hard-eyed expression of a border guard who has processed this exact paperwork before. Outward gods again, she said. You people never stop coming. I want to flag that word. Again. It'll matter. The war below went the way our wars go. Mei Li's elves and my legions against flower soldiers who were brave and outclassed. The duel above went longer. Lotus Heart was good. Her light burned corruption out of the air. My water came back to me clean and useless, and it took the full double team. My sensory scramble stripping the Lotus Mark that anchored her law, my tidal vortex, and Mei Li's black fire braided through it to bring her down. And when she finally hung there, robes scorched, law guttering, dying in front of 2 teenagers from a school she'd never heard of, she smiled. Not defiance, relief. We finally made it this far, she said, to nobody we could see. Then the center of the world burst. A bud the size of a fortress, I'd taken it for a mountain, opened petal by dark red petal, and out of it rose a woman crowned in spider lilies, with power that made Lotus Heart's entire fight feel like the doorbell. Manchu, the plane's true ruler, 8th revolution. As of that very hour, she'd been in seclusion, breaking through, and her guardian, her sister in everything but blood, had been holding the door and buying time and dying to protect the breakthrough. The red spider lilies bloom, Manchu said, and the sky went crimson, and the river is sealed. Our teleport jade died in my hand, the exits were gone. An 8th revolution against 2 students is not a fight, it's a weather event. Her bloodspring mist corroded thought itself. Mei Li's dark affinity was the only reason we kept our minds, and we survived the opening minutes on movement and spite, but she was an hour old at her new rank, grief shaken, wide open, and we were us. We worked her in shifts, wore a real wound into her guard, and I put everything I had left into one spear line at her heart. Lotus Heart took it. The dying guardian dragged herself between us on the last of her law and caught my killing blow with her body, and Manchu caught her, and the two of them hung in the crimson sky, the evil flower cradling the pure one. While 10,000 years of partnership bled out between them, Lotus Heart turned into light, and the light turned into a single white lotus in Manchu's hands. I'm not going to put a joke here. Manchu looked up from the flower, and her grief had gone somewhere past screaming. 10,000 years, we kept this world, she said. We never went out. We never touched your realms. Why do you outward gods keep coming? Why did you kill her? Why? And I stood there with my spear in my hand and no answer, because the honest answer was unbearable. For her, this world was home. For us, it was a resource node with a tax rate. Nobody had wronged her by malice. She'd been wronged by a syllabus. Her answer to the silence was the sky. Every spider lily in the world lifted off at once, a suicide burn, her whole life and law converted into one crimson tide, meant to take us and half the plane with her. Mei Li grabbed my shoulder, and I felt her talent open, the cycle of life and death draining the dying world's loose vitality and Manchu's own bleeding edges and pouring all of it into me, ranks I hadn't earned, flooding my channels while blood ran from her own lips with the effort. I met the burning sky with an ocean. The collision unmade the horizon. When the light faded, I was on my knees in a crater of petals, holding a power I'd rented from my girlfriend's bloodline, and Manchu was dissolving. She was still asking it. Why? It was Mei Li who answered. Flat, cold, and more honest than I could afford to be. There is no why. You weren't strong enough. Without strength, you can't protect what you cherish. That's all this world is. Monshu laughed at that, a long, mad, almost grateful laugh, and came apart. Where she'd been, two flowers drifted down together, one red spider lily, one white lotus, their roots grown into each other so tightly no law could have said where one ended. We flew home in silence. Shen Yue read our report with her jaw somewhere near her collarbone. A 4th revolution and an 8th, killed by 2 students, and the school paid out compensation like it was apologizing. I spent a week in recovery, and longer than that chewing on the trip. The 2 entwined flowers went into my talent together, and I won't pretend the recycler is a gentle place, but what came out was the only headstone I could give them. Their 2 natures, purity and corruption, mercy and hunger, fused into a single legacy the panel named the Law of Good and Evil. I carried it down into my domain and gave it to Qing Wei, my flower saint, the one being I own who is both of those women at once. She took it the way you take something you recognize. Her sins sharpened, her virtues deepened. And somewhere in the paperwork of the universe, a garden that no longer exists kept growing. For a few weeks after, when I watched my own people kneel at evening prayer, I heard the question in my head, why do the outward gods keep coming? I don't have a better answer than Mei Lise. I've just decided which side of it my family will be standing on. The trial also broke my last mortal ceiling. The fight, the borrowed ranks, and the crystals it left behind shoved me through the demigod gate in First Revolution, the rank where laws stop being a hobby and start being a career. And my new rank got its first workout immediately because Qingdao High came calling. Shandong's #1 school, fresh off our league win, making the national gossip circuit, arrived with 5 students and a challenge, an interprovincial 5-on-5, honor and treasure on the table. Our side was the midterms, top 5. He Yue and her healing law, Li Tao's lightning, Panhu's rock, me, and Mei Li, whose angels had quietly grown a 3rd pair of wings since anyone last checked. The arena dice gave us an ice plane, which favored their frost specialist so neatly you could hear the dice grinning. They were good. Their Spider-Woman's webs caught Li Tao's lightning spirit mid-blink and held it like a fly. Their Moon Rabbit alchemist, an actual combat pharmacist, kept lobbing buff elixirs over the line until their whole front rank glowed. And their ace move was worth the ticket price. Their Frost hero rose over the field and dropped a hero-grade ultimate 10,000 miles of ice, a white wall of absolute winter rolling across the entire arena toward all 5 of our armies at once. Lanling had been waiting the whole match for something worth his time. My butterfly saint borrowed a thread of He Yue's Azure Lotus power, support laws stack, and he'd been chatting up her hero all match with exactly this in mind. Spread his silver threads across the sky and performed the single largest trajectory shift of his career. The wall of winter slowed, curved, and rolled back the way it came over the army that had cast it. Return to sender, he said, which for Lanling is practically a victory parade. The hero duels after that were cleanup. Lanling interrupted their 6-winged hero seal mid-syllable and ashed him with a light arrow, and the pig tank hero learned what happens when Medusa and a Thunder Queen pick the same target. Qingdao's captain surrendered with a bow. Their principal congratulated ours with actual grace, which after a season of Kyoto-style manners felt like being handed a warm towel. The rewards mattered more than the score. 2 mythic cards and a pair of divine flame grass stalks that I fused and swallowed. The burn scoured the impurities out of my flesh and pushed my body another full grade toward the absurd. Then came the month that changed my ceiling. It started with a stack of crystals from all my recent decompositions and ended with my panel unrecognizable. The blood key of dismantled beasts hardened my body to half-step true god. The flesh alone, now sturdier than most demigods' whole existence. The fused law crystals rammed my title comprehension to its absolute limit, 99.99%, one breakthrough away from claiming an entire divine office the day I hit true god. And the inheritance crystals, the yard sale continued, did something better than addition. Gravity plus my rock law fused into the earth law, a full mid-tier office, and the sensory inheritance of a certain dead god layered onto mine cracked open a barrier I'd been circling for months. The 6 desires, eye, ear, mouth, tongue, body, mind, shattered like glaze, and sensory law evolved into desire law. Sit with that lineup a second. Ocean adjacent tidal law, essentially complete. Earth, desire wind. I'd absorbed a breeze law inheritance too, deliberately, and creation grinding upward behind them all. Because here's the end game I'd stop saying out loud even to myself. Earth, water, fire, wind, the 4 foundation elements. Legend says a god who masters all 4 fundamental laws can condense the law of origin, world law, a supreme office on par with creation itself, with a rumored bonus that reads like a typo, a second divine domain. In the entire history of this universe, no one had ever done it because no one can master 4 high laws in one lifetime. No one had a recycling plant before either. I was 1 element short, fire. And fire, as it happened, was about to be hand-delivered by an idiot. But first, the final exam and the single strangest fight of my life. The boundary domain, a sphere-shaped artifact the school used for siege testing. Defend your simulated domain against endless waves. Highest points win. My star array and thunder towers turned the early waves into a light show. My 4th race finally got its public debut. The Formless, a random card gamble that paid out absurdly. 7-star mist beings with no faces and 1 talent. Perfect replication of anything they've ever seen. Mid-battle, my Formless watched the enemy's storm spirits work for about a minute, then became storm spirits, slightly better ones, and I finally understood what I owned, not a race. A mirror that outnumbers you. The siege itself deserves a moment, because it was my defense infrastructure's graduation exam. Wave after wave broke on the star array first, starlight chains lashing out of the sky to shred attackers before they touched the wall, then on the thunderflame towers, then on the armies. My Formless stole the show mid-battle. The enemy fielded storm spirits, elegant windcasters, and my mirror people watched them work for 1 minute, became them, and sent the enemy's own signature attack back through their lines with better aim. When the 8 and 9-star waves finally cracked the outer defenses and made it to spear range, Xingyue unveiled her newest domain, good and evil, allies marked white, enemies marked red, and every white mark strike ignoring enemy defenses entirely, and my saints went through the elite waves like auditors through cooked books. Hiyo, the endurance monster, held 2nd place on the scoreboard. I held 1st at triple her score, which is why I got curious, went looking for the source of the enemy waves, found a black hole at the edge of the simulation, and, bathed in the spirit of scientific inquiry, got eaten by it. Inside was me. The starlight condensed into a figure, and the figure was wearing my face, my stance, and, I checked, my smirk, which I resent, because from the outside it really is that punchable. A perfect copy. My laws, my spells, my divine body, regenerating endlessly off the starry void. We traded tsunamis. They canceled to the droplet, traded sensory strikes. Both of us went briefly blind and healed in sync. I hit it with the ocean. It hit me with my ocean. I tried rhythm breaking, faint high, commit low, and watched it faint high and commit low on the same beat because its instincts were my instincts, and you cannot outguess a coin that is also you. I tried talking to it because at minute 12 of fighting your own smirk, you'll try anything. It talked back, in my voice. Same joke, better timing, which I maintain is impossible and refuse to discuss. 20 minutes of the most frustrating fight of my life. Imagine chess against your own reflection, except the reflection's clock never runs down because the void kept refilling its power while mine only drained. A war of attrition against a photocopy with a trust fund. I couldn't out me myself. And the one law that could break the loop, creation, was the one I refused to flash where the proctor might see, so I cheated in a direction the copy couldn't follow. I wrapped myself in a sphere of water for privacy, pulled out a rock law inheritance crystal I'd been saving, and swallowed a brand new law mid-duel. The copy was a snapshot of me at the moment of scanning. The me of 90 seconds later put a mountain range through it. Afterward, teacher Shen Yue, who supervised and saw the water sphere and could count, kept me back. I braced for the interrogation. Instead, she said roughly, "I know you have secrets, I don't care, but hear this, a genius who hasn't finished growing is nothing. The tall tree catches the wind. Be careful until you're absolute." Also, she mentioned in passing that the boundary domain wasn't really a training artifact. It was a prison built to hold a sinful god. The waves in the cloning black hole were its warden mechanisms. The school had been running gym class inside a containment unit. I decided to be flattered they trusted us with it. Winter break brought an invitation card with gold lettering, elite training camp, 15 key schools, 3 slots each, 2 months, generous rewards, and the line that sold me, bonus points on the college entrance exam. Shen Yue handed 3 invitations to me, Mei Li, and He Yue, and wished us luck with a face that, in hindsight, was the face of a woman who knew exactly who ran the camp. The military ran the camp. We found that out at the gate, 5 minutes late, when an instructor slapped triple gravity on us as a punishment for tardiness before we'd even said hello. Inside, barracks, drill fields, a man named Instructor Zhang with a jaw like a fortification, and 45 of the most talented young gods in the country being informed that they were now soldiers sorted into castes by rank, sun, moon, star badges, with dorms to match. The Sun Badge crowd got hotel suites. My Star Badge crowd got a 5-man room where the beds were a roomer and breakfast was rice porridge with pickles. The daily challenge system let you duel anyone for their badge. You can guess my to-do list. But first, day 1, the Divine Body Limit Run. No divine power allowed. Pure flesh. An obstacle course designed by someone who hated joy. Mud crawls under razor wire that turned out to be actual razors. A cliff wall with handholds spaced for a species taller than ours. And a track where the gravity stacked another notch with every lap so that lap 1 was jogging and lap 9 was jogging while wearing a planet. Around me, the cream of 15 provinces discovered what their inherited bodies were worth without the divinity subsidy. Gods dropped like laundry. Heirs who'd never carried their own luggage folding at lap 3. A Sun Badge prodigy weeping into the mud with great dignity at lap 5. Yui went down at hour 2, which for a support specialist is heroic. Mei Li went half an hour past her on pure spite, glaring at the track like it owed her family money. In the end, it was me and a pretty boy 6th Revolution demigod named Zhang Fei, grinding lap after lap in a private 2-man war neither of us had declared. He was genuinely built, real training under the silk, not just pedigree, and he kept checking my face for the collapse that kept not arriving, and every check wound him tighter because, as I'd learned, he had never in his life been second at anything. He collapsed. I ran until the world went sideways, woke up in a bunk, and found out I'd taken first, and that instructor Zhang had appointed me, a lowly 2nd Revolution Star Badge nobody, to lead the morning training. In a room full of aristocrat prodigies, Jing Fei's expression could have preserved meat. You can chart the next 2 weeks by his escalating malfunction. Day 2, he cornered me at breakfast to mock my porridge. I finished the porridge. That afternoon, his lackey accidentally launched an attack at my back in the challenge hall. The attack bounced, the lackey flew, and I asked loudly whether he was okay since he'd clearly tripped. His other lackey, a 4th Revolution named Wu Lei with the Sun Badge, formally challenged me, bless him, and put his hotel room badge on the line against my army. 10 minutes later, I had a private suite, and Wu Lei had a new hobby, staring at walls. Then I challenged Zhang Fei myself because the lesson wasn't landing. He sneak attacked before the bell. Venom snakes, his poison law, genuinely nasty. And I decided the demonstration should be thorough. Sensory law. I scrambled his vision and turned his pain dial up until a handshake would have read his surgery. Then I beat him with exactly the kind of methodical, unglamorous thoroughness that an audience never forgets, pinned him to the stage with 4 water spikes, and asked conversationally if he still planned to get revenge. He said yes. I resumed. He revised his position. The crowd watched their 6th Revolution golden boy get processed by a 2nd Revolution nobody, and the challenge requests aimed my way dried up permanently by dinner. The one who starts it, I told the silent hall on my way off the stage, is the despicable one. Instructor Zhang watched all of this from the sideline with the expression of a fisherman watching the fattest fish in the lake jump into his boat and started sliding me extra rations of the camp's body-tempering fruits. I fused mine, naturally, 6 fruits into one concentrated coal of a thing that burned going down and kept burning for a day, and within a week my divine body, already monstrous, pushed up through the 7th Revolution band. The camp's 2nd phase was the part I'd actually have paid for, the Heavenly Illusion Spirit Array, a formation hall where you sit in a circle with 44 other prodigies, while the array manufactures your personalized apocalypse. Fire that knows your name, cold that starts inside your bones, blade storms calibrated 1 notch past what your law resistance can shrug off, not real damage, real everything else. Each of us clutched a Jade Escape token. Crack it and you're out. No shame. See you tomorrow. The hall averaged a dozen cracked jades an hour. I never cracked mine. And not because I'm brave, because I'm greedy. 4 laws means the array had 4 angles to burn me from, and every angle was a free lesson. The fire illusions fed my flame-adjacent senses. The pressure drills fed earth. The drowning sequences were, frankly, a home game. I sat and manufactured hell 8 hours a day with the smug internal arithmetic of a man being paid in 4 currencies at once, while around me, single-law aristocrats gritted through their one personalized nightmare. Comprehension crept up 1% at a time, across the whole board. Compound interest, the nightmare edition. By the end of the phase, the array's operator was reportedly asking Instructor Zhang what exactly I was, and Instructor Zhang was reportedly smiling and saying nothing, which from him is a full endorsement. The camp's real gift, though, came from its hero tournament, 3-on-3 battles of dependent heroes only, which sounds fair until you remember most students at that level own exactly 1 hero, and I owned a staff meeting. Round after round, my trio adapted like weather. Against a squad of 7-star bruisers, Landling found the diamond golem's hidden weak point 3 inches under the left chest, called out loud like a foreman marking a beam, and precision did the rest. Against the round where Instructor Zhang helpfully fielded a soldier team, my 3 ate a harpy, a stone titan, and a grass shaman without changing formation. The quarterfinal deserves its own line item because the enemy was pandas, Taiji iron-eating beasts. 7-star, black and white, adorable, and built like theology. Half their body absorbed attacks, the other half returned them doubled, and they rolled between the two states faster than targeting could track. The stands cooed. The stands then watched Landling solve cuteness with bureaucracy. His trajectory sharing skill linked his path sight to Medusa's eyes. My Li had loaned her out for exactly this, and the petrification beam started arriving where the pandas were going to be, curved around their rolls like the light itself had read their diary. A panda mid-transition between absorb and reflect is just a bear. Statues of bears in playful poses at the end. The stands stopped cooing and started taking notes. The semi-final against Zhang Fei, his third try at me for those counting, I fielded as pure psychological warfare. No Xiaoyun, no aggression, just the full support package. Qing Wei, Mei's Angel Commander Gabriel on loan, and He Wei's Azure Lotus Fairy, 2 healers and a buff engine stacked on one another until Gabriel glowed like a pocket sunrise, a full star above his rank. Zhang Fei's trio Alpha struck the Angel with everything they'd saved up. Temperance took the entire barrage, 10 seconds of blank invincibility, and Apocalypse spent on a wall, and then Qing Yue marked all 3 attackers with lust and gave them her gentlest smile. "Await the holy swords," she said in her pulpit voice. "I will be waiting for you on the other side." Zhang Fei's heroes were smiling too as Gabriel's blades came down. That's the part the camp talked about for weeks, not the loss, the smiles. And in the finals warm-up act, the bracket handed Xiaoyun a solo assignment. 1 lane, 3 enemy heroes, 2 7-stars, a blizzard demon, and a woolly yeti, anchored by an 8-star frost giant whose ambient cold froze snowflakes solid in the air around it. She took the 7 stars first, on the principle of eating the bread before the steak. Abyssal Thunder Prison dropped over all 3, a cage of grinding lightning, and while the giant tanked it on ice armor, the demon and the yeti cooked. Then it was her and the giant was a problem. Every crack her spear opened in its armor froze shut, its counterblows through glaciers, and its final stand called an entire winter down on the lane, ice spikes erupting in waves. So my first believer showed the camp her new trick. Divine Thunder Armor. The lightning stopped being her weapon and became her clothing. A full body suit of living current, woven bolt over bolt, until a war goddess stood in the ice storm dressed in the storm's angrier cousin. She walked through the winter, spikes shattered on her shoulders like complaints. At spear's reach, she fed 9 thunderbolts down the shaft into a single thrust, punched through ice armor, ice shield, and the arctic pride of an 8-star hero, and the giant went down steaming. The stands were full of aristocrat prodigies who owned heroes the way they owned watches. They watched a snail win a war in Kucher Lightning, and the applause had a very educational nervousness to it. The final was the only round that scared me, and it scared me by being a mirror. Deng Lei, the one genuinely friendly rival the camp produced, a grinning northerner who'd been trading tactics notes with me at breakfast all month, fielded a trio built exactly like mine. A fallen angel bruiser for his Xiaoyun, a peach fairy support running buffs and heals for his Qing Yue, and a phantom scorpion assassin for the role of nasty surprise. Comp versus comp, doctrine versus doctrine, and his surprise landed first. The scorpion's sting carried an illusion venom, and my Thunder Queen, my anchor, the piece I build every fight around, took a graze and went wandering, spear swinging at enemies 3 meters to the left of where enemies were, trapped in a private blizzard only she could see. His fallen angel moved in on her like a debt collector. Qing Wei's purity reached her 1 wing beat ahead of the axe. The venom burned off in a flash of white, and Xiaoyun came back to reality mid-swing with the specific fury of a proud soldier who has just been made to look drunk in public. The rest of the final took 90 seconds and most of the arena's lighting. 9 thunderbolts have a way of ending arguments about doctrine. "Your support's better than mine," Deng Lei said afterward, entirely cheerful, shaking my hand like we'd finished a board game. First person in that whole camp to lose to me and mean the handshake. I keep a short list of those. It fits on a stamp. The champion's prize was a pair of mythic-grade hero cards, which I fused, overfed, and watched turn a color I'd never seen on a card before. Red. Ancient grade, the tier true gods play at. I used it on my formless, and the birth was the strangest thing my domain has ever hosted. The card circled the mist people like a dog choosing a lap, picked one, and merged, and the chosen formless became a storm of gray smoke that grew and grew, while every other formless in the domain drifted close and went utterly still, the way a crowd goes still around a cradle. When the smoke condensed, my fourth saint stood in it, Gao Wu, mercury-skinned, taller than the rest, the first of his kind, whose blank face held the faint suggestion of features, like a statue the sculptor had just barely begun. And when he knelt and spoke, his voice came out doubled, 2 tones in perfect agreement. Thank you, my god. I will cross any void for you. Around him, tens of thousands of faceless mist people erupted in celebration, which for the formless means shapeshifting through their entire repertoire at once. The plaza became a churning zoo of every creature they'd ever copied. Wolves becoming angels, becoming snails, becoming each other. And I stood in the sky doing the solemn god voice over what was essentially the world's weirdest baby shower. His kit made my tactician heart sing. A domain that boosts every copy his race makes to beyond the original strength, my mirrors now improve what they reflect. A void realm mirror that swallows enemy attacks and returns them with interest. Free movement through the void itself. Space treated as a hallway. And shortly after, thanks to a certain elephant god's donated inheritance, he'd add an actual space vibration office to the list. A law whose upgrade path runs through space itself and dead ends in theory. At space-time, my faceless son might someday hold half of the same supreme law I inherited from a god emperor. I try not to think about that at bedtime. My mirror race had a king who could fold the battlefield, and the battlefield never stopped paying for it. Which brings us to how Zhang Fei died. And no, it wasn't me. Technically, the camp sent us out in squads on a recon mission to a wild plain. Observe only. Don't engage the native god. My squad, by the instructor's excellent humor, included Zhang Fei and his 2 lackeys, and Jiang Fei, who had spent weeks marinating in humiliation, saw his chance. Deep in enemy territory, he lobbed an attack at my back, not to kill me himself, but to blow my cover to the plains' native god, an 8th-revolution elephant-headed colossus, and let the local wildlife do his revenge for him. Borrowed knife murder, a family classic, I'd learn later. But knives are funny things. I felt his strike coming 3 full seconds before it launched. Sensory law doesn't nap. Dodge so that the attack cracked open the sky right where the elephant god was passing, and then, as the furious colossus turned, I pointed at Jiang Fei and shouted the most strategically dishonest sentence of my career. Boss, the enemy god is here. Take him down. The elephant god looked at the 6th revolution demigod, now labeled boss. Jiang Fei looked at me with an expression I will treasure until the heat death of the universe, and the plains guardian reasonably opened negotiations with the strongest visible target. Jiang Fei actually fought well. His poison law melted divine flesh off an 8th revolution god, credit where due. He also lost, was crushed by a space vibration law that folded him like origami, and in his final act detonated his own divine core to take everyone with him. The blast crippled the elephant god, missed us, and finished Jiang Fei so completely there wasn't enough left to loot, which I resent to this day. I finished the wounded native god, took its corpse, and turned to the 2 surviving lackeys, who were doing very fast math about witnesses. 2 options, I said, submit or join him. 2 drops of divine blood floated over before I'd finished the sentence. My subordinate god roster doubled on the spot, and when we reported back, all 3 of us gave Instructor Zhang the exact same tragic account of how brave Jiang Fei sacrificed himself against a wild god. Shang looked at me for a long moment, a man who had absolutely reconstructed the entire event from our faces, and said he'd report it accordingly. In this world, I was learning the dead have no value, and everyone important already knows it. The camp's last stretch opened with a graded challenge. Pick any soldier from the instructor cadre and fight for rewards scaled to the gap you dared. The cadre ranged from 1st Revolution to 9th. I waited for everyone else to choose, walked up to a 9th Revolution veteran and pointed. Kid, he said, I'm a 9th Revolution demigod. Pick someone else. You're the one, I said. Domain battle is 400 million dependents, 4 races, 4 heroes, a career soldier's discipline machine against my armies and my 4 saints, and it was a real war, not a demonstration. His white jade tortoises curled into spinning razor shells that my snail's sonic barrage couldn't crack. Xiaoyun answered by converting the battlefield's center into a lake, because we always answer terrain disputes by replacing the terrain, and dragged the tortoise legion into water where my beast forms doubled. His berserk fishmen hit blood boil mode. Xing Yue sealed their heroes charging water cannon mid-charge with a jealousy mark, skill lockout, one of her nastier sins, while Xiaoyuan caught the fish hero's steel trident between 2 fingers, snapped it like a grissino, and invited the room to reconsider its assumptions. His flame demons scorched my butterflies out of one sky. Landling's trajectory threads bent their own fireballs into their own ranks in the next, but the sequence I want carved somewhere involved his ace, a hero-class calamity catwoman, a sleek horror of bad luck who had spent the battle lurking and who, when her side's collapse became arithmetic, went to her ultimate doomsday calamity, a death curse that burns the caster's whole life to kill everything on the field, both armies, all of it. Her body went transparent, black mist poured off her in tides. My own saint's warning came from Gao Wu, flat and urgent. Baek, all of you, that's the end of the world. They fell back. He stepped forward. The Catwoman detonated her existence, and a hemisphere of devouring night bloomed across the battlefield, and above it rose a silver mirror, wide as the sky wanted to be. Drinking, Gao Wu stood under his Void Realm mirror with both hands raised, my other three saints pouring their power into him like water into a straining dam, and an entire hero's dying apocalypse went into the glass like spilled tea into a towel. The mist thinned, the mirror settled, the battlefield was still there. The Catwoman's last transparent expression before she finished dissolving was the purest professional offense I have ever seen. She'd paid everything. He'd countered it with furniture. The veteran surrendered with the grace of a man whose worldview needed a patch. Are all high schools this twisted now? He asked. No, I said, just me. He liked me enough to help hide the result. A second revolution beating a ninth looks bad for everyone's blood pressure. And Instructor Zhang liked me enough to do two things. First, hand me a reward stack that included a 5-star mythic church card, which I fused with mine into an ancient grade cathedral that quadrupled my power of will income overnight. Second, sit me down, look me in the eye, and offer me a direct commission into the military. Colonel Track, he said, once I hit true God. The world isn't as peaceful as you imagine, he told me. When I asked what an army even does in a world with no countries, I can't tell you more at your rank, but there's no such thing as a carefree era. Only someone carrying the weight for you. I declined politely. I'd already decided my road ran through a certain brutal university, not a barracks, but I filed the sentence away in the drawer where I keep things that will definitely, absolutely become my problem later. Spoiler, the drawer is load-bearing, and then the camp graduated us the military way with a real war. The final assessment was 3 live invasion missions posted on the merit stelae like a menu with a body count, a desert plain, easy, safe, modest rewards, a volcano plain, medium, and the azure abyss, an ocean plain, 300 million native dependents at 6 stars and up, intel flagged with the phrase suspected high-rank demigod ruler, rewards to match, real battles, real casualties. The instructors said that part twice. I signed for the abyss before the ink on the notice dried. Mei Li asked separately which she'd take, gave the answer that tells you everything about why we work. The path to godhood is fraught with danger anyway. It's worth a try. We went in as a pair. The abyss earned its intel sheet. A world that was one single ocean, deep past the sense of the word, ruled by 3 races in layers. Silver coin jellyfish, whose sting carried a neurotoxin that read divine flesh as a suggestion. Aurora flying fish that hit like railgun rounds and left light trails on the retina. And above them all, the true owners of the plane, sirens. Beautiful, pale, patient, with a song that didn't attack the body at all. It walked straight past the body and started rearranging the crew. The naval war was my kind of war, right up until it wasn't. My snails met the jellyfish clouds with the frost chant and shattered them by the millions like bad chandeliers. The flying fish learned that star shields don't care about muzzle velocity. Then the siren choirs surfaced, and my entire front line, soldiers I'd bred, armored, trained for decades of domain time, went dreamy-eyed and started swimming the wrong way. Qinggui's purity burned the charm off in waves, but she was one saint cleansing an ocean's worth of lullaby. So the formless solved it, and I want this maneuver taught in schools. 50 million of my mirror people took one long look at the sirens and became sirens. 120% output, remember, and outsang them. 2 choirs of impossible creatures dueling across the open sea, hymn against hymn, my counterfeit sirens unpicking the real one's harmonies note by note, while the water between them literally boiled from the pressure of opposed sound. The enemy's own weapon returned with a better arrangement somewhere below. I felt the plane's actual owner notice, and notice undersells what I felt back. There was a terror at the bottom of that ocean, a pressure like a mountain range holding its breath, and it was getting stronger while I listened. I went down alone, through dark that got personal, to a sealed cave in the seabed crusted with restriction runes, and I did the single rudest thing of my career. I broke in on a goddess mid-breakthrough, the Siren God, peak 9th revolution, and at that exact moment, straddling the threshold of true godhood, her whole existence gathered into the crossing. The interruption snapped the ritual like a spine. The power she'd spent a century gathering blew back through her, and what stood up out of the wreckage of the ceremony was a half-step true god with a complexion like drowned marble and a case against me that no court would even hear arguments on. "You've ruined my path to immortality," she said, very quietly, which from an almost true god is much worse than screaming. "I'm going to devour you, and with your law added to mine, perhaps I'll try again." The duel at the seabed was the hardest thing the camp ever graded. Her law was tidal, my own office's elder sister, wielded with 9 revolutions of authority, and the home ocean obeyed her like a dog. Her song I answered by deafening myself, which turned the most beautiful weapon in the plane into mime work. Her icebergs I took on the ocean current body and felt them anyway, and her real weapon, the one the intel sheet had no line for, was a lash of tentacle quicker than my sensory law could call it. It opened my side to the ribs and painted the water red, and for one long moment I got to experience being prey in my own element. Then I stopped fighting her ocean and started fighting her. Full sensory strip. 5 senses gone, an almost god suddenly alone in a black silent nowhere. 3 tidal sea spirits raised at once, the whole choir of my innate spell, and over the top of it stacked both of my advanced arts in one breath. The endless tsunami and the meteorite, a falling sky driven into a rising sea with her in the seam. The seabed is, I'm told, still the wrong shape. I don't actually remember finishing her. I remember the wall of white and then waking on the surface with my wound closed and my tank empty and a new line glowing on my panel that explained the closed wound. My creation law, without being asked, had spent the blackout hours quietly rebuilding its owner. My supreme office had opinions about my survival. Good, so did I. The bill, when I could read it. 50 million of my dependents dead. The worst losses of my life. 4 times the exam that would later make me stare at a ceiling. And elsewhere, in the camp's 3 missions, 3 students who never came back at all. The camp posted their names on the merit stele in gold and said nothing else because the military doesn't do eulogies, it does next of kin. I stood at that stele a while. "There's no such thing as a carefree era," the instructor had said. I was starting to hear it. What I carried out of the abyss, besides the lesson, the siren god's corpse fed through the recycler down to the last scale. Her crystals dragged my whole ocean line up through its ceiling. The title office, already maxed, evolved into the ocean current law, a full mid-tier office with my name on it. Plus 2 new arts, a healing water spirit technique that would soon be embarrassing duelists at full health, and a dragon roll current attack with terrible manners. And her chant, the actual siren song, the plane's crown jewel, I fused into my Snail's old storm song. The panel renamed the result the sea siren's frost chant, 5 times the damage, a freeze that holds for half a minute, and a charm rider on top. My choir had eaten the ocean's best singer and taken her range. The seafood, in other words, came home from military school with the sea itself in its luggage. Senior year opened with 2 transfer students and a staring problem. They walked in behind the teacher, a boy in white with a face like a marble statue that had never once smiled, and a girl with a smile so polished it squeaked. Wu Kang and Wu Mei, siblings. And from the second he entered, Wu Kang stared at me, through class, through lunch, through the walk home. Unblinking, expressionless, dedicated staring like I was a museum exhibit he'd bought a season pass for. By day 3, I cracked and confronted him on the field. "Brother, what do you want? I don't like men." "I don't like men either." That's not. Could you stop staring at me?" "Okay," he said, and continued staring. I was reaching for my last nerve when his sister materialized, dropped the porcelain lady act mid-step. "Oh my god, brother, stop being a creep. It's embarrassing." And explained the situation with zero shame. Wu Kong, it turned out, was a battle maniac. A genuine one, undefeated against every genius in their home province, transferred across the country because he'd heard a monster had appeared at our school, and too socially broken to just ask for a duel. The staring was his species' courtship ritual for fights. "And you didn't tell me because watching you squirm was funny," said Wu Mei, beaming. These 2 would become some of my favorite people alive. At the time, I wanted to bury them in the same hole. The duel happened the next afternoon in front of the whole school, and it was the hardest fair fight I'd ever had. 7th Revolution demigod, a mid-tier flame law, and a divine talent called attribute stacking that layered frost on top of his fire. 2 opposed powers braided into one attack, ice fire bursts that cracked my prisons and cost me a mouthful of blood. He fought laughing. I won by inches, went full water body, poured myself around him, and filled him with more ice needles than a man has opinions, then healed us both with my new water spirit healing art and asked, standing over him at full health. Who said we're even? He looked up at me from the floor with pure joy. One day I'll surpass you, he said, and meant it, and fainted happy. His sister managed him out of the arena like a handler retrieving a prize falcon. I checked whether our agreement meant he'd stop staring at me now. It did not. Loopholes, Wu Mei explained cheerfully, are also a family talent. Around then, I finally solved my chronic resource problem the disreputable way. How? Who knows everything questionable in this province? Pointed me at the black market, a hidden city behind a wall in a back alley, neon and marble, run under the silent protection of a true god where the merchandise nobody official will sell changes hands daily. Rule 1 of shopping there. Don't be you. So my first purchase was a damaged divine artifact called the Divine Mask, a second skin that rewrites your face and hides your aura from anything below true god. Pricey, worth every point. The mask came from a shop called the Divine Card Secret Pavilion, run by a goateed old man who is pound for pound the most dangerous negotiator I have ever faced, up to and including true gods who were actively trying to kill me. He opened at 300 billion faith for the damaged mask. I walked out. He chased me to the door. We danced for 20 minutes. His final price, my final exit, his sudden discovery of a discount, my sudden discovery of his competitors, and closed at half his opening number, both of us radiating the satisfaction of men who believe they've robbed the other. I later learned the mask had been gathering dust on his shelf for years because no demigod could afford it and no true god needed it. He'd finally found the one customer in the world it fit. I'd finally found the one shop that sells invisibility to people with enemies. The market, as they say, cleared because purchase 2 was a gambling license. The demigod arena sits at the center of the black market like a cathedral of bad decisions. Gods bet armies and treasures on formal duels, identities masked, results private if you pay for privacy, no questions asked at any price. I registered at the front desk under the codename Virtual God. The receptionist didn't blink. The codename directory read like a teenager's poetry folder, posted a legendary card as my stake, and browsed the challenge board like a menu. My first opponent, a scarred third revolution calling himself Mad Wolf, accepted a bout with the lower-ranked stranger inside a minute, chose a deathmatch with a rogue's grin, and fielded his life's work. 40 million 5-star wolves, dire wolves, twin-headed ice fire wolves, dark moon worgen, a lifetime of breeding, and no heroes because ordinary gods' armies look like that. I'd honestly forgotten. When my gates opened and 7-star soldiers walked out rank after rank, his grin died in stages like streetlights failing down a road. All 7-star, he said. That's impossible. My saints made it 20 minutes of impossible. His wolves were well-drilled, decades of pack tactics, wedges, and feints, and a genuinely clever crescent maneuver that would have flanked any normal army, and none of it survived contact with a support hero. Xingyue's vines closed the crescent's horns into a pocket. The frost chant filled the pocket, and Xiaoyun walked the frozen aisles, putting down anything the ice had merely inconvenienced, methodical as a lamplighter. The twin-headed ice-fire wolves breathed both elements at my snails and learned that shells rated for the abyss don't care about weather. Deathmatch rules, no surrender, fought to the last dependent. His last dependent was very brave. I collected his wager, then collected all 40 million wolf corpses for the recycler, the arena floor emptying into my storage in one long ripple. At which point, Mad Wolf lost his remaining composure and tried to jump me outside the ring. He got flattened to the pavement by the house's true god, whose voice arrived from everywhere at once. No fighting in the black market, out. For weeks after that, I commuted to the arena like a man with a paper route. The virtual god ran a streak. Demigods bet real treasure against the weird-masked newcomer and paid tuition. My card collection fattened, and none of my victims talked because who admits losing his army to an anonymous junior? The black market shame-based confidentiality is better than any contract. Mad Wolf, though, couldn't let it go. He shadowed me from the market one evening. I felt the tale 6 streets early and led him on a scenic route to an abandoned lot and ambushed me with everything he had, which by then included a genuinely respectable poison art and a completely misinformed threat assessment. It went the way it goes. He got one glimpse of what I actually was without the arena's politeness, a mid-tier law where he'd priced me at none, a second law behind it, and the last thing he said was a market question. What are you? Inventory. Friend, everything is inventory. What dropped from him? Wow, it even dropped loot, said my terrible inner goblin, and I've never fully shushed it since. Funded the next round of upgrades, and the next rounds mattered because I'd found the black market's real treasure shelf, broken divine artifacts, true god forged weapons, shattered in old wars, sold at scrap prices because no one can fix them. No one, he said, grinning at the shelf. 2 broken spears made by the same dead god, both carrying tidal law, fused into one whole spear, azure ice crystal shaft, runes down the length, an edge that made the air flinch. I named it Frost Cloud, and my hands finally matched my titles, a damage concealment cloak fused with my divine mask into something better than both. Xinyan, a cloak and mask in one, able to hide my body, aura, and face from anything short of a true god's direct stare, with shape-shifting thrown in, and a pair of one-use divine fire pearls, each fused from two, each now carrying roughly one true god-grade explosion in a bead the size of a grape. Pocket Apocalypse. Every well-dressed god should carry two, all of which, the mask, the spear, the pearls, was about to be stress-tested because the school announced the opening exam of senior year, a 3-day dive into a secret realm. Secret realms are treasure planes, pockets of worlds stuffed with heaven and earth treasures, guarded by beasts with divine-grade bodies and no minds, under rules that suppress a god's power to a fraction. The school's cut was 30% of whatever we hauled out. The rest was ours. The other 4 schools of the province were diving the same realm at the same time, and killing classmates was frowned upon, while accidents involving other schools were, per the teacher's careful phrasing, our own business. Shen Yue handed out protective bells that could stop 1/9 revolution blow, and I quietly compared them to the arsenal under my coat and felt like a man being issued a whistle for bear country. Inside, the realm was gorgeous and hungry. Jade cliffs, rivers that glowed faintly gold with dissolved treasure, and an ecosystem where everything beautiful was armed. The suppression hit. The moment I crossed the threshold, my divine power squeezed down to a fraction, my laws suddenly speaking through a closed window, which is exactly why I'd packed a body that benches true god funerals. Rules that suppress power don't suppress muscle. I ghosted through it under Shenyin and went to work. First customer, a spike beast the size of a barn, all bone lances and territorial opinion that charged my scent trail and got Frost Cloud through the skull mid-leap. Clean, quiet, dragged behind a rock and receded. The crown jewel of day 1 grew on a cliff shelf. Half a valley later, the 7 illusory spirit flower, a dual bloom law treasure shimmering through 7 colors like it couldn't pick an outfit, and coiled around its roots. A treasure guardian fox with 4 tails and divine grade reflexes. Its mate per every rustle in the grass was out hunting, which meant a timer. And then the timer solved itself. 2 students from a rival school came crashing up the far slope, saw the flower, saw no guardian from their angle, and lunged. I settled deeper into my concealment. The fox did what guardians do. The students did what their protective charms do, which is evacuate what's left. And the fox, wounded from even that short argument, turned back to its flower and found my spear already arriving. Harvest the fight, not the flower. It's cheaper. I sealed a cave mouth behind me with rock law and ate my prize on the spot, because carrying a divine treasure through a plane full of competitors is how you become an anecdote. The bloom went down like drinking a chandelier. My divine sense doubled on the spot, the world's detail pouring in at a resolution I hadn't known it had, and my ocean-line comprehension lurched forward hard enough to feel like the floor moving. On my way east, I passed a ravine where a bear beast, 3 subheads, stone hide, very committed, had Hiyue's whole retinue pinned against a cliff, her healing law keeping her people alive, but doing absolutely nothing to change the math. Healing is a wonderful law with one flaw. It extends fights it can't win. I dropped the concealment long enough to put the bear down with 2 strikes, nodded like this was a coincidence of geography, and moved on before the conversation could develop. She watched me go with a look I chose not to examine. My life has exactly 1 open romance slot, and its holder does inventory checks. Then my signal talisman flashed twice. Mei Li and Hao Hao together and in trouble. I found them at the edge of a miasma forest. Hao Hao, unconscious from the poison fog, Mei Li standing over him, detox herbs, a scolding, and the 3 of us went in together because whatever was pumping out that miasma was guarding something. What it was guarding turned out to be a source fruit tree, 27 fruits in 9 elemental colors, each one a law comprehension bomb keyed to its element, and what was guarding it turned out to be 2 8 revolution spider beasts, and what was hunting the same tree turned out to be 3 students from Chiang High, a lightning prodigy, an ice girl, and a smiling senior named Hiyun, whose divine power always seemed to arrive just slightly too late to help his own teammates. I clocked him in the first 30 seconds. You can hide a lot of things from me, appetite isn't one of them anymore. We allied because 2 8 revolution monsters demanded it, and the spider war was ugly enough to justify the company. The black spider fought like a siege engine. Its webs weren't nets, they were verdicts, strands that caught swordlight mid-flight and held it burning in place like flies, that turned the Lightning Kid's best arc into a decoration. Twice it reared back and spat a void pearl, a marble of hungry nothing, and the first one swallowed half my tsunami whole, with a sound like the world hiccuping. The white one was worse. It cut space itself with beams from its pincers, hairline cracks spidering through the air where they passed, and anything that touched a crack came back shorter. The first 10 minutes were pure survival choreography, 6 near strangers learning each other's footwork at knife point, the ice girl screaming range calls, everyone developing strong opinions about geometry. Then we found the rhythm, and the rhythm worked in shifts. The lightning kid and the ice girl alternated pins, arcs to stagger, frost to hold, while How's gales shredded webs exactly as fast as they were spun, our gossip king sweating through his robes and keeping up a running commentary nobody had requested. Mei Li's shadow chains did the elegant work, dragging the white one's space beams off target by the eyeball so the cracks opened over empty rock instead of allies, and I played the modest mid-powered teammate, deliberately fighting at half throttle, taking my turns on the pins, flashing my divine spear just often enough to keep a certain someone's eyes greedy. Twice I barely survived a lunge I'd seen coming since breakfast. Method acting with limbs on the line. The end came as arithmetic. We baited both monsters into overlapping lunges, and the whole alliance hit the same joint line at once. Frost, arc, gale, chain, spear, and both siege engines lost their front limbs in one coordinated crunch. After that, the killing was bookkeeping. 6 students, 2 dead, 8 revolution horrors, a tree full of law fruit swaying overhead, a good day's alliance on paper, and the moment the second spider fell, while everyone's divine power sat at fumes, He-Yun put swords through both of his own teammates' backs, 2 kids from his own school, mid-smile, mid-sentence. Then he turned to us with a warm, apologetic expression and explained that we looked tired and that a boy flashing a divine artifact he clearly couldn't protect shouldn't blame others for the consequences. His 2 teammates' point jades were already in his pocket. He'd looted them before their bodies settled. I let him monologue. I'd been playing weak the whole fight for exactly this moment. You don't get to see a scavenger's real face until he thinks the lions are gone. You're just one person, I said. There are 3 of us. You're spent, he smiled. I saved my strength. Funny, I said. So did I. The endless tsunami I'd been holding back all day hit him like a verdict. When the water receded, I stood over him and answered the question in his eyes. Your face does this thing when you lie. Everyone saw it. We just wanted the spiders dealt with first. Then I finished it because a man who kills his own teammates for loot is a lesson best taught only once. 27 fruits, 3 god corpses, and 2 spider carcasses went into my inventory. How took the wind fruits, mainly the dark ones. I fused earth and water fruits into a 2-tone monster and ate it behind a sealed door while my friends stood guard. Ocean line law, 90%. Earthline, climbing fast, with He-Yun's own gravity crystal soon to push it to the brink of its high-tier evolution. The scavenger's estate, funding the lion's dinner. There's a fable in there. He wouldn't have liked it. On the second day, the secret realm itself decided to get theatrical. The whole plane shook. A palace rose out of the earth on a pillar of light, and a voice big enough to have its own weather system announced, I am the god of senses. Here stands my hall of inheritance. Those with destiny may receive my legacy. Free legacy of a dead god. Every surviving genius from all 5 schools converged on that palace like moths with student IDs. How was vibrating with excitement. Mei Li frowned and said the smart thing. This is a secret realm. Only mindless beasts live here. Who exactly built a palace? I agreed with her completely. And went in anyway because I am, at my core, a raccoon with a divinity panel. The trials were suspiciously well designed. First trial, an old man in white robes, kindly as a holiday commercial, asking each candidate to push him back 3 steps with pure strength. I obliged, sensory scramble, ocean-wrapped fist to the ribs, water dragon chaser, and caught the flicker in his eyes when my mere demigod body registered on his scales. A body like a 9th revolution's, he murmured. Not bad. Not bad at all. Noted, I thought. Noted that you're weighing bodies, old man. Second trial. Endure his divine pressure using only your own law power. The hall thinned fast. Pressure like a sea trench. Candidates buckling and being flicked out one by one. Mei Li's shadow shield cracking at the very end and costing her the cut. I stood in the middle of the crush wrapped in 3 laws and made a show of mild effort, and the old man's eyes did the thing again. Not pride. Appraisal. Third. 9 doors, 1 per finalist. A solo gauntlet behind each. Mine held wolves woven from sense law itself, endless, reforming from every kill, immune to slaughter, until I stopped slaughtering and started assimilating, folding their lost stuff into my own with creation greasing the merge. The door's monsters became my nutrition. My sensory comprehension jumped double digits. I walked out without a scratch on my clothes and watched the old man's composure miss a step for the first time. 90 hopefuls had become 9, then 4. Me, the Wu siblings, and 1 quiet boy from another school. And with every round, the kindly examiner's eyes got shinier. And not the way a teacher's eyes shine at talent. The way a shopper's eyes shine at produce. Body checked. Power gauged. Tank emptied. That's not a curriculum. That's a fitting room. So when the final trial asked us 4 finalists to walk up and touch the big statue together, I bowed and said, "Senior, I'm honestly not worthy of the inheritance. I withdraw." The kindly old face came off like a lid. What was under it introduced itself as Liang Bin, god of senses, former high-rank true god, ambushed and killed in this realm millennia ago, soul preserved by a rare herb, waiting all this time for the realm to reopen and deliver him a crop of young gods to try on like jackets. The trials were a dressing room. The failed candidates from the other doors. Don't ask. We didn't get to. 3 of us against the soul of a true god in a sealed hall with our power already drained by his obstacle course. He opened with contempt, a flick of divine power that we survived only because Wu Kang is Wu Kang. My favorite battle maniac lit his ice fire stack without hesitation and met a true god strike head on, whooping. Wu Mei's flower law filled the hall with a drugging perfume that Liang Bin, god of senses, deleted by simply switching off his own sense of smell, which is the most insulting counter I've ever watched happen to an ally. Then he went for the possession. A lance of soul diving at Wu Mei, and her protective bell detonated in a dome of light that bounced his ghost off her like a bird off a window. Point to Shen Yubei and her ugly school-issue jewelry. His second attempt met Wukong's bell. 2 windows, 2 birds. That bought me the gap I needed. While he regathered his rattled soul and monologued about insects, I slipped the first divine fire pearl from my sleeve, waited for his next lunge, and jammed it into his ghost at point-blank range. The detonation lit the inside of the hall like a sunrise with a grudge, and when it faded, the high-ranked true god had burned down to a very angry 9th Revolution remnant, translucent and shrieking. We were winning. Then he took the 4th boy. We'd forgotten him. The quiet finalist slumped in the corner. Liang Bin's remnant dove into that body and stood up wearing it, whole again, at full low-tier true god power in the flesh. A young god's body, he said, rolling the borrowed shoulders, better than I hoped. And then he turned my own school of magic on us. His sense law had evolved over millennia of practice all the way into the borderlands of desire itself. The 6 desires, he said, not even gods escape them. And Wu Mei, no bell, no warning, simply lay down on the floor mid-battle, smiled at the ceiling, and went to sleep in a bliss she couldn't refuse. Wukong and I got maybe 4 seconds of warning. I spent them making 2 seeds of mind, anchors woven from my own sensory law, a trick I invented on the spot out of pure necessity. They can't block desire, but they can pull you back out of it. 1 for me, 1 for him. Then the wave hit, and we went down too, limp, glassy, exactly as helpless as we needed to look. Liang Bin walked over, crouched, and put a divine power dagger to my throat, monologuing about what a shame it was to waste such a body. A god can only possess once, you see, so mine had to be destroyed. My eyes opened. His 5 senses didn't survive the experience. I'd been awake since the seed yanked me back, awake, limp, and waiting, while the true god gloated his way into arm's reach. Wukong surged up on his own seed and clamped Liang Bin in hands of flame. I stripped every sense the god of senses owned, and then I fed him my second divine fire pearl, directly, mouth first. Die, I suggested. He did, comprehensively. When the light and the screaming stopped, the Hall of Inheritance dissolved around us. It had only ever been his divine power pretending to be architecture, and Wukong and I lay in the crater breathing like beached fish, while Wu Mei woke up from her nap, furious to have missed the ending. We limped out heroes. The other 4 schools had lost their top seniors inside that hall, which Mei Li told me later, while I recovered Shaikuwayu quietly guaranteed our school first place in the province's exam season. Principal Shen Wen bowed to the 3 of us, actually bowed, then paid us like he was scared of us. Ancient grade cards, and the thing that made my whole month, card slot crystals, granting an extra card slot beyond the monthly limit. I traded origin fruits to the Wu siblings for their star-up cards, fused all 3 into a 5-star ancient monster of a card, 7-star to 8-star, guaranteed, and pointed it at the family who started it all, my conches, the ones the whole auditorium laughed at, the fresh and delicious aquatic ingredient. They rose into the light as purple star crowned snails and came out the other side as something the panel called purple star divine crowned snails. 8 stars, shells like a night sky, someone armored, the siren chant upgraded to a register that froze whole battlefields for a full minute, and claws of condensed starlight for anyone who survived the music. And Xiaoyun, my first believer, my high priestess, my thunder queen, crossed into mythic quality one single step below godhood itself. Looking at her panel, I had one clear thought, and it wasn't about power. It was, my daughter has grown up. Don't tell her I said that. She has lightning. As for Liang Bin, the god who spent 3,000 years plotting to steal a body, his soul went into my recycler like everything else that attacks my family and came out as the biggest stack of law energy I'd ever absorbed, plus his entire sensory legacy, which rammed my desire law up through tiers of comprehension it would have taken me years to climb. His life's work, his millennia of refinement, now power the exact ability I use to keep people like him out. I'd call that irony, but honestly, at this point, it's just my supply chain. Before the capital, though, Mei Li and I ran one last errand that I can only describe as estate sales for the recently deceased divine. The secret realm disaster had left a very specific kind of debris across the province's paperwork, dead gods, and dead gods leave ownerless domains adrift in the void, bleeding treasure into the dark until they collapse. We had corpses' coordinates, we had a week of break, and we had the two of us, so we went shopping. 4 abandoned realms in 7 days, a dead flame god's scorched orchard world, a rot priest's bog full of alchemy stock, 2 minor domains stripped to the studs by their own panicking dependents before the end. We worked them like a couple that renovates houses. She peeled the defenses, I decomposed everything that wasn't nailed down, and we split the cards over takeout on the crystal wall of somebody's former heaven. 20 cards, mountains of materials, and the comfortable silence of 2 people who have both decided not to discuss what their date nights have become. The 5th set of coordinates we didn't cache. The domain behind it was intact, sealed, humming, defended because its owner had been a high-rank true god, and that grade of world takes centuries to die. We floated outside its wall, listened to the sheer weight of what was sleeping in there, and had the same thought at the same moment. Not yet, not at our rank. I wrapped the coordinates in a concealment barrier of my own, parked a marker on it, and filed it under the same heading as the military's job offer, later. My later drawer was accumulating the kind of contents that eventually require a bigger drawer. The hall funded a domestic upgrade spree, the star array rebuilt into its 28 constellation configuration, thunder flame towers on every coast, a spirit crystal currency so my citizens could stop bartering snail shells at the market, and groves of thunder bamboo and spirit cherries that turned my agricultural ministry smug for a decade. My world had crossed some invisible line that month, from an army with farms attached to a civilization that happened to be armed. Then came Kyoto, 5 exchange slots to Kyoto High School, the #1 high school on the planet, in the capital city where the God Alliance sits, where 2 of the 5 top universities live, and where 4 great families rule everything worth ruling, each with a god emperor somewhere up the family tree. Our principal burned old favors to get those slots, and they went to me, Mei Li, the Wu siblings, and He Yue. Shen Yue pulled me aside before the flight. Her advice? Verbatim. The great families of Kyoto make the Gao family look like a lemonade stand. Do not cause trouble. Here are 2 divine fire pearls from the principal for when you cause trouble. I love my teachers. The capital announced itself before we landed. Towers that were half architecture, half divine artifact, teleport arteries braided over the skyline like glowing rivers, and above everything, discreet as mountains, the estates of the 4 great families, floating districts you don't visit, you get summoned to. Wukong looked at it all with the expression of a man reading a menu. Wume cataloged which skyline belonged to whom, out loud, from gossip alone, with frightening accuracy. 2 things happened on arrival. First, Kyoto High greeted us with the warmth of a tax audit, dorms in the far corner of campus, next to what I'm fairly sure was the compost program. Students calling us countryside gods to our faces with the friendly cruelty of people who've never been hit, and placement into Class E, the bottom tier, which for a group containing 2 provincial champions was less an assessment than a hand gesture. The welcome tour skipped the good facilities. The stipend cards came pre-shrunk. Wume collected every slight into a little mental ledger, smiling wider with each entry, and I remember thinking that this school had no idea what it was prepaying for. Second, and more important, from the moment the capital's skyline appeared, Mei Li went quiet, not her usual dangerous quiet, something older. She stared out at those towers, like a soldier looking at a battlefield she'd been carried off of once. I didn't ask. With her, the story comes when it comes. It came fast. Day 2, a heavily made-up girl blocked our path with an entourage and a smirk. Long time no see, Mei Li, exiled to the countryside and still so arrogant, Mei Huan, cousin. And when Mei Li turned to her, the temperature of the hallway dropped in a way that had nothing to do with laws. I did my part for family diplomacy by loudly asking whether something had died in the cousin's mouth. Wu Mei contributed, it escalated. It ended with Mei Li's whip cracking twice across the hall and the cousin's entourage carrying her away. And then a young man in white appeared, playing a flute, radiating gentle concern with the texture of wet paint. Mei Li, I heard you were wronged here. Chen Kai Li's Ibantamangti Shubayawert, Wa Arkanidlak Chen Kai. Chen family, one of the four. Childhood sweetheart, self-appointed, and under his silk voice, my desire law read the actual inventory, possessiveness, entitlement, and a hatred for me so fresh it still had the tag on. He suggested a Mei Li stop throwing tantrums, apologize to her second uncle, and come home. She suggested he was not close enough to her to breathe her air. I laughed at the wrong moment on purpose. He challenged me by sundown, them's the mechanics of pride, and put up a treasure I actually wanted, an earth core flame, a perpetual fire law treasure, fire. My missing fourth element, delivered by an idiot. As prophesied, the duel was a public service, and the whole school skipped whatever class was scheduled against it. Chen Kai opened like a man performing for a portrait painter, white robes, flute raised, Winlaw spinning his flames into a serpent of fire that he conducted through the air in elegant calligraphy. It was genuinely good for his age. His Breeze and Blaze combo turned the arena into a furnace with weather. His fire serpent split and refused faster than most eyes could track, and his finisher, a rolling sea of flame across the entire stage floor, would have cooked any classmate who'd challenged him. I walked into the fire sea, just walked, the ocean current body turning me into a man-shaped piece of tide, flames snapping shut on water that closed behind them, and the school got to watch the Chen family's young master conduct his masterpiece against an audience member strolling through the orchestra pit. His composure went first, his formations went second, and when he burned his reserves on one last serpent big enough to matter, my current caught it, drowned it, and left him standing in an empty arena with an empty tank, at which point my desire law opened his skull's basement and put what it found on stage. In front of the entire school, the young master of the Qin family spent 90 seconds acting out his private fantasies with an invisible partner and fainted from shame on his own arena. I collected the earth core flame from what was left of his dignity, went home, and by midnight the fourth foundation stone clicked into place. Flame law, ignited, earth, water, wind, fire, all four elemental lines now lived in one body, mine. The world law project had officially moved from myth to engineering problem. That night, Mei Li knocked on my door and told me the story I'd been waiting out. Her father was the previous head of the Mei family, one of the four great families. He married for love beneath his station over the family's screaming objections, and the loudest screamer was his younger brother, Mei Wu. Then her father died on an expedition, ambushed in a secret realm by unknown enemies. Michunigai and Wu took the headship and then took his time with the widow and the daughter. Her mother didn't survive him. Mei Li did, barely. Smuggled out of the capital by her aunt, exiled to our little province, with minders sent to watch her, because Wu wanted something her father left behind, something he still hadn't found. An alive heir is a live map. She told it flat, like a quartermaster reading a supply list, right up until the end when her hands wouldn't stay still. I took them, both of them. One day, I said, we'll get justice for your parents, both of them. I didn't tell her the other thing, the thing I'd taken out of Chen Kai's drugged skull weeks later, because yes, there's a weeks later, hold on, the fact that her father's unknown enemies had been paid for by his own brother. Some truths are weapons, and you don't hand someone a weapon while they're standing in the enemy's house, because we were standing in it soon enough. The Mei family formally invited us both. Marble courtyards, an old butler who loved her, an aunt, Mei Hua, who cried when she saw her, and at the center of it all, Mei Wu, the uncle, a silver-tongued man with a hypocrite smile who offered me everything the principal was giving me, and more if I just joined the family, and incidentally mentioned that Mei Li's marriage would of course be arranged by the family. To the Chen boy, one assumes. Alliances. I let the jade pendant at my waist catch the light. Longshan's token, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Suffice to say the sight of it made the head of a great family swallow his next 3 sentences, and told him Mei Li's future belonged to Mei Li. He smiled and smiled. My desire law, sitting behind my eyes like a court stenographer, recorded what was actually in the room, the exact moment the man decided his niece had become more useful dead. Oh, and Chen Kai, right, here's the week's earlier bit, and I need you to appreciate the shape of it, because it remains simultaneously my finest operation and my deepest professional shame. After the dual humiliation, my desire law caught the planning happening behind Chen Kai's eyes every time he passed me in a corridor. Capture alive, family true gods, my soul over a slow fire, the full aristocrat's revenge menu. A man broadcasting intent that loudly forfeits the right to complain about what intent I form back. So I got ahead of it. Step 1. A forged invitation in Mei Li's handwriting, apologetic, warm, suggesting a private reconciliation at a small cinema off campus on a Sunday when the school's closed campus rules released us into the city. Step 2. A bottle of good red wine, lightly edited with soul-loosening herbs because a god's body shrugs off ordinary alcohol, and I needed his shrugging muscles off duty. Step 3, and here we approach the sacrifice. Mei Li herself waiting in the private room in a white dress, shy smile calibrated to the millimeter, being me in the Shenyan mask. He swept in, perfumed and preening. He complimented my dress. He forgave me graciously for my boyfriend's rudeness, poured out his heart, refilled my glass with the tenderness of a spider wrapping lunch, and gazed longingly into my eyes for 1 entire hour while I giggled at the right intervals and updated my personal definition of hazard pay. When he finally lunged across the table, the wine and my desire law caught him mid-lunge and folded his mind open like wet cardboard, and the interrogation began. He gave me everything. His plan for me, in detail I won't repeat. His 2 true god bodyguards who explained why the direct approach was off the table. The Mei family's dirty laundry, including one blood-freezing item about Mei Li's father that I filed under later carefully, and the crown jewel, the coordinates of his divine domain, the one secret a god tells nobody, not parents, not lovers, nobody. I left him drooling happily at an empty chair, walked out through 3 identity changes and went home to prepare. That night, his domain had a visitor. I stood outside his crystal wall for 1 minute first, a god's last privacy, the one address in the universe that's supposed to be unfindable, and gave him that minute out of something like professional courtesy. Then frost cloud came down, and the wall cracked like an egg under a hammer, and the sound a divine domain makes when its sky breaks is a sound its owner feels in his teeth wherever he is. He was in bed. By the time he scrambled out of his palace in his night clothes, my saints and 500 million soldiers were already inside his heaven, formations settling over his cities with the unhurried weight of a verdict, and his own dependents' prayers had turned into one continuous scream of a question he couldn't answer. "How did you know?" he started, and I told him, "Honestly, you told me, you just don't remember the date." His army was brave and outnumbered and outstarred. His defenses had no towers, no arrays, nothing, because who builds fortifications inside the one place no enemy can ever find? Gods with my life do, Chen Kai. Gods with my life fortify their sock drawers. His hero units fell to a double Zhao Yun thunderclap. Gao Wu was in a mood that night, and at the end, on his knees in the ruins of his secret world, he promised me his family would burn my name out of history, possibly, but not on information he provided. By morning, the Chen family had 1 fewer promising young master, no body, no witnesses, and no leads. The school noticed he was missing after 2 weeks. 2 weeks, which tells you exactly how much the capital's great families love their spare heirs. The investigation interviewed me for 10 polite minutes and concluded nothing, because there was nothing. No motive on record, no trace in the void, and the only witness to the invitation was a wine bottle. I don't lose sleep over him. I lose sleep, occasionally, over the hour of gazing. Some invoices never stop arriving. I'm not going to pretend that keeps me up at night. He'd planned to hang my soul over a fire for eternity. I gave him better than he ordered. Now, about that pendant, the one that made a family head bite his tongue mid-threat. Back before the Mei family dinner, we'd fought our way out of Class E the direct way, and the way deserves telling because Kyoto's welcome committee had lined up in order of arrogance. First came Chen Jin, Chen Kai's cousin, second son of the family, a 6th revolution who greeted our arrival assembly by calling us countryside gods and daring me into the arena before I'd unpacked. He chose a domain battle and fielded a genuinely impressive army, 300 million dependents, all 7-star, all spirit race, flame spirits wreathed in fire, swamp spirits oozing rot, wood spirits like walking jade. The stands murmured about the poor exchange student. Then I opened my gate and marched out 300 million purple star divine crown snails, and the murmur changed key because a solid half of my snails had thin black rings around their necks. Gao Wu's formless, wearing my core race's shape at 120% output. Chen Jin was staring at what he thought was one absurdly overgrown race when the actual math hit him. 300 million 8-star bodies against his 7 stars. "How?" he said with real feeling. "Do you have 8 stars? Diet and exercise," I said, and gave the order. The frost chant rolled across his lines and froze the flame spirits mid-flare. Starlight claws did the rest of the front rank. When his 3 hero units rallied for a counterpush, Xiao Yun dropped 9 thunderbolts on their formation, while Gao Wu gripped the space around them like a hand closing around moths. And 18 seconds later, Chen Jin's entire command structure was ash on the wind. He surrendered with his army at 40% and his worldview at 0, and the Class E badge on my chest suddenly commanded a great deal of hallway respect. Then a school dean with Chen family manners materialized to tell me, colder than the frost chant, that he hoped I would conduct myself well. Kyoto's institutions I was learning had opinions about visitors beating the furniture. Mei Li's turn came via her cousin Huan Huan, who challenged her to a domain battle downward, a 4th revolution calling out someone she assumed was armyless, and then watched 250,000 of Mei Li's dependents walk onto the field where 60 million should have struggled to be. Halfway through, when Huan Huan's 6-tailed ice foxes and golden-winged raptors had failed to dent the line, Mei Li got bored, rose over the battlefield, and used her talent in public for the first time in Kyoto. The cycle of life and death. The enemy army aged before the audience's eyes, 6-star units withering below their own ranks, while her angels and elves drank the stolen years and swelled toward 8-star. Huan Huan shrieked something about rules. Mei Li, sweetly, divine talents are exempt. Didn't your family teach you the rules you're quoting? The Class A badge came off the cousin's chest, and the arena learned how they exile smiles. Big brother Mei Jingrui stepped in to salvage family pride, and I took that one myself, on the principle that a man should meet his in-laws. His shadow law was real. His night eclipse talent drowned the stage in devouring darkness, twisted shadow shapes screaming through the black, and I burned it off with a fused tide and fire pillar that split the arena into dawn and drowned him in both elements at once. He'd set the stakes himself, loudly, before the match. Loser kowtows 3 times and declares himself trash. Afterward, he suddenly discovered a preference for lying motionless, so I helped with the kowtows. All 3, the floor kept count. Between those 2 beatings, I owed a debt, and it got collected in the most dangerous venue of my career, a date. Mei Li named the terms the evening after the Huan Huan match. A whole day in the capital, no training, no cards, no scheming, and if your bracelet lights up, I'm feeding it to a koi. So we did the thing normal teenagers do in the world's most dangerous city. Street food, river lights, a market stall where I won her a stuffed rabbit through what I maintain was skill, and she maintains was the vendor's fear of her smile. I bought candied hawthorn and cake for later, which, hold on to that detail, it ends up saving my entire relationship with a God Emperor's artifact, and at the end of it, on a bridge over black water full of drowned lanterns, she stepped in front of me, took both my lapels in her fists, and looked up with the expression she doesn't let the world see. No whip, no sweetness with a hook, just the question. Back home, you told my cousin my future belonged to me, she said, and once you told me I was yours. Do you acknowledge that? Out loud. There are moments to deploy irony, and there are moments when irony is just cowardice with better posture. Yes, I said, you're mine, I'm yours. Everyone else in both categories can file complaints with the whip. She kissed me on the bridge in front of 3 empires worth of city lights, and somewhere in the murder archives of my memory, a small girl with a scorpion smiled and closed the file as resolved. Official then, the scariest courtship in the history of 2 worlds closed at last by mutual surrender. All 4 of us outsiders ended up seated in Class A within the week, surrounded by great family heirs, choosing very carefully not to make eye contact. 4, not 5. The school offered Hiyua a seat on the strength of our group's rampage, and she turned it down flat. I didn't win it and stayed in Class B to earn one, which she then set about doing with the quiet menace of an hourglass. Healing law, remember, she has never been in a hurry in her life. Time is on her payroll, and Class A came with one privilege that made all the hazing worth it, the Ninefold Mountain. Behind the campus sits a small, unimpressive hill. The hill is a divine artifact, God Emperor grade, left behind by the school's founder and first principal, a being called Long Shan. 9 trial floors inside, 1 attempt per student per semester, rewards scaled to your performance by the artifact's resident spirit. The 4 of us walked in together and got split into separate trials, and mine began with 3 stitched horror beasts and ended between floors, with the artifact's spirit paying me a personal visit. The spirit of a God Emperor's supreme artifact manifests as a toddler, a floating, golden-robed, 3 apples tall toddler with the speech patterns of a cranky grandfather who opened our relationship by scolding me because, true story, on the way in, I described his sacred mountain as looking like a big pile of dependents' droppings, and he'd heard it. I have stood before true gods without flinching. I have never apologized as fast as I apologized to that baby. What saved me was inventory. I happened to be carrying candied hawthorn and cake from a date with Mei Li. The mighty artifact spirit of the God Emperor confiscated my desserts on the spot with the stern dignity of a customs official, got sugar all over his chin, and decided I was, quote, clever and sensible, a malleable talent. From that moment, the trials got harder and the rewards got absurd. He was openly fattening me up, floor by floor, and the floors were a curriculum smarter than any school's. Floor 2 dropped me in a desert with a rune burning in the sky, and one instruction, comprehend it before the sun sets. A god emperor's divine art, written in a language made of meaning itself, and the sunset was not a metaphor. The sand started eating my feet at dusk. I cracked the rune's grammar with an hour to spare and came away with the Flame Emperor Battle Armor, a high-grade art that dresses you in a furnace. The toddler awarded me a flame pearl on top for reading faster than the last 3 centuries of applicants and pretended he wasn't pleased. Floor 3 was Meihua and her Gucheng. More on her in a moment because she rearranged my whole understanding of the school. Her reward was the life seed. Remember the life seed. It will matter more than almost anything else in the story. Floor 4 turned my divine power off, all of it, at the door like a coat check, then pointed me down a ravine where the wind had been sharpening itself for 3,000 years. No laws, no arts, no spear, just a body I'd spent 2 years tempering, leaning into a hurricane, edge first, one anchored step at a time, while the gale tried to make ribbons of me. Every aristocrat who runs that floor learns what they are without their inheritance. I already knew what I was without an inheritance, recently deceased and stubborn about it. I walked out skinned raw and grinning, and the toddler fed me body-tempering herbs with the satisfaction of a grandmother watching soup disappear. Floor 5 was an arena and a rule that read like a personal insult. Defeat a simulated Class A elite. Every divine art usable once. No leaning on the tsunami, no second prison. A trial designed to expose one-trick heirs aimed at the single least one-trick god in the hemisphere. I emptied the catalog in order, each art a rung, senses, currents, flames, stone, each cast a closing door behind me, and finished the simulation with an art I'd never used in combat before because I'd been saving it for a rainy day. It was raining. It worked. When it comes to the number of divine arts, I told the ceiling, I'm second to none, and the ceiling giggled and paid out 2 ancient star-up cards. Floor 6 wasn't mine at all. The mountain reached into my domain through my own crystal wall, the way you'd reach into a fishbowl, which I've chosen not to think about, and made Xiaoyun solo 3 hero constructs, including an 8-star frost giant. She won wearing her lightning armor like a fashion statement, and the spirit's assessment of her, the little girl has mastered thunder, her future is promising, and went into a divine essence crystal he pressed on me for her future godhood ascension. My daughter has a college fund now. It's a rock that guarantees a divine body. Floor 7 matched me against Wu Kang, whose trial had merged with mine, and gave the little spirit the entertainment of the decade, because of course it did. I climbed to the 7th peak, found a familiar silhouette at the summit, and my heart sank into my boots. Wukong, why are you here? I don't know, he said, dazed. I passed floor 6 and arrived. Ding ding ding, chirped the toddler, materializing overhead with visible glee. The 7th trial, you two fight, winner ascends. Wukong's whole nervous system rebooted. The vacant stare vanished. The battle maniac came online with an audible click. I won't lose this time, he said, flames already crawling up his arms, and frost crawling over the flames because he'd been training too. His attribute stacking talent now braided a full frost law into his fire, ice fire dual casting, each attack a contradiction that hit twice. His opening move, a thing he proudly named Fiery Ice Storm, put a spiral of burning hail through the space I'd occupied and cracked the mountain behind it. We went at it properly. Frost Cloud against his ice fire fists, my ocean line prisons bursting under his flame detonations, his phoenix construct swallowed by my whirlpool, and reborn twice. He fought like a man given his birthday early, laughing between exchanges, escalating with pure joy. Take this one. And this, Chen Wei. This is the best. When we'd emptied the mid-tier arsenal, we called it out loud, both at once, like the duel had a script. One exchange, full power, decide it. His everything, dual law, fiery ice storm, the whole mountain wrapped in a burning blizzard, my everything, tsunami and sea of fire, fused down the length of the spear into a single two-natured torrent. The collision tore the peak's clouds into rags. When the light faded, I was standing, barely, heels dug into cracked stone, and Wukong was seated against a boulder 30 meters back, grinning through a bloody lip. I lost, he announced, sounding delighted. You also have fire now. That's cheating. He took my hand up, gripped it a moment longer than balance required, and delivered his entire emotional vocabulary. One day I'll surpass you. Get in line, I said. It's a good line. My favorite people are in it. The toddler descended between us, judged the crater with a connoisseur's eye, sent Wukong down the mountain with a consolation prize, and tossed me 2 crimson fruits, blazing flame fruits, each carrying a chance to evolve a flame law toward its higher office. I fused them, obviously. The spirit watched me do it, with the expression of a grandfather watching a grandson correctly gut a fish. Floor 8 was Mei Hua. I'd met her back on floor 3, a woman in ancient robes playing a guzheng in a bamboo grove, bamboo leaf marks at the corners of her eyes, so much a part of the scenery that the scenery seemed to be listening. Her 3rd floor trial had been a mindstorm, her music dragging every buried desire and terror up through my skull at once. An assault my desire law happened to be custom built to extinguish all 6 desires out, and the illusions collapsed like tents. She'd smiled, called my law rare, and casually revealed the fact that rearranged my understanding of this school. She was Longshan's own dependent hero, a flower fairy raised from his retinue, ascended to actual godhood, who had stayed to keep her dead master's school for centuries, a dependent standing where gods stand. Everything I dreamed for Xiao Yun, alive and playing the zither. On floor 8, the kindly senior set her instrument on a stone, planted 1 incense stick in a green bamboo, and said, "Survive me until it burns down." Then the gentle librarian became a high-tier true god, and I found out what the ceiling actually looks like. Her opening chord hit like a landslide made of mathematics, in sound as pressure, pressure as blades, and my shield ate 3 notes and started cracking. I spent that incense stick emptying my entire biography onto the floor. Sensory feints to buy half seconds, frost clouds tied against her sound walls, the flame pearl detonating between us, water healing mid-sprint, flame armor, over sea of fire, in a combination I'd never dared run at once because the divine power bill is obscene. She parried everything with 1 hand on the strings, expression politely encouraging, like a grandmother letting you win at cards, except you're not winning, you're surviving, and both of you know the difference. With a sliver of incense left, out of power and options, I did the disrespectful thing, charged her, spear glowing, with the absolute last of my divinity, and she stopped the music, sidestepped my whole existence, and announced, "Past," as the stick's ember died. I lay on the bamboo floor, breathing like a losing bet, while she rained gentle green light on me and refilled my tank, and I thought, this is a dependent. This is what the ceiling looks like for the people I'm raising. Xiao Yun, sweetheart, we have homework, and the 9th floor was a statue. Longshan himself carved dozens of meters tall, and inside the stone, his inheritance. The spirit gave me the honest warning, take it and fail, and the backlash ends your path or your life. And I looked up at the founder of the greatest school in the world and thought about the auditorium that laughed at a boy with a conch. I sat down and opened myself up. The power that poured in nearly tore me apart, and would have, except that deep in the chaos there was a rhythm, a pulse under everything, patient, enormous, the ticking of the universe's own heart. I stopped fighting the flood and started rowing with that rhythm, and the moment I matched it, the world went still. Dust hung in the air, light waited politely. I raised my hand, and time itself moved out of the way. Time law, a supreme adjacent top-shelf wars have been fought over rumors of it law, inherited whole from a god emperor, at 10% comprehension out of the gate, and riding in with it a flood of the emperor's primordial divine power, so rich in compressed faith that my rank jumped twice in one sitting, 5th revolution demigod, from a standing start in an afternoon. The pillar of light from my inheritance dyed the sky over the entire campus gold. The principal of Kyoto High reportedly stood up so fast he cracked his desk. The little spirit floated over when it was done, looking prouder than any being that Sticky has a right to, and pressed a jade token into my hand carved with 1 character. Ching, Longshan's personal token, carrying 1 god emperor grade strike, and Tribidai Preaction Tribai was more useful, to Edisway, carrying the message to anyone who recognized it that the mountain spirit had claimed me. "Ordinary gods won't dare touch you," he said, then gruffly, "Go, climb higher. I'll be watching." I asked once whether he wanted to come with me and see the world. "My master is Longshan," he said in his tiny grandfather voice, looking out over the school his god had built. "I guard his home. Besides, a walking god emperor artifact would be a disaster for you, not a blessing. 3,000 years of loyalty in a body that gets bribed with cake. If you want to know what I aspire to inspire, it's that. The principal of Kyoto High, a divine king named Fan Xiang, summoned me the moment I came down the mountain. big office, careful tea, and an opening move of veiled threat. The inheritance makes you every great family's target, boy, which wilted the second I told him the truth. The legacy had fully fused with me. Killing me now would get them a corpse and nothing else. I watched a divine king recalculate my market price in real time, and then we did the honest thing and haggled. He'd shelter me from the families and open doors no one else could. I'd stand with him at a critical moment, nature of moment unspecified, which is exactly the kind of blank check I hate signing and signed anyway. 2 foxes, 1 large, 1 small, shook hands over tea. A pleasant cooperation, we both said, both lying about at least 3 things, both fine with it. That was the pendant Meiwu saw at dinner. That was why the head of a great family smiled and swallowed his threats, not because of what I'd shown him, because of what it meant about who was standing behind me. A divine king in front, and behind the divine king, a small golden toddler with a sweet tooth and a god emperor's arsenal. The morning after that dinner, the Mei family held its annual grand competition, and Uncle Wu invited us to observe. Mei Li put on a black combat suit, tied her hair up high, and observed her way directly into the roster. I came as her +1 in white, and the 2 of us walked into the family arena looking, according to Wu Mei's later assessment of the recordings, like a wedding announcement with casualties pending. Wu's hospitality showed immediately. 15 participants, teams of 2. Odd number. Guess who was meant to sit out partnerless in front of the whole clan? Mei Li just turned to me. Little Wei Wei. Come here. Family head, I said, smiling up at the platform. Surely you won't refuse a guest a little exercise. He could not, in fact, refuse, and his face, while not refusing, belonged in a museum. The draw, what are the odds, gave us Huan and Jingrui in round 1, and the cousins had come to redeem themselves in front of the clan, which made them dangerous the way only humiliated aristocrats can be. They'd upgraded since our school scuffles. Huan unveiled a mid-tier gravity law and opened by dropping a skyfall field on me, the air itself gaining the weight of a collapsing building, while Jingrui's shadow blades came for Mei Li from 6 directions. For a while it was an honest brawl. I floated my footing on a cushion of sea law water to bleed the gravity sideways, wrapped Huan in a curtain of 10,000 droplets that made her crushing field crush mostly ocean. Mei Li outshadowed the shadow air on his home law. Shadow law? I can do that too. Delivered, while stepping out of his own darkness behind him, and for a moment the clan got to watch its 2 proudest juniors fence with their family arts against an exile and a nobody, and lose on style points. Then Jingrui stopped fencing. His talent, Night Eclipse, swallowed the arena, real devouring darkness, light stripped to nothing, twisted shape swimming in it, and his empowered second form came out of that night, twice his size, rune-veined, strong enough that when Mei Li's whip met his fist, the whip shattered, and she flew. I caught her, set her down, felt the exact click in my chest that certain people in my life have learned to listen for. Rest, I told her. I'll take out the trash. And I showed the relatives a divine art I'd built myself from scratch off the back of my sea and desire laws. People die and go to hell, I told Jingrui as the water rose around us and began to turn. Do you know where gods go? The whirlpool opened above my head, trying dark and light braided into a mouth in the world, and the pull took him off his feet. Gods go to the Gui Gao. Let's get you a preview. He was halfway into the vortex, screaming, when a bolt of golden light sealed the gate. Meiwu himself on his feet, face like curdled milk, conceding the match on his children's behalf, a family head interfering in a junior's bout in front of the entire clan. The silence in that arena had texture. Mei Li's smile could have been framed. The hero round came next, 2 heroes each, and Mei Li casually revealed that her 4-winged angel commander Gabriel had grown 4 more wings and an 8-star rank since I'd last checked, because apparently we're that kind of couple, upgrading war assets behind each other's backs like surprise anniversary gifts. Against us, a collateral branch pair, fielding a blood leech queen, a flame hummingbird, a gold-armored lizard brute, and a goat-headed curse priest. It lasted 8 minutes and belonged entirely to Qing Yue's garden. Her seeds hit the arena floor, and the battlefield stopped being neutral ground. The Leech Queen shattered into a swarm of blood mites, and the vines drank the entire swarm like a spilled smoothie. The hummingbird lost a wing to Gabriel's holy light and fell into flowers that were waiting with their mouths open. Medusa's petrifying gaze turned the lizard statue still inside a vine cocoon that then, slowly, patiently, squeezed the statue to gravel. The cursed priest turned to run, and the ground itself was already holding his ankles. MVP Qing Yue, I announced. Mei Li asked what an MVP was. I told her it was an ancient title of great honor from my homeland, which is technically true and one of my better marriages of fact and nonsense. And for the final, against the family's two strongest seniors, someone had randomly generated a desert battlefield against my ocean affinity armies, populated the enemy team with bandaged mummies immune to poison, sphinx-faced griffins, armored sand scorpions, and golden beetles that swam through dunes like eels and sat back smugly. I looked up at the family head's platform. The family head examined the horizon. Sure, random. For the first minutes, the rig even worked. The sand was an enemy soldier. It ate my Medusa allies to the waist and held them for the beetles, which struck from below and vanished back into the dunes like gilded sharks. The mummies walked through Medusa's venom like perfume, being technically past the need for a bloodstream, and the griffin squadrons owned a sky my ground forces couldn't answer. The clan stands were already savoring the moral of the story. The outsiders drown on dry land. When Qing Yue asked me over the family link in her politest pulpit voice whether she was allowed to garden, she was allowed to garden. A handful of seeds went into the dunes, and my flower saint terraformed the Sahara in real time. Vines drank the loose sand solid and pinned the beetle divers mid-dive, wriggling like fish in set concrete. Oasis bloomed outward like spilled paint until the desert was a garden with a sand problem, and the water table she pulled up from wherever flower empresses pull water tables gave my snails swimming lanes on a battlefield built to deny them. The Scorpion Queen surfaced to fix the landscaping and got introduced to Medusa running 4 of Qing Yue's buffs at once, which ended with an 8-star war insect being used as a discus. In the sky, Gabriel's 8 wings opened over the mummy hero, and divine judgment came down like noon arriving armed. And my formless walked among their griffins, wearing their griffins' faces slightly stronger, marked only by thin black rings, until the enemy air force refused to attack anything for fear of friendly fire, and then was made of friendly fire, and Gao Wu folded space around their griffin hero's wings mid-turn. There's no counter for that. There's barely a word for that. If Qing Yue had lived in my previous life, I said to no one, watching oases eat the last of the rigged map, the deserts would have been saved. Somewhere on the platform, a family head was learning that you can pick the board and still not be playing the same game, like, no one dies. First place, the exiled daughter and her countryside boyfriend. Wu announced it with the enthusiasm of a man reading his own eulogy and paid out cards plus 2 picks each from the family treasure pavilions on floors 1 and 2 only of 6, which is how great families say congratulations while holding their wallet at arm's length. The pavilion itself deserved its legend, a tower of white jade where the air tasted like money, curated by an old man called Elder Gu, whose aura read as nothing at all. The specific, expensive kind of nothing that means the reader isn't qualified to know. He watched us browse with the courtesy of a man who has personally ended previous browsers. Mei Li shopped like a scalpel. 2 nightshade grasses, unassuming little shadows in plant form, that her darkness law had been missing to break its next threshold. And I disgraced myself completely by walking past racks of functional treasures to point at junk, a broken 2 revolution artifact, the wings of the wind god, 1 wing shattered, categorized as a display piece, and a rare silver forging meteorite that Elder Gu gently informed me was useless without a master smith of a grade that no longer exists. The young man collects scrap? He asked, with the first flicker of actual interest the tower had shown. The young man has a forge you wouldn't believe, I said, and his eyes did something I filed under both promising and dangerous. Sure, useless. That night in my domain, wings plus meteorite plus a river of creation points fused into the meteor wind wings, a top-grade artifact of speed and defense in 1 silver-starred, rune-edged mine. The first thing I did with them was knock on Mei Li's door, say warmth delivery, and pull her into the sky. We broke the cloud ceiling with her arms around my neck, stars above, capital lights below, wind screaming past like the world applauding, and for 1 entire hour there were no families, no assassins, no ladders to climb, just a girl who'd fought her whole life to be feared, laughing into my shoulder, where no one could hear how young she sounded. Higher, she said. We went higher. Thank you, Chen Wei, she said, so quietly the wind almost kept it. I didn't answer. Some things you don't dent by talking. We left the estate 2 days later. Her aunt Mei Hua saw us off with a jade pendant holding a main god strike. Crush it if anything ever comes for you. Inde kash todina is now kri, and a look at Wu's wing of the house that could have stripped paint. And before we left, I did the one piece of business I'd been carrying. I asked Mei Hua for a private word, sealed the room, and told her what Chen Kai had spilled, that the ambush that killed her brother had her other brother's fingerprints on it. She didn't gasp. That's what I'll remember. She just closed her eyes, and years of suspicion clicked into place behind them. She'd been investigating the same trail alone, hitting the same wall, no proof, no power to act, and one niece to keep alive. So we made a quiet pact, her eyes and ears inside the family, my strength outside it. And one shared secret, Mei Li doesn't learn the truth until she can survive knowing it, because the girl I flew above the clouds would burn herself down to ash on that man's doorstep tomorrow, and Wu has God King rank and a fortress full of elders. Thank you, Chen Wei, Mei Hua said as I left. Second time that week someone said it like that. Both of them made me feel like a fraud because I wasn't doing any of it to be thanked. On the ride home, Mei Li studied me for a long moment. What did you and my aunt talk about? When you're going to marry me? She rolled her eyes and looked out the window and let me keep my secret the way she always does, filing it, patient, next to all the others. Someday that filing cabinet is going to be open and I'd better be standing next to her when it happens. Back at school, the calendar had teeth. First up, the Class A ranking tournament, whose prize was the thing every genius in Kyoto knifes each other over annually. 10 seats in the sacred pool, the school's law comprehension holy ground, open once a year. The early rounds delivered 2 revelations, one comic and one professional. The comic one, Wukong's dependence, the scariest battle maniac I know, the boy who transferred provinces to hunt me, the human ice fire warhead, summoned his army for his first round match and out onto the field toddled dolls, ginseng babies with leaf pigtails, sunny dolls holding tiny parasols, fire bee infants bumbling around in fuzzy armor, an entire cherubic daycare of 7-star horrors waddling into formation while the stance made a noise like a dam failing. Is he opening a kindergarten? Someone wailed. The kindergarten then disassembled a Kyoto Heirs wolf legions in 11 minutes. The ginseng babies out-healed every wound, the parasols no-sold every spell, and the firebees were the single most upsetting swarm I've ever watched work, while Wu Kang stood in the middle of his nursery with his arms folded, radiating the serenity of a man whose life makes sense to him. His sister refused to comment. Some family talents you don't explain. Mei Li's round was shorter. Her opponent, a 6th revolution with a forest domain, lasted exactly as long as it took her to answer his sunrise healing art with nightfalls and turn his troops' morale into an astronomy lesson. She walked off the stage straight to my seat and said, "Well, what's my reward? You just won a card stipend. That's the school's reward. What's yours?" There is no correct answer to this in public. I'm told my expression was worth several rounds of the tournament on its own. The professional revelation was named Duan Li, Duan family collateral branch, 7th revolution, polite as a chess clock, and her core race walked out at 8 stars. The first 8-star dependents I'd ever seen on a pier, water spirit Jiao Ren, shark sleek river dragons in humanoid armor, led by a hero whose pressure crossed the arena like a cold front, and her own law wasn't on any rank chart at all, a rune seal law, technique instead of element, patient interlocking geometry that turned my opening attacks into diagrams of themselves. Her clear heart, bright mirror rune shrugged off my desire law openers, a mind polished into a mirror gives desire nothing to grip, and for a while we had the rarest thing in my dueling career, an honest technical exchange with no contempt in it either direction. Honest exchanges, however, are also solvable. Her mirror guarded her mind. It did not guard her hero. Xiao Yun and Gao Wu went in as a pair, and Gao Wu went in as Xiao Yun, 2 Thunder Queens in matching lightning armor converging on the Jiao commander from opposite sides, and no trajectory in the world tells you which of the identical storms is the copy. 18 bolts later, her army had no head. Guan Li looked at the 2 Zixiaos, worked out the trick, and surrendered with a small bow. Your heroes are better than mine. Come spar with me someday when nothing's at stake. One of maybe 4 opponents from that whole year I'd genuinely be glad to see again. The vice dean running it, a Duan family man named Duan Shan, designed the final round with lovely transparency, a 15-person free-for-all in a wilderness plain, which for the 11 local heirs versus us 4 outsiders was less a format than an invitation. Wu Mei read the bracket, said several words her family would deny teaching her, and I laid out the doctrine. We don't scatter, we don't duel, we hunt as one squad, and anyone who wants a fair fight can file a complaint with my formation. The opening seconds proved the point. 11 heirs pivoted toward us like compass needles, so we ran visibly, embarrassingly into deep forest, with Wu Mei scattering a storm of petal blades behind us and Mei Li's shadow tendrils grabbing ankles out of the ground. Deep in the trees, I threw Xinyan's veil over all 4 of us. We went dark, and the hunt turned into 4 ghosts watching 11 hunters get lonely. Then we deployed the bait. Wukong, who fights like a fireworks accident and had been begging for the role, strolled into a clearing and started juggling flame pillars. 3 pursuers took the invitation, pinned him with frost and stone and wind blades, had him surrounded and grinning, and the forest behind them stood up. Mei Li's chains took the first one's legs, while Mei's petals shredded the second one's barrier, and I introduced the third, a 7th revolution with excellent breeding to the difference between a school duel and an ambush. We offered all 3 the dignified exit. 2 took it, the third made a speech, so Wukong set the speech on fire. 11 became 8, then 6. A pair of heirs found our cave sentry line and discovered that Wu Mei's flowers had been listening to their approach for 10 minutes, which is to say, they woke up outside the plane, wondering where the afternoon went. Then the plane's population thinned to the main event. Duan Wei found us first, 8th Revolution, Gang Metal Law, the Vice-Dean's nephew, and radiating the confidence of a man whose uncle wrote the exam. His golden sword rain was legitimately beautiful, 10,000 blades falling like a treasury being emptied out of heaven. My tsunami ate it in one bite, and I put Frost Cloud through his shoulder on the follow-through, at which point he made a discovery that 8th Revolution heirs keep making around me and never enjoy. His squad mates fell to my 3 monsters in parallel. I caught glimpses between exchanges, Wukong trading joyful ultraviolence with a wind specialist, Wu Mei burying someone in flowers with the smile of a florist at a funeral she'd predicted. And then He Ping arrived, the He family's finest 8th Revolution, a light law polished, like his manners, flanked by fresh teammates including his own little cousin, He Ming, who kept shooting Mei Li apologetic looks between volleys. 2 great family aces, remaining muscle, all of it converging on 4 tired outsiders. He Ping raised his platinum sword and the whole forest went noon bright, and I decided the poker game had gone on long enough. I showed them 3 laws at once, desire, sea, and flame, braided into one attack, both artifacts singing. There's a particular silence that follows the sentence, "Is he even human?" And I've grown to enjoy it. Both heirs left the arena horizontal. We took the top 4 seats. And I'll be honest about the aftermath. I collapsed the moment the last opponent quit the field because running 3 laws through 2 artifacts drains a 5th Revolution body like a hole in a bucket. The imposing demeanor was, by the end, entirely a special effect. Reputation is a structure you build out of moments nobody fact-checks. The sacred pool paid for everything. A hidden valley behind a rune-sealed gate in the back mountains, mist over water, 10 spring eyes linked like beads on a chain, each one glowing faintly gold with concentrated law essence. The school's single most guarded resource, refilled drop by drop across years. As tournament first, I picked first, and I didn't pretend to be polite about it. The center spring, where the glow was thickest. Around the chain, the other 9 winners settled into their springs. He Ping serene, Duan Wei still bandaged and glaring, Mei Li 2 eyes over the waterline like a comfortable crocodile. And we all went under. The essence came looking for me like I owed it money. Golden threads rose off the water, wound up my arms, and sank in, and my ocean line law, parked at its mid-tier ceiling for weeks, a full tank with a locked cap, drank and drank. And then the whole pool system noticed the drain gradient and began flowing toward my spring, essence migrating bead by bead down the chain, and somewhere in the valley, a monitoring formation started politely chiming. I heard none of it, because in the middle of the drinking, the cap broke, and my law went somewhere the school's actuarial tables had never priced. It ascended, title to current to finally, fully, the real thing, the high-tier office itself, ocean law, not the motion of water, the will of the sea, the whole black weight and patience of it settling into my chest like a second heartbeat that had been waiting there since before I was born. Either time, I surfaced to a valley significantly less golden than I had entered. Half the pool's stored essence, a decade of accumulation, gone into one student. Vice-Dean Duan stood at the water's edge with the expression of a man watching his retirement fund learn to swim. The other 9 winners stared at me from their diminished springs, and Wu Mei summarized the room. "You alone drank half. We've been robbed by our own teammate." A formal request was later filed that I never be allowed near communal resources again. It was co-signed by everyone. 1 base element at high tier, 3 to go. The world law blueprint had its first pillar, and I'd stolen the concrete from a school. The new office came with a new art, and I built it that same night, alone over my domain's dark water, because some things you don't draft in front of witnesses. The whole sea gathered behind a single point, not a wave, a decision, the ocean's entire argument compressed into 1 spear length and released. The first test cast parted my sea to the bedrock in a line that took an hour to close, and I stood in the spray understanding that I now owned a technique whose main design constraint was choosing not to use it. I named it the Sea God's Spear and filed it where I file all my aces, behind a smile, next to the fire pearls. And then the Gao family, patient as mold, made their second attempt on my life. This one was professional. For days beforehand, Shaoyun's surveillance ministry reported a whisper of foreign divine sense brushing the domain's edge, patient, featherlight, cataloging my defenses the way a burglar counts windows. I let it look, some traps you bait by seeming baitable. Then the realm's alarms went off for real, and I arrived at my crystal wall to find a figure in a black robe already mid-incantation, a low-tier true god sent through an organization whose name gets whispered even between gods. God Execution, the assassin guild that takes contracts on divine kings if the money's right. Codename Shadow Spider, she offered conversationally as her strike cracked my Zhou Tianrei's shield like an egg. As long as the price is right, killing anyone is just killing. The Gao family really has stopped economizing, I said, and her spiders flooded my sky. 4 breeds of 7-star horror, weavers and soul eaters and frost queens and shadow blades, a full invasion force pouring through the breach. Everything I'd built answered at once, and I want to linger here because this was the night my paranoia paid dividends. The Great Wall Bastion lit its watchtowers end to end, sensing stones, screaming coordinates, anti-airfields dragged her flyers out of the sky mid-swoop. The Thunder Flame towers turned the horizon white, actual sustained artillery, arcs of lightning fire, raking the spider column into ash before they crossed the outer farmland. And where the survivors met my armies, 8-star met 7-star and did what that math does. The frost chant froze battalions in mid-charge, formless copied butterflies rained arrows on the real spiders from inside their own formations, and Xiaoyun's thunder walked the wall like a lighthouse beam made of judgment. The invasion of my home lasted about as long as a bug hitting a windshield. My civilians never even stopped baking, so she came for me personally, above the wall, and that fight was the worst hour of my year. Her hidden law ran at true god depth, invisibility so complete even my desire sense slid off it like rain off glass. The first cut I never saw. It opened my arm and taught me the rules. After that, it was a duel of ambushes in an empty sky. I fought half-blind, marking her with desire law tags every time our weapons touched, each tag a candle in her darkness until enough candles burned to make a silhouette. I put frost cloud through that silhouette and heard steel meet flesh, and her hood came off, and I met the face under it, a landscape of old scars and the fury of a woman whose face is a secret. Everyone who sees my face, she informed me with a professional's calm and a zealot's eyes, dies. Then she showed me why the guild sends her. She dissolved, not fled. Dissolved, robe and blade and scars into the shadows themselves, and the shadows became a tide of black spiders pouring over the wall of the world, each one splitting into 2 when cut, each 2 into 4. I hit the swarm with a tsunami, and the swarm laughed at me from 10,000 mouths. Have you ever seen a shadow washed away by water? No, but I've seen one erased by light. Flame law, rain of fire, ocean law, a mirror of ice across the ground, doubling every flame. Her shadow body burned from 2 directions at once, cornered, shrinking. And then, because the guild's professionals don't do capture, she detonated. A true god's core, point blank. I want to be precise about what that meant, because I'd gotten cocky, and the universe invoiced me. Half my body ceased to exist, not wounded, gone. I hung in the void over my own domain as a torso and a fading thought. The only reasons you're hearing this story: 1. The life seed from the 9-fold mountain cracked open in my chest and flooded what was left of me with borrowed springtime. 2. Time law, rewind, dragged my missing half backward out of the past, second by agonizing second, while the seed paid the energy bill. 3 days of recovery, a permanent new respect for the phrase true God, and one cosmetic complication I will only mention once. The regrown half of me came back with brand new baby skin. The rewound half kept its tan, and I attended the next team meeting with a 2-tone face, like a badly dyed egg, while my teammates practiced their sympathetic expressions at a 90% failure rate. Laugh. It's fine. I did, eventually, halfway. The timing mattered because Principal Fan Chiang had a job for me. The 4-school invitational Kyoto High's crown was slipping. 3 ambitious schools, led by the tech-worshipping Shanghai High, had called an exchange event that everyone understood was a challenge, and Shanghai had reportedly produced an extraordinary individual. While Haro sur Infashizen Siger, Fan Chiang wanted Kyoto's flag planted on first place, and he wanted my hand on the pole. The Vice Dean Duan Shan escorted our delegation, and somewhere over the coastline, I asked him the question that had been itching since the ranking tournament: why help us? He'd rigged a free-for-all against us a month ago. Now he was carrying our luggage, politically speaking. He looked out the flying boat's window for a while and gave me the most honest sentence I ever got from a great family man. Benefit, he said. My family keeps me on a shelf. Fan Chiang pays market rate. Don't dress it up as loyalty, and it will never disappoint you. Then, after a pause, with the ghost of an actual smile, you're the best benefit to come through this school in a century, by the way. Try not to die before the dividend. I've received warmer blessings. I've trusted none of them more. Shanghai High looked like the future had collided with a campus, glass towers, robot janitors, energy spires humming over the skyline. Their approach to godhood was tech, mechanical dependence, alchemy forged, upgraded like products, and their extraordinary individual found us at the welcome banquet. Liang Ji, 9th Revolution demigod at 18, white suit, handshake like a press release, arrogance so dense it had its own gravity. He crossed the whole hall to deliver it too. So you're Kyoto's miracle. I've studied your matches. Frankly, I expected more presence. With the grip strength portion of the handshake dialed up to intimidation setting, divine pressure leaking through his palm like a business card with a threat printed on it. I matched the grip exactly, smiled exactly as wide, and complimented the robots. Nothing upsets a man performing dominance like being treated as scenery. The captain of the third school, an ice-cold girl named Wu Rushi, drifted by while he was mid-monologue, told him, "I'm just purely disgusted by you," with the flat delivery of a weather report, and then, this is the strange part, paused at my shoulder and warned me, unprompted, "Don't be careless. Liang Ji is really strong." No pressure came off her at all. None. My desire law, which reads the inside of true gods, got a blank page. A student my age. Unreadable. Spending a warning on a stranger against her own tournament interest. Interesting people, Kyoto's rivals. I filed her under mystery friendly-ish to tampen na sepon regrade the aspect. The tournament itself opened with our bracket against Yangcheng High, best of 5, and it gave me one of the great pleasures of team captaincy, watching my people be excellent. Match 1, single duel, and little. He Ming volunteered first. "I'm the weakest, let me test the water," said the girl, who then revealed a deduction law, the evolved form of trajectory, and spent the whole fight standing in the exact spot her opponent's earth dragons were about to not be. Her finish deserves its own frame. 1,000 light arrows multiplying mid-flight, curving around the enemy's wall, and stopping all of them 1 inch from the girl's skin, a frozen constellation of nope. "You lose," said Hei Ming pleasantly, and the arrows evaporated. 1-0. Match 2, 3-on-3 domain war, our heavy brigade. He pings silver swans weaving purification nets over Duan Wei's black chi-dragons, while Lu Yang's crimson behemoths broke the enemy line like furniture. 2-0, and we got cocky, which the universe treats as a purchase order. Match 3, bare-handed duel, body and force only, no divine power. Duan Wei swaggered up before we could confer. "A bunch of weaklings, I'll handle it," and drew Yangcheng's hidden ace, Jiming, a mountain of smiling fat with sleepy eyes, who turned out to be an 8th Revolution force law monster. Force law is an eternal law. No elements, no tricks, just stronger, applied until physics apologizes. Duanwei's proud gang-metal fists shattered on that man's forearms like breadsticks, the fat rippled, the smile never moved, and our arrogant teammate left the ring by air freight. 2-1, and a useful lesson about squinting smiling fat men. All of them are monsters. Match 4, pairs. Me and He Ping against Ziming and the Yangcheng captain, Zhou Yang, quiet, ordinary-faced and hiding a full hurricane law behind that averageness. It was the best fight of the event. Ziming came for me like a landslide with a grin. I met him in flame armor and spent 5 minutes being a matador for a bulldozer until my desire law blackout wrapped his senses and a fire dragon put him horizontal. Beside me, He Ping's light sword pillar, he called it Dawn, and it earned the name, carved Zhou Yang's windblade storm out of the sky and pinned the captain to a wall of his own broken shields. 3-1. Final ticket punched. The final, Shanghai High and their mechanical legions, puppet knights, storm hunter androids, guardian tanks with self-repairing cores, all alchemy built, all commanded by Liang Ji. A siege match, 5 base cores, us attacking, 2 hours on the clock. They had wonderful machines. I had Gao Wu. The 5 cores sat far apart across the battle plane, too far for any normal army to mutually reinforce, which was the entire defensive theory. It assumed the attackers obeyed geography. My faceless saint does not commute. He folds. Core 1, center, guarded by their flagship Iron Blood war puppets, blood-armored giants with blade arms and shoulder cannons. Gao Wu's formless walked at them wearing my snail shape at 120% output, and while the machines processed that impossibility, Gao Wu himself flickered behind the biggest one, said, "Space Rift," the way other people say, "Excuse me," and opened a hole in the world across its chest. The devouring edge ate the puppet in strips. His follow-up rift ate the core whole. First Blood in 11 minutes. Core 2, North, was He Ping's Silver Swans against the Storm Hunters, sleek assassin frames with light blades, led by a hero unit that cornered the Swan hero and had the kill lined up when a silver mirror shimmered into being between them, Void Realm Mirror. The hero's own blade came back out of the glass with interest and took its arm off at the shoulder. Gao Wu stepped from the mirror's surface like a man exiting a lift, nodded politely, and helped fold the survivor into a closing sphere of space. 2. Core 3, East, nearly went wrong. The shadow trackers there ran full invisibility and had He Ming's spirit foxes fighting blind until my snail choir arrived and sang. The frost chant doesn't care what it can't see. Sound checks every hiding place at once. Frozen mid-cloak, the trackers glittered into visibility like bad taxidermy. The fox's green fire did the rest, and when the tracker hero self-destructed its core in a last spiteful blast, the fox hero and my snail's star shields walled it off and let it waste its death on bedrock. 3. Core 4 West cost us. The electromagnetic rangers had built a firing net that shredded Lu Yiyang's six-winged Pegasi out of the sky. His herd finally broke through by paying the toll in bodies, a kamikaze wedge through the barrier that I won't pretty up, and his golden-winged hero speared the enemy commander only to watch the machine start drinking power from every ranger on the field, swelling into an energy giant for one last stand. It got as far as raising the spear. Then the Swan hero's feathers fell across the sky like first snow. The giant's stolen charge grounded out through 10,000 silver threads, and the light took it apart almost kindly. 4. Core 5 South was the Turtle, a heavily armored guardian hero, a fortress on legs whose self-repair outpaced everything we hit it with, holding the last core with 15 minutes on the clock while its smaller siblings self-repaired around it. Attrition math said we lose. So Gao Wu folded in from the northern front, took one look, and shape-shifted into Xiaoyun, or a 3 points sharper than the original, which she has never let him forget, and dropped 9 borrowed thunderbolts to strip the shield, then reached through the armor gaps with pure spatial grip and crushed the mechanical core like a walnut in a fist. However sturdy the shell, he observed in his doubled voice, the inside is still soft. The last base core went down with 51 seconds to spare. Kyoto High took the invitational, the hall chanted, the visiting principals congratulated ours with faces like squeezed lemons. Liang Jie refused to accept it, publicly, loudly. Demanded a personal duel right there, and when I asked what he was staking, the hall got to watch me invent my favorite bet format. Your tournament rewards against nothing, I stake nothing, you're the one who needs this. Pride signed for him again. Pride has terrible handwriting. He was genuinely strong, let the record show. Ninth Revolution at our age is real. His mountain law was a full mid-tier office, and he wielded it like a man who'd never needed a second trick. His opening, a rune-carved mountain the size of a district, physically walking at me, parted my first wave and drank the seawater into its own streams, growing as it came. Mountain suppresses heaven, he announced, because his school apparently teaches attack names before humility, but he was strong the way a big number is big, and I'd stopped fighting numbers months ago. I showed him the high tier, Ocean Law, the real office, not its title apprentice, and the arena's gravity changed allegiance. My net of woven currents caught his marching mountain and dimmed its runes like rain on chalk. When he screamed and detonated the whole massif into a hail of falling ranges, mountain collapses heaven. Still with the names, I went full ocean body and let a mountain range fall through me into the sea, which is a sentence I will never get tired of having lived. His last gambit was the desperate one. Mountain rebirth, raising the drowned stones again, fueled by his own life force, veins cracking, blood at the lips, a final range built from everything he had. I answered with the sea god spear, the whole ocean behind 1 point, and put it through the range, through the gambit and into the divine soul, holding both, gently, by my standards. The mountains came apart into gravel and rained into my water. Yanjai hit the arena floor, tried to stand on pride alone, and discovered pride is not weight-bearing. Sorry, I told him, before the lights went out behind his eyes. You lost again. He fainted out of sheer fury, which saved us both the speech, and woke up owing me his entire prize stack. Somewhere in the crowd, Wu Roxy almost smiled. Almost, I'm choosing to count it. Home from the invitational with a doubled prize pool, I turned back to the family business. 2 races still stood at 8 Stars' doorstep, and both walked through it that month. The flower core, first. Ancient grade genes reigned over my poppy fairies, and they emerged remade. The crimson dream fairies, part demon, part fairy, all trouble, with a new talent that let them command plants. Not summon, command. Any plant, anywhere, like officers taking over a battlefield of green recruits. I built them a research greenhouse, the Crimson Dream Flower House, grafting lab for spirit flora, plus a garden of starter monsters, bloodthirsty vines, man-eating blossoms, iron-shredding grass, corpse-poison thorns. Within main years, my support corps had a weapons program run by botanists, and Qing Yue, their queen, ascended with them. Her 7 deadly sins and 7 virtues unlocked in full. And I want you to hear a few of these because her kit reads like divine cheat notes. Greed lets an ally cast their next skill twice. Picture Xiao Yun's 9 thunderbolts doubled to 18. Pride forces every enemy to target 1 designated tank. Temperance grants 10 full seconds of absolute invincibility, and Compassion once a week completely restores anyone not yet dead. My support hero handed the whole family a spare life on a cooldown timer. Then the Butterflies, whose upgrade I bought with 3 trait cards through Fan Qiang's channels and fused into a gene I'd had doubts about, until the whole race cocooned and hatched as Nirvana butterfly spirits. Their new signature, die in battle, wrap into a cocoon, and hatch again 5 minutes later. Weakened? Yes. Alive? Absolutely. An army with a respawn timer. Their king Lanling got the deluxe version. He can cocoon at will and comes out stronger, molting as a lifestyle, and emerged from his chrysalis so absurdly beautiful that Qing Yue took it as a personal declaration of war. This pretty boy, she announced to the assembled saints, would outshine me in a dress. Lanling, freshly mythic and feeling himself, replied that such praise embarrassed him, which from our resident ice sculpture was practically stand-up comedy, and the hero platform briefly became a sibling squabble with a combined destructive potential of several continents. Xiaoyun settled it the family way, spear on stone, eyebrow up, Lanling, a little spar. What followed was the best entertainment my domain has ever produced, and I watched from the sky, eating fruit like a bad emperor. My Thunder Queen against my Trajectory Archer, her lightning against his silver threads. She opened with a Thunder Dragon. He threaded it aside with a flick and answered with a 9-arrow fan that she shattered mid-flight. She dropped her Abyssal Thunder Prison over him. The lightning bent around his shell of Trajectory silk like water around a stone, and he sent her own vortex back at her with a conductor's little wrist turn. She caught it in one palm, showing off now, and let it disperse through her fingers as sparks. Then she stopped warming up, purple light in the eyes, her thunder serpent swelling into pythons that snapped his control threads by brute wattage in Midas Bleacher. Lanling, sided Alninjesh surrounded, assessed the arithmetic of pride versus electrocution, and folded with immaculate grace. I concede, your law outranks mine. Don't sulk, she said, hauling him up. You lasted 10 minutes. Last year, that was 9.5 more than anyone. I never sulk, said the man, already composing his rematch, while Qingwei narrated his expression to Gao Wu, who said nothing because Gao Wu's contributions to family banter are load-bearing silences. My 4 saints, ladies and gentlemen, combined age, a few decades, combined firepower, a small pantheon, combined maturity, 1 school bus. I wouldn't trade them for the origin law itself. Don't tell them that either. Watching the 4 of them bicker on the hero platform afterward, the Thunder Queen, the Flower Empress, the too beautiful Archer, the faceless mirror, I felt the thing I never expected this job to give me. Not power, a household. Naturally, the universe scheduled an ambush. It came dressed as a gift, how called breathless, having bought cheap from a masked stranger on the black market the coordinates of a virgin plane. I smelled the rot from the first sentence, because think it through. What God sells an unlooted world at a discount instead of eating it himself? He said he had urgent business, How explained, and I closed my eyes briefly on his behalf. But the coordinates checked out as real, and my desire scan of the entry void found nothing. The honest truth is, I needed loot for the butterfly's next jump. So we went in with my eyes open and 1 divine fire pearl pressed into Hao's palm with instructions labeled emergencies. The plane itself earned its price tag. An undead world, gray sky, bone-littered wastes ruled by a 9th revolution native god of decay who rose out of a crack in the earth like a complaint from the planet's marrow. A dry corpse of a giant with a bone scythe and a voice like rust. Foreign god, it grated, you shall not return. My armies met his undead hordes with the enthusiasm of angels at a heresy buffet. The hordes were the honest kind of horrifying, for skeleton phalanxes that reassembled from their own shrapnel, ghoul tides that didn't rout because rooting requires a survival instinct, bone drakes gliding on wings of stretched shadow, and none of it mattered because Gao Wu's formless had all turned 8-winged for the occasion, holy light being the one seasoning the undead can't refuse. 50 million counterfeit angels burning columns of white fire through legions that had never met an opinion they couldn't shamble through. It looked less like a battle than a very aggressive sunrise. Hao's gales swept the ash into tidy windrows behind them, and he kept yelling, "Am I helping? I feel like I'm helping." He was helping, while the god and I had our conversation upstairs. He was good. Decay is an ugly, patient law. His black threads rotted my attacks out of the air mid-flight. When I burned his first assault down with a rain of earth core flame, he raised a bone dragon the size of a weather system, fed it his decay law until flesh regrew over the fossil frame, and sent the whole cathedral of rot at me wearing wings. So I let time law fully off the leash in combat for the first time and learned what a god emperor's inheritance is actually for. Time domain, accelerate. Around the dragon, the local calendar caught fire. Centuries went by in seconds. The regrown flesh went through every stage of decomposition on fast forward. The proud bones browned, cracked, powdered, and the weather system-sized horror simply expired of old age at altitude, raining down as dust. Even things built from decay, I told its master, who was staring with the one emotion undead do well. Dread can't outlast time. He threw his final domain at me, hell-rising bone spears from every horizon. Reverse. The spears flowed backward into the ground like a film run the wrong way. Then I touched his forehead and stilled him, a statue of a god, mid-snarl, frozen out of the river of moments entirely, and took his head off with a flick, which felt less like combat than like correcting a typo. And the moment the plane collapsed into loot, the trap closed. A barrier snapped shut over the void, and two black robes stepped through it. God execution again, a true god called Hidden Blade, and a 9th revolution wall of muscle called Yandere. The coordinates had been bait, sold specifically to my sworn brother, timed for the exact hour my divine power would be drained from a plane war. The Gao family had stopped economizing. You can be arrogant at full strength, Hidden Blade purred from inside his invisibility, but you've just fought a war, haven't you? True, also true, I'd been ambushed enough times now to pack accordingly, and I'd handed Hao a divine fire pearl on the way in with instructions labeled emergencies. This month we be double city mashtal mirror, yanwist of Wensui's bendied. And Dani nos since falls and saying how the hardest lesson for these since the spider. Hidden Blade's law was a nightmare tier above hers, a true god stealth that my desire marks couldn't even grip. I'd tag him on a blade clash and feel the tag dissolve like sugar in rain. His opening exchange was almost polite, testing. My meteor wind wings turned his first 3 ambushes into sparks off silver feathers, and he complimented the artifact and mentioned it would look better on him. Then he got serious. Formless and shapeless. 10,000 blades returned to 1. His dagger multiplied into an invisible weather of edges, cutting from angles that didn't exist, and the first one through my guard opened my shoulder to the bone. I rewound the wound with a flick of time law. His pause at that was gratifying, and we settled into the true fight, me flooding the arena with 1,000 wind blades and tsunami walls to crowd out his angles, him whittling me from the dark. Both of us bleeding altitude. The turn came when I stopped playing his game entirely. Time domain, stasis. The bubble snapped shut around us both, and the world inside it stopped asking permission to exist moment to moment. And in stilled air, an invisible attack has a fatal flaw. It hangs there. 10,000 motionless black threads laid out like an anatomy chart of exactly where their owner stood. I walked down the chart. Frost Cloud found the heart at the center of it, while its owner was still learning that time, unlike Shadows, doesn't have a farther corner to hide in. Yandere, meanwhile, had decided the fat 3rd Revolution kid was the soft target and spent several minutes chasing Hao around the battlefield while my brother, my beautiful, underestimated brother, wheezed, dodged, whined theatrically, retreated exactly on script, and then turned around at optimal range and delivered the greatest line of his career along with the pearl. Idiot. Take this, your grandpa's slap. The blast took half of Yandere with it. Hao then walked over and finished the job with a wind blade because, as he explained solemnly afterward, only dead men bring peace of mind. I have never been prouder, and I have never told him that in those words. His ego rides a strict calorie budget. I fainted on the way out, 3 laws and a true god duel on an empty tank, and woke up in my dorm to the sound of melee flaying. Hao alive with vocabulary. You went out standing and came back horizontal. Do you two want to kill me with worry? Hao, a quail in human form, head down taking it, me quietly deciding not to mention the shoulder. Some family scenes you don't interrupt. You just lie there, freshly alive, letting the noise of people who love you argue over your body wash across you like weather. As near-death experiences go, the aftercare was excellent. The ledger from that trap, once I stopped bleeding, 2 more assassin corpses through the recycler, my Earthline law rammed to 99%, 1 catalyst short of its own high-tier ascension, and a month later, with faith and willpower flooding in from over 1 billion believers, the wall finally breaking, 6th Revolution demigod, 4 8-star races, 1.4 billion adult soldiers, 4 mythic-grade saints, each standing 1 step from personal godhood, and a body that shrugged in true god weight class. On paper, I was a high schooler with exams coming up. up. On any other paper, I was a mid-sized divine nation with a boyfriend's schedule, which brings us, at last, to the college entrance exam, and to the last deal and the last knife. The deal came first. Fan Chang sat me down with tea in the 5 top universities, 2 balanced prestige schools, a scholars academy, the military university, and Shengjian, the war college. Resources allocated purely by strength, competition described in brochures using the word brutal as a selling point, hell for the weak, paradise for the strong. Shengjian, I said, before he finished the sentence. Mei Li asked separately, rolled her eyes, and said asking was insulting. Where I enrolled, she enrolled. Then Fan Chang leaned back and named his price for continued patronage. Be this year's top score, the whole exam, first place nationwide track for Kyoto High's honor. And for mine, he slid 1 secret realm access slot across the table. I held up 3 fingers. He called me a little fox. We settled on 2, 1 for me, 1 for Mei Li, and shook on it. And I walked out having promised a divine king the #1 seat in an exam that, he cheerfully warned me on the way out, would this year include hidden family heirs crawling out of seclusion for reasons nobody would explain. And the knife came second. 2 days before the exam, Mei Hua's message arrived through our private channel, short as a pulled trigger. He's moving. During the exam. Of course, during the exam. Candidates die in exams. Tragic, plausible, unpunishable, the borrowed knife classic, and this time the knife was aimed at Mei Li. I spent a full day's fortune on the counterplay, a first revolution divine artifact, a black gauze dress called Dream Shadow, concealment, misdirection, and armor woven into silk tuned to her own darkness law. She took it without any of her usual teasing, which is how I knew she understood the stakes, and said only, Mei Wu, we'll see. Then the exam began, and everything I'd built for 2 years walked into the arena with me. Exam morning. The gathering plaza buzzed like a kicked hive, and the first thing I noticed was the crowd itself, too many faces I'd never seen, wearing that specific stillness of people raised somewhere quiet and lethal. The hidden families had come out of their mountains, exactly as advertised, and every one of their heirs scanned the plaza like they were pricing it. 3 examiners ran the show, 1 from each of 3 top universities. Huang Peng of Jinghua, gold-rimmed glasses, professionally kind. Xiyang of Qingbei, uncombed, radiating the energy of a man who'd been dragged here mid-nap and would grade accordingly. And from Shengjian, my Shengjian, a small woman named Gao Jia in a plaid shirt and huge black frames, who looked like she hadn't left a library in a decade, right up until her eyes passed over me once, casually, and my whole spine reported a security breach. Whatever they feed the faculty at the War College, it works. Stage 1, domain construction. Each of us pulled into a private void to unfold our world for grading under a barrier that hid its location. Standard paranoia, gratefully accepted. I opened my domain in front of the 3 of them and watched professional composure die in real time. Understand what they were bracing for. A student world, an island, some towns, a shrine, a 5-star army if the kid's family paid up. What unfolded instead was 300 million square kilometers of functioning civilization in mountain ranges and inland seas, a great wall bastion crawling with watchtowers, thunder flame towers, a star array like a second sky, teleport arteries pulsing between hundreds of cities, farms, mints, courts, schools, and a white marble cathedral the size of a small province with a permanent queue of pilgrims. Sai Yong's grating jade ran the numbers, and he read them out loud with the tone of a man triple-checking a lottery ticket. Domain scale, full marks. Structure grade, full marks. Ecology, full marks. Civilization, full marks. The young man, your domain construction is impeccable. He did not know I disguised half my ancient grade buildings down a tier to seem modest. Some cards stay in the sleeve even during applause. Stage 2, dependence. I summoned the family, and the void filled the way a cathedral fills with organ sound. Xiaoyun came first, descending in her lightning armor at the head of 500 million purple star divine crown snail in forged plate, shells like armored night skies, rank on rank to the vanishing point. Qingyue floated above her flower legions in a slow rain of petals that were also weapons. Lanling arrived with the reborn butterflies, the air behind him strobing with wings that had each died at least once and taken notes, and Gao Wu brought up the rear with his mirror people, a formation that shimmered like heat haze because half of them hadn't decided what to look like for the examiners. 4 races, all 8-star. The grading jade in Ziyang's hand made a small distressed sound that I don't think grading jades are supposed to make. He stopped grading and started interrogating. Human and beast bloodlines. Complete a fused fairy demon line. A rebirth mechanic on an archer core? Where does a student even? How do all the good things happen to you? Then Gao Jia spoke for the first time quietly. Look at the heroes. They looked and saw what she'd seen. 4 mythic-grade dependent heroes, each faintly haloed with the power of an actual law. Thunder on Xiao Yun, good and evil on Qing Gui, trajectory on Lanling, space itself flickering around Gao Wu. Dependent heroes walking the road to godhood, a feat Ziyang admitted he hadn't managed until he was a true god with centuries of resources. Fortuitous encounters, I explained. Luck, repeated Wang Peng, adjusting his glasses to look at me over them, the international gesture for we both know you're lying, and I respect the craft. Stage 2, full marks, 700 points out of 700, and when the leaderboard went up over the plaza, the crowd noise did something complicated. First overall, me, at a perfect score. Second, a hidden family heir named Ye Chang, 697. 3 points behind me, this stranger from a family that doesn't officially exist. The mountains had not sent their children down to lose, and somewhere in the crowd, I could feel exactly one pair of eyes revising a plan around my score. I didn't look for them. Let the knife think it's still hidden. Stage 3, Part 1, the Wave Gauntlet. And unlike every previous exam, the announcement came with a sentence that dropped the plaza's temperature. No more simulations, real battles, real casualties. Your dependents' lives in your hands. 10 waves. The arena dropped me on a wasteland under a dark red sky that smelled faintly of blood before anything had bled, which is the kind of interior decorating that tells you the exam board has given up pretending. Wave 1, 50 million Blood Clan marquises, pale aristocrat vampires with batwing speed and a stench of copper. Qing Yue handled it with a fraction of her flower core, and I mean handled. Seeds hit the ground ahead of the charge, a sea of blood-red flowers bloomed under the vampire's feet, and the assault arrived as a garden party. Vines caught ankles, perfume drank minds, and petals sharpened into a wind that ended the wave without my other races getting out of bed. The exam kept doubling. Wave 2, 80 million, and the vampires came smarter. Bat form dives out of the red clouds, trying to get above my lines. They met the frost chant on the way down and rained onto the flowers as hail with fangs. Wave 3 introduced their casters, blood priests whose curses soured my healing rain mid-fall, and Qing Yue answered by switching hymns, purity rolling off her core in waves, curses burning off my soldiers like fog off a morning. Wave 4, 150 million, brought siege beasts, bloated carrier bats the size of frigates that split open over my formations and poured infantry directly onto our heads. Xiaoyun took personal offense at the delivery method. She went up alone, walked across the sky like it was a parade ground, and opened every carrier from stem to stern with spear light before the cargo finished unloading. Wave 5 was all of the above at once, and my ministry's drill schedules earned their decade, 4 races rotating through engagement and rest like shift workers, the choir freezing, the flowers eating, the arrows deleting, the mirrors filling every gap the moment it opened. By Wave 6, it stopped being funny, over 500 million, with 8-star marquises now stitched through the ranks in real numbers. That wave finally required both flying core, Landling's butterflies splitting into their triple clone shadow dance, so the sky was 1/4 real archers and 3/4 beautiful lies. Arrows of gilded light detonating through vampire columns, while Qingwei's fairies dragged the survivors into the flowers. 0 casualties, but I noticed my hands had stopped being in my pockets. Waves 7 and 8 were the tax bracket, where 0 casualties stops being on the menu. 900 million, then 1 billion too. The marquises now leading from the front with honor guards of 8-star knights, and my line bent for the first time in years. A wedge of blood knights punched through the star shields on my eastern flank and got in among the choir's set. Close quarters, where sonic artillery risks its own ranks. For 4 bad minutes, my snails fought them shell to armor, starlight claws against blood steel. Xiao Wu's formless poured into the breach, wearing the enemy's own shape, and the wedge started cutting itself. We sealed it. We paid for it. I watched cocoons form on the field where butterflies had been, the rebirth timer spinning up, and thanked past me, out loud, for every card that had gone into that talent. Wave 9 deleted the joke entirely. 1.5 billion enemies, Blood Clan by the ocean load, and mixed in the Lich Clan of the western regions, shriveled casters in white, sunken eyes full of grave light, soul magic, and summoned undead legions that don't tire, don't rout, and don't much mind being dead twice, against my 1.4 billion on open ground with real casualties. I committed everything, and my saints ran the battle like a symphony with an artillery section. Xiaoyun's snail legions were the anvil, star shields locked, frost chant rolling in choir waves, her own spear a purple seam of lightning stitching shut every breach. Qing Yue conducted tempo, vines to bind the vampire cavalry, sloth marks to tax the lich's casting, healing rain cycling my wounded back into the line before they finished falling. Lanling's arrows were the punctuation. Every lich hero that raised a staff for a big summon caught a gilded exclamation point in the sternum mid-syllable, and Gao Wu's 8-winged formless burned the undead. undead out of the sky in columns of borrowed holy light. We won it, and I lost 100 million of my people doing it. I want that number to sit there uncomfortably because it sat on me. 100 million funerals worth of families in my domain that night, and me, their god, unable to explain to them what a college entrance exam is. Simulations are chess. This was the other thing. Wave 10 was 2 billion, led by a Blood Clan prince and a Lich King, real hero class monsters, and the exam's designers had clearly meant them as the wall no student crosses whole. The prince opened with a blood sacrifice. He drank the battlefield. Every fallen soldier spilled life on both sides, funneling up into him in red ribbons, and swelled into a winged cathedral of muscle, then answered my saint's opening volley with 1,000 blood blades hung in the sky like a verdict about to be read. Landling read it first. His trajectory seal closed over the entire flight of blades at once. 1,000 paths, pinned, motionless midair, the most expensive single cast I've ever watched him make. And in the frozen moment that bought, Xiao Yun fused 9 thunderbolts into one dragon and rang the cathedral like a bell until the architecture gave out. The Lich King was the patient kind of horror. He stood behind 3 rings of undead bodyguards, resummoning everything we killed, grinning the fixed grin of a creature whose actual life is hidden somewhere off-site. Gao Wu solved the rings by not using doors, folded the space around the staff arm mid-summon, crushed the gesture out of existence, and Landling put a light arrow through the phylactery grin, which turned out to be exactly where a lazy lich hides his off-site backup, on-site. Final butcher's bill, nearly 500 million of my dependents dead or cocooned. Final score, 800 of 800, the only perfect stage 3 part 1 in the exam's history, and the most expensive number anyone's ever handed me. I came out of the gate last of everyone into a plaza gone silent, and found the scoreboard gap between me and Ye Chong had stretched past 30 points. The hidden family section of the crowd stared at me with an attention I can only describe as taxonomic. Fine. Let them classify. Mei Li hooked her arm through mine in front of all of them, purely as a public service announcement. And then Wang Peng announced part 2, and the trap I'd been waiting for opened its paperwork. The final assessment, a 3-day trial in a shared plane, kill beasts, collect the point jades they carry, and a sheaf of documents fanned out across the crowd. Candidates may also contest points with each other. Sign the waivers, please. The plane's protection mechanisms will be disabled. Terrifies. A free fire exam, 3 days, no referees, with Mei Wu's hired knives holding candidate badges somewhere in that crowd, and every hidden family's heir looking for trophies. You couldn't design a better hunting preserve if the uncle had drafted the rules himself, which I reflected, signing he quite possibly had. I leaned to Mei Li's ear as the portal opened. He moves in there. Find me fast. And under the cover of squeezing her hand, I did the thing I'd been saving, pressed a mark into her skin woven from creation law itself. Any normal tracking mark, a capital-grade assassin can find and burn. Nobody alive can even see the fingerprints of creation. 3 days, she said. Her eyes had that glitter they get when someone she hates is finally in reach. Try to keep up. The portals took us, and the last thing I saw of the plaza was Gao Jia of the War College watching me go with her head tilted, the look of a scout who has finished scouting. I landed on a gray gobi under a gray sky, alone, with a fishy salt wind and the distant percussion of things large enough to be percussion. The trial plane was enormous, bigger than the secret realm, and the mark on Mei Li's skin tugged at my senses from somewhere far east. I pulled Shanyin over myself, went invisible to everything below true God, and started moving. Business came to me. First, a centipede beast the size of a freight convoy, hunting by ground vibration. It read my footsteps through 1/2 kilometer of rock and came up under me like a geological event. 100 armored segments and acid dripping off mandibles the size of doors. Reading footsteps is a sense. I own the office that senses report to. I fed it a phantom of me sprinting east, froze its leg joint solid while it lunged at nothing and took its head off at the 3rd segment on the way past. A point jade shook out of the corpse. 120 points for a 4th revolution kill. The bounty system had a rate card. I like rate cards. Then, at a wind-carved stone forest, I found 2 candidates from another school locked in a losing fight with a 3-legged toad the size of a hotel, all warts and acid tongue, 6th revolution grade. I settled behind a pillar to watch, and I'll accept judgment on this from anyone who's never played this game. When the snipe and the clam grapple, the fisherman does not referee. The toad ate them both. Their protective charms fired them out of the plane alive but scoreless. The toad sat down to digest with the smug torpor of a creature that thinks the food chain has finished for the day, and I introduced it to the concept of desert stage predators. Hellfire chains, a fire burial, and its jade stash, 720 points, moved to a better home. Aesthetic for TV Skuri. Killing and plundering yields a golden belt, as the old books say. Dealing with people pays even better than beasts, and I hadn't even had to deal with the people. By the time I crossed into the eastern forest, my count was north of 1300, and the mark was close and moving fast, and I picked up the pace, moving fast the way prey moves. She came out of the tree line at a full sprint, with a tidal wave of black behind her, not a metaphor, a Florida canopy flood of fist-sized black ants, winged, armored, mandibles like bolt cutters, in numbers that made the horizon crawl. Chen Wei! Miley's face did about 4 things at once: relief, fury, embarrassment, and don't you dare laugh. Run, bone-eating ants, they chew through metal. You've been in this plane 6 hours, I said, falling in beside her, and you've raised an army against you. I spawned into their nest, she snarled, which I want to say on the record, is the single unluckiest teleport placement in the history of standardized testing, and it happened to the person I love, and I did not laugh out loud very much. Concealment was useless. The swarm tracked by senses beyond smell, so I steered us to the answer: a swamp, wide and black and rotten, its water so corrosive the bubbles smelled like lawsuit. I turned at its edge, raised both hands, and introduced the ant nation to the ocean law. Endless tsunami. All the entire swamp stood up, a cliff of filth and acid folded over the front 100 meters of the swarm and simply deleted it. The follow-up, an ocean current prison, took the next wave into a spinning grinder of corrosive mud. Mei Li stood at my shoulder, catching her breath and critiquing my form, as is tradition. Then the ground stopped cooperating, and the queen came up through it. 8th revolution, tens of meters of dark purple armor, 6 compound eyes with green furnace light behind them, antennae cracking the air like whips, and a shriek that split stones and called reinforcements up out of the earth in numbers that turned the ground itself into a moving carpet. Careful, said Mei Li. She summons? She's worth 400 point, I said. You're impossible. I'm motivated. Hold the tide. She rolled her eyes, pulled the dream shadow dress's power around her, black silk igniting into a halo of dark threads, and turned into the most beautiful catastrophe on the battlefield, whip threads shredding ants by the thousand, while the artifact wove her in and out of visibility. And I went for the queen, ice dragon off the spear to freeze her front limbs, sensory strip to blind 6 eyes at once, and when she reared up to shriek her armies bigger, I put a winter into her open throat. The frost cloud's cold met whatever furnace ran her from inside, and the queen of the bone eaters became the world's largest ice sculpture, then the world's largest pile of ice cubes, then 400 points in my pocket. The swarm's will broke with her. The survivors poured back into the earth, and the swamp went quiet, except for 10,000 tiny point jades bobbing to the surface of the muck. Every ant of demigod grade had carried a sliver. Mei Li reeled them in on black threads by the fistful while I did the count. Past 10,000 points between us before sundown on day 1, which, judging by every metric the exam had published, was not a score. It was a category error. She flicked a jade at me and I caught it off my chest. Say it. Say what? That my terrible luck, she said, chin up, daring me, is the reason we're rich. Your luck, I said solemnly, is so profound that the exam placed you inside the enemy's food supply, and so magnificent that it made the enemy into our food supply. You are a strategic natural disaster. I'm honored to be adjacent, Tio. I'll accept that. She tucked a jade into my collar, and for a moment, filthy scratched, standing in a devastated swamp on a battlefield planet full of people paid to kill us, she laughed the unarmored laugh, the one from above the clouds, the one exactly none of her enemies have ever heard. The blood smell was already drifting outward, and blood smell in this plane is an invitation with RSVP. We lifted off the swamp together and flew east into the dark, and I ran the ledger of it all as the wind came up. 2 years ago, an auditorium laughed a boy off a stage because his gods were groceries. The teacher's best comfort was maybe a miracle. As of tonight, the groceries are an 8-star star-armored legion with a siren choir and a thunder queen 1 step from true godhood. The boy holds 7 laws, 4 of them the bones of a power no god in history has assembled, a body that survives true gods' funerals, a workshop that eats assassins and prints miracles, a sworn brother who one-shots 9th revolution killers with pocket change, and a girlfriend whose bad luck reorganizes ecosystems in our favor. The weakest god in history is, at this moment, the #1 score in the most watched exam on the planet, with a divine king holding the door and a god emperor's toddler holding the receipts. And somewhere in this plane, tonight, under some other gray ridge, the men Mei Wu paid are checking their equipment and moving toward the mark he gave them. Her name, my face, 3 days, no witnesses. They think they're hunting 2 students. Nobody's told them what the seafood does now. Let them come. The kitchen's open.